A princess sleeps in a floral fairy tale. A purple-haired girl rests among blooming roses. Her bright blue eyes suddenly snap open. A sudden, loud clatter startles the family. Arasilla Hugo bursts into the room, loudly demanding her family's attention. She recalls her prestigious academic and magical honors. She celebrates earning her wealth and title. The genius magician proudly asserts her identity. Standing before her shocked family, she declares her intent to marry Lord Vandermir. Her parents and sister react with sheer disbelief. Her sudden marriage announcement is considered totally absurd. She is known as a brilliant but eccentric magician. 3 years ago, she firmly swore she would never marry anyone. Her family remembers her many past declarations of remaining single. Her mother remains skeptical, assuming she is merely causing more trouble. While her mother grows irritated, Arasilla remains cheerfully confident. Her sister, Iris Hugo, asks why she changed her mind. Iris expresses deep concern over the suddenness of the news. Arasilla wonders what she should tell her family. She realizes she cannot reveal the true reason for her choice. Arasilla stands resolute before her worried older sister. The reason for her marriage declaration was simple. She intends to prevent her sister's death. Arasilla carries a secret she cannot reveal. She is burdened by terrifying prophetic dreams. She wakes in a panic after a nightmare. A prophecy revealed the grim events 5 years ahead. In the dream, Iris was sacrificed to a marriage. Iris sat helpless before a bloody guillotine. Heavy footsteps echo through the dark prison. Arasilla visits a dungeon to find his sister. A frail, imprisoned Iris wonders how her sister found her. Arasilla tearfully apologizes for not visiting her sister sooner. Their hands meet through the cold baths. Arasilla cries as she admits she cannot free her. Iris blames her own ignorance for the family's ruin. Arasilla insists that Iris's husband is the guilty party. She decries his descent into madness and treason. Arasilla is heartbroken that Iris must suffer needlessly. Through bloodied lips, Iris wishes the inheritance never existed. Arasilla asks if his brother was the true heir. Iris admits she only discovered her husband's secret feuds after marriage. Lord Vandermir, the Knight Commander, was central to the plot. A violent, wet cough shakes Iris as Arasilla watches. Knowing she is dying, Iris makes a final request. She asks Arasilla to apologize to their family. Her final plea is to protect their family. With a pained smile, Iris says goodbye. Iris was executed as the wife of a traitor. A single document records the tragic end. Townspeople gossip about the recent execution of traitors, claiming only madmen would commit treason. Arasilla sits in solitary despair, mourning the tragic outcome of the past timeline. A sharp crinkle sounds as she grips the newspaper, haunted by what she failed to prevent. Overwhelmed by agonizing regret, Arasilla wishes she had been the one to enter that fateful marriage. The narrative shifts back to the present moment. Arasilla stands resolute before her sister, Iris, in their home. She realizes she cannot use her prophetic dreams as a logical reason to justify marriage. When Iris asks if she has been secretly meeting the Lord, Arasilla firmly denies even knowing his face. Iris remains deeply confused while her father urgently orders someone to call for a doctor. A sudden stop sounds as Arasilla shouts for them to halt the butler's departure. She reveals her knowledge of the secret marriage arrangement already planned with the Vandermir Duchy. Her parents are stunned that she discovered their hidden political dealings. A sharp snap sounds as Arasilla confidently declares that she will take her sister's place in the arrangement. Arasilla exits the room, leaving her family in a state of frantic, comedic disbelief. She walks through the grand, sunlit hallway, her resolve unshaken. Arasilla acknowledges that her parents were likely too hesitant to bring up such a cold political union. She recalls the painful memory of the rain falling during her sister's original wedding. A dark, heavy storm gathers as she reflects on that gloomy day. The ominous church stands tall under the weight of a pouring rainstorm. Guests watch in silence as the faceless couple proceeds down the aisle during the cursed ceremony. Iris looked utterly miserable, trapped as a pawn in a marriage she never wanted. Arasilla seethes with hatred for the very name of the Vandermir family. She remembers how her sister was sacrificed for the sake of a ruthless inheritance battle. A loud bang sounds as Arasilla bursts into her library, ready to alter fate. She is certain that the marriage cannot be cancelled, but she refuses to let Iris suffer. A soft scritch sounds as she prepares to sign the political contract herself. Arasilla intends to marry the Lord first to ensure her sister's survival. However, she feels that simply preventing the marriage is not enough. The weight of her past failure to protect Iris feels like a heavy, deep sin. She stares down at her desk, poised to begin her interference. A soft chuckle sounds as a confident, determined smile crosses her face. She looks forward with eyes full of calculation and iron resolve. A soft scritch sounds as Arasilla addresses her fateful letter to Lord Vandermir. She privately admits that she has no genuine affection for the man she is targeting. The sun sets over the majestic estate of the Vandermeer family. An aide informs the commander that an urgent letter has arrived and is waiting on his desk. A soft slide sounds as he reaches out to inspect the sealed message. The silver-haired commander of the Red Hawk Knights, Damian Vandermeer, reveals his striking presence. Damian wonders why a stranger like Arasilla would suddenly write to him. Arasilla finishes her formal greeting to the Lord. She demands a face-to-face meeting before the wedding, stating she will be available in 3 days. Damian stands in silence, staring at the bold proposal with cold indifference. The second son of the Vandermeer family, Lord Damian, processes the news of his new fiancée. A sudden whoosh sounds as he burns the letter, convinced that all magicians are insane. He immediately decides that he wants absolutely nothing to do with Arasilla for the rest of his life. Damian remains unimpressed by the magician's antics as he looks over the ashes of the letter. The scene shifts to the bright palace gates under a clear sky. Arasilla arrives under a parasol, cheerfully introducing herself to Lord Vandermeer. She meets his suspicious gaze with a calm, knowing smile. She laughs off his coldness, explaining she rushed over because he failed to reply to her letter. Arasilla is furious that her letter was ignored, despite Damian's earlier resolve to avoid her. 5 minutes before his resolve crumbled, knights gather at the training grounds. Vice Commander Isaac Wind arrives and asks why the knights are distracted, learning that a lady has come to see them. Isaac Wind appears surprised by the news. Arasilla approaches and asks if he is the Vice Commander.
Arasilla explains she has come to see Lord Vandermeer and mentions sending a letter in advance.
The knights are struck by her beauty as she introduces herself as Arasilla Hugo. She proudly identifies herself as a renowned genius magician. Isaac reacts with visible shock and confusion. The knights begin to gossip, calling her a weirdo from the magic tower and questioning her presence. A knight makes a disparaging remark about noblewomen, which Arasilla hears with a calm smile. Isaac apologizes but asks her to leave for disrupting training, while Arasilla suggests his superior must be lazy. Arasilla taunts the commander's absence, prompting Isaac to demand she refrain from such disrespectful comments. Arasilla mockingly asks if she hurt his feelings, noting the inconvenience his superior caused her. A sharp click sounds as he walks. A cold voice asks about the commotion as the commander suddenly appears behind them. The knights bow in unison as the silver-haired commander, Damian Vandermeer, reveals his imposing presence. Arasilla formally greets Lord Vandermeer and reintroduces herself. She mockingly asks if he is injured, explaining she rushed over because he failed to reply to her letter. Damian coolly returns the greeting and confirms he is perfectly healthy. Arasilla confrontingly asks if he tore up her letter, but Damian responds with a heavy silence. Damian calls for Isaac Sekenton. He orders the knights to run 50 laps for being late to training. As the knights depart, Damian invites Arasilla to follow him to his office, and she accepts. They walk together in tense silence. Their mutual disdain grows as Arasilla finds him arrogant while Damian views her as strange. In the office, Damian offers a dismissive apology for forgetting to respond to her letter. Arasilla acknowledges his workload, but Damian tells her to return home if that was her only purpose. Damian flatly rejects the idea of marriage, leading Arasilla to ask if he knows about their family arrangement. He admits he is hearing of it for the first time, but Arasilla insists the marriage is necessary. Damian remains firm in his refusal, which Arasilla claims is not an option he can simply choose. Agitated, Arasilla demands to know exactly why he is refusing her. She lists her exceptional merits, including her role in a monster outbreak and her high status in the magic tower. Arasilla poses dramatically, completely unimpressed by his reaction. Damian prepares to deliver a sharp retort. He suddenly realizes her identity and wonders how she could possibly know a specific secret. Arasilla offers her assistance with a knowing smile. Damian slowly repeats her name with suspicion. Arasilla is pleased that he finally recognizes her. Damian accuses her of being the magician who stole credit from his knights during a previous mission. Arasilla is baffled by his accusation. She explodes in rage, shouting that she saved his life and cannot believe he called her a parasite. A quick tsk sounds as Damian retorts that she only helped for her own gain. Arasilla's magic surges as she questions his gratitude, while Damian mocks her inability to control her emotions. The marriage proposal turns into a challenge. Audrey the maid bursts into the room and begs Arasilla to calm down. Audrey grabs Arasilla to restrain her. Audrey frantically reminds her that she promised to stop hitting people. Arasilla rants about teaching the arrogant knight a lesson while Audrey tries to pull her away. Damian tells Arasilla to stop interfering in her mistress's affairs, but she firmly tells him to watch his own tone. A sharp thud sounds as she grips her umbrella handle in frustration. Arasilla warns him of future regret as Audrey struggles to hold her back. Damian dismisses her help and warns her to stay out of other families' business. Arasilla insists with absolute certainty that he will eventually need her. She reveals that his succession rights are tied to their arranged marriage. Arasilla explains that his grandfather's will grants the duchy to the grandson who marries a Hugo granddaughter. Damian is shocked by the news, while Arasilla suggests he verify the promise made to the emperor. Arasilla decides to leave, leaving the final choice to him as she tells Audrey they are going. A series of rhythmic thuds sound as Arasilla and Audrey walk away, leaving Damian to his thoughts. Damian is left reeling from the revelation of his grandfather's secret conditions.
He realizes the marriage might be inevitable, haunted by the image of the crazy woman he just met.
Back at home, Arasilla fuming over the encounter and wishes she had taught the arrogant knight a proper lesson. Her heart continues to race from the intensity of the confrontation. The scene shifts to the expansive, sun-drenched gardens of the Hugo Manor. Iris greets her sister, surprised to see her in the Fragen. Iris laughs heartily as a young boy with purple hair leans into her side. The youngest heir, Adrian Hugo, is introduced as he breaks into loud, tearful sobs. Arasilla lets out a loud laugh, teasing Adrian by calling him ugly when he cries. Iris scolds her sister for teasing the boy while Arasilla giggles and Adrian continues to wail.
Adrian sniffles as Arasilla asks why he is crying, eventually revealing his sadness over her marriage.
Arasilla rejects his plea to cancel the wedding, despite his fear of her leaving home. Iris becomes stern, telling her sister that her teasing has gone too far. Arasilla softens and reassures the boy that marriage won't mean she is abandoning him. She promises him that she will always remain his second sister. Iris smiles warmly and agrees with Arasilla's comforting words. Arasilla declares that even a change in her last name cannot change who she is at her core. A soft thud sounds as Adrian looks up, beginning to feel reassured. Still, Adrian expresses his deep dislike for Lord Vandermir and the marriage. Arasilla points out the absurdity of hating someone he has never had. Iris looks shocked as Arasilla admits she is taking the deal to avoid an even worse fate. Iris questions if the marriage is purely political, but Arasilla quickly denies it. A sharp thud sounds as Iris grabs her shoulder, demanding the truth. Iris reminds her of her true ambition to lead the Mage Tower. She urges Arasilla not to throw away her dreams for an arranged marriage. Iris offers a gentle, encouraging smile. A horrific vision of a bloodied, dying Iris from the previous timeline flashes through Arasilla's mind. Haunted by the memory, Arasilla's expression turns to one of cold, determined terror. A sudden thud sounds as Arasilla stands up, her intense reaction startling her siblings.
Iris is bewildered by the sudden shift in Arasilla's demeanor.
Arasilla claims she is only marrying him because she likes him, but Iris sees right through the lie. Under the pressure of her sister's gaze, Arasilla prepares to deliver a more believable excuse. She presents the handsome image of the commander, intending to use his looks as her justification. Iris and Adrian are absolutely stunned that Arasilla would choose a husband based solely on his face. Arasilla shouts her defense, claiming that since she has everything else, she can afford to be shallow. She tries to frame it as a love marriage, but Iris points out her previous claims of knowing nothing about him. Arasilla is left speechless as Iris continues to glare at her with deep skepticism. Laughing nervously, Arasilla makes a quick escape while her siblings call after her. Iris and Adrian watch her run off, left in a state of confused disbelief. A firm thud sounds as Arasilla reflects on her efforts to change their tragic fate. Arasilla realizes that the only thing remaining is to secure Damian Vandermeer's blessing before her sister meets a stranger. The purple-haired lady hears a desperate plea to send her reply quickly as the silver-haired knight watches her with a smug grin. A week passes in complete silence as the scene shifts to Damian brooding alone at his desk after ghosting her letter. Damian leans back in visible frustration, admitting to himself that the strange wizard was actually right. He narrows his yellow eyes in deep thought, questioning the true motives behind his grandfather's bizarre final will. An oppressive darkness settles as he acknowledges that his own family is already eager to erase his presence. While his relatives enjoy the spotlight of noble life, Damian remains isolated and overlooked in the shadows. He reflects on how everyone in the ducal house was aware of the will except him, all to benefit his half-brother. The sinister and mocking face of Oscar Vandermeer looms large in his mind as his primary rival. Standing tall in his study, Damian resolves that he must take immediate action to put a stop to these schemes. He recalls Arasilla's blunt accusation that he wants to push his brother aside and seize control of the dukedom. His gaze turns sharp as he focuses his thoughts back on the mysterious actions of that wizard. He realizes that this marriage is not just a contract, but a necessary revolution for his own survival. A soft, rhythmic scratching sound follows as he takes up his quill to issue a command no one can defy. Damian concludes that by marrying Arasilla, he can finally claim everything the Vandermeer family tried to keep from him. He stands alone in the vast room, repeating the name of Arasilla Hugo as his final decision is made. Looking over her letter once more, he begrudgingly notes that she might not be as crazy as he first thought.
Under a bright full moon, a servant at the Hugo Manor announces the arrival of a letter from Lord Vandermir. Arasilla eagerly thanks her maid Audrey for the delivery, while the black-haired girl privately suspects her lady is secretly dating. Audrey tearfully recalls the lady's chaotic past involving explosive magical research and reckless horse riding stunts. Arasilla's expression turns thunderous as she reads the letter, causing Audrey to ask what is wrong.
She screams in outrage at the rudeness of Damian Vandermir and commands Audrey to read the insulting message. The formal letter simply requests a meeting at a coffee house the next day, accompanied by a cold image of the knight. Arasilla rants about his lack of decency, screaming that he waited a week only to send a message like a formal notice. As the maid tries to calm her, Arasilla points out an even more infuriating detail about the knight's reply. She fumes over him using his knightly order instead of his family name, as if his status was impressive to her. Audrey notes that omitting the noble house is odd, but Arasilla dismisses it as a sign of his massive, inflated ego. The purple-haired lady storms across her room, determined to show the arrogant jerk exactly who is in charge. A sharp scratching sound fills the air as she aggressively writes a response to settle the score between them. Arasilla holds up her letter and orders Audrey to send it immediately, much to the maid's nervous hesitation. Audrey stares at the paper with a look of pure dread, sensing the impending clash of their stubborn personalities. The petty exchange is completed as Audrey sighs over how both the sorceress and the knight are acting like children. Mistress and maid exchange quiet goodnights through the manor window as the evening finally settles. Arasilla gazes out into the night with a look of intense dislike for the obnoxious Vandermir heir. In his own quarters, Damian stares into the distance, equally annoyed by the crazy sorceress he must deal with. Both remain locked in their own schemes, determined to get exactly what they want out of this forced union. The night deepens for the angry pair as they both plan for an immediate divorce following their first arranged date. The scene shifts to the towering and majestic spires of the magic tower reaching toward the clouds. Inside a grand hall, Arasilla oversees several large glowing blue crystals that she wishes would float higher. Her juniors, Selly and Rudy, discuss the immense difficulty of levitating objects without the use of direct magic. Arasilla enthusiastically suggests adjusting the raw materials of the stones to allow for longer magical power absorption. She praises Selly for becoming capable on her own, while the green-haired junior vows to continue the research. Arasilla suddenly notices the clock and panics, realizing that time has slipped away during her experiments. She rushes toward the door, ordering her juniors to organize the research and leave it on her desk by morning. With a quick wave, Arasilla explains she has an urgent appointment and tells them to keep up the good work. Seely and Rudy are left in shock, noting that it has been ages since their senior left work this early. Selly watches her go with a knowing smirk, amused by how hard Arasilla is trying not to be late. A loud, sharp neighing sound erupts as the white horse rears up, ready to bolt. A series of heavy thuds sound as the carriage jolts, with Arasilla apologizing for getting too absorbed in her stones. The carriage thunders through the town at high speed as Arasilla screams for the driver to run even faster. The carriage arrives at the Ferenga coffee house for the highly anticipated meeting. Arasilla declares it's finally time to settle matters, while her maid Audrey begs for a moment of her time. Audrey questions her choice of attire for a first date, but Arasilla confidently asserts she is superior to him regardless of what she wears. In a moment of frantic grooming, the maid insists that her lady at least tie up her messy hair. Now looking more presentable, Arasilla instructs Audrey to wait outside while she enters the establishment alone. A soft ring sounds as Arasilla steps through the door, leaving a worried Audrey behind. A firm thud sounds as the door shuts, leaving the maid in a state of stunned silence. Audrey offers a desperate prayer to the heavens, clearly terrified of what her mistress might do. Walking into the bright cafe, Arasilla spots the silver-haired knight waiting for her at a central table. Arasilla greets Lord Vandermir with a cheerful yet clearly forced salutation. A sharp clack sounds as Damian sets down his teacup, bluntly noting her lack of punctuality. Damian stares her down as Arasilla irritably reminds him of the time he kept her waiting. Her blue eyes narrow in a sharp, defensive glare. Arasilla mocks his choice of wearing a knight's uniform in private, but he quickly retorts that she is also wearing her work clothes. Damian dismisses the bickering to suggest they order, much to Arasilla's growing annoyance. A servant delivers their beverages and wishes them an enjoyable meal, as the tension remains thick. A heavy silence falls over the table as the two adversaries sit across from each other. Arasilla points out the irony of him needing her help now after his previous arrogance. Damian remains silent, focused on his tea as he considers his response. The knight closes his yellow eyes for a moment of quiet calculation. Damian finally admits his need for her, surprising Arasilla with his sudden honesty. He proposes that they reach a formal agreement to benefit both of their interests. His gaze turns intense and steady as he prepares to negotiate. Arasilla lays out her first demand. Her sister must be spared from any marriage to his family.
Damian listens intently as she continues to outline her terms.
She demands a quick divorce once their goals are met, a condition Damian readily accepts. Having heard her side, the knight prepares to offer his own specific set of conditions for the match. The two continue their hushed conversation, surrounded by the chatter of the coffee house. They agree to work for mutual benefit, respect each other's secrets, and dissolve the marriage upon his inheritance.
Arasilla happily agrees, insisting that their prenuptial contract be officially notarized. At the edge of the scene, Audrey is overcome with emotion, weeping over the bizarre turn of events.
Arasilla explains she has framed their union as a love marriage to prevent her family from objecting. Damian insists on keeping the arrangement hidden from his own family until the last possible moment.
He reveals that his relatives are actively working to place his brother in the position of heir.
Damian explains the complicated family hierarchy involving the current and previous duchesses. Arasilla finds the web of noble inheritance drama to be incredibly tiresome and complex.
She suggests they take a more strategic approach to handling his hostile family.
Arasilla brings up the upcoming Imperial Ball, the social event of the season. She boldly proposes that they use the grand event to announce their impending marriage. Damian is visibly taken aback by the sheer audacity of her plan.
Arasilla mocks his hesitation while he warns that such a move could offend the crown prince.
Arasilla boasts of her social connections, though Damian is skeptical she has any friends at all. She insists that creating an undeniable public situation is their best defense against interference.
The discussion concludes as both parties stand to finalize their temporary alliance.
Arasilla reaches out her hand, suggesting they work through the finer details gradually. A confident and somewhat predatory grin spreads across the sorceress's face. Damian looks at her hand before a sharp thud sounds as he avoids her touch. He reminds her of their agreement to avoid physical contact, leaving Arasilla speechless. Damian mocks her poor memory as Arasilla boils with internal rage at his smugness. Unaware of the friction inside, Audrey smiles outside the window and hopes the date is a success. A sharp clack sounds as the silver-haired knight stands firm while the maid cheers nearby. Audrey watches in confusion as the knight departs alone, wondering what went wrong during the meeting. Stunned by the knight's abrupt exit, Audrey is startled to see her mistress's face behind her. Arasilla is consumed by a fiery rage, swearing vengeance while her terrified maid asks what happened. The purple-haired lady demands Audrey follow her immediately, but the maid is unsure where they are going. With a determined shout, Arasilla declares they must find a dress for the upcoming Imperial Ball.
Audrey is overwhelmed with joy at the prospect of her mistress finally wearing a dress.
At the carriage, Arasilla surprises the coachman by announcing she will take the driver's seat herself. A dull thud sounds as Arasilla climbs onto the box, ignoring the driver's shock and ordering them inside. A loud neighing erupts as Arasilla snaps the reins, forcing the horse to bolt at dangerous speeds. Inside the jolting carriage, Audrey and the old coachman are thrown about in comical distress. Arasilla races through the sunset streets toward her goal, screaming her vow of revenge into the wind. In her dressing room, Arasilla pauses when her brown-haired sister, Iris, calls out to her. Iris questions the wisdom of announcing a marriage today, but Arasilla remains firm in her decision.
Iris sighs in disbelief at the audacity of using the crown prince's party for such a declaration.
When asked if the host would mind, Arasilla claims her best friend Frederick is supportive of her. Arasilla beams with confidence, boasting about her close relationship with the imperial prince. Narrator text explains Frederick is the empire's second prince, a gentle yet skilled contender for the throne. The blonde-haired prince makes a grand entrance into the throne room, draped in a magnificent white cape. Audrey lets out a nervous groan while brushing her lady's hair, prompting Arasilla to ask what's wrong. The maid worries about the backlash from jealous women, given the massive popularity of Lord Vandermir. Iris agrees that the knight is every lady's dream, noting that even Arasilla must acknowledge his looks. A narrative scroll recounts the knight's legendary status as the youngest swordmaster in history. Damian is depicted as a formidable warrior in black armor, earning the fearsome title of Mad Dog. Iris warns that the marriage will create many enemies, but Arasilla listens with an unbothered expression. The brown-haired sister realizes that Arasilla is completely indifferent to the social consequences of her actions. A sharp snap sounds as Iris grabs Arasilla's wrist, desperate to secure a final promise from her. Iris begs her sister to limit the chaos to the announcement and not cause any additional trouble. Arasilla agrees with a bright, enthusiastic smile that does little to ease her sister's worries. Iris stares at her with deep suspicion, instinctively knowing that more trouble is brewing. Iris resigns herself to the inevitable, certain that Arasilla will ignore her plea and cause a scene. The scene transitions with the title of the story as evening falls over the kingdom.
The majestic imperial palace of the Cetron Empire stands illuminated under a starry night sky.
Tables inside the palace overflow with elegant cakes, fine wines, and sparkling decorations. Guests dressed in their finest attire mingle and gossip while enjoying refreshments at the ball. A collective murmur fills the grand hall as the main entrance doors swing open for new arrivals.
Arasilla arrives in a breathtaking red rose-themed dress, scanning the massive crowd with Iris by her side.
Onlookers whisper in surprise at the rare sight of the two sisters appearing together in public.
Arasilla narrows her eyes in sharp focus, noting to herself that her plan is finally in motion.
Noblewomen mockingly predict the sisters will be ignored by anyone who isn't a shallow admirer. Arasilla stands tall and defiant, her bold choice of attire commanding attention from across the room. A sharp clack sounds as Arasilla grins with predatory delight, ready to spring her trap. She encourages the gossip, wanting the news of her arrival to spread as far as possible. Iris tries to direct her sister's attention forward as they walk deeper into the ballroom. Arasilla blinks in surprise as she spots a familiar figure approaching her through the crowd. Damian Vandermeer appears in his formal blue uniform, looking every bit the legendary swordmaster.
The surrounding ladies scream in adoration, comparing the knight's handsome features to a walking statue. A firm thud sounds as the knight comes to a halt directly in front of the lady in red. Arasilla greets Lord Vandermeer with a radiant, forced smile that masks her internal schemes.
The crowd gasps in total disbelief as they witness the cold knight actually engaging with the sorceress. The crowd murmurs in collective shock as they wonder about the nature of the relationship between the two. Damian reveals he has been waiting specifically for her marriage announcement as he stands close to her. A man gasps as Arasilla admits she has been planning her revenge against the knight for a long time.
Whispers fly through the crowd as guests question if Lady Hugo and Lord Vandermeer are truly a couple.
A low buzz of scandalous conversation fills the grand ballroom as all eyes remain on the pair. Onlookers note that their union would be a love transcending status, bringing together a knight and a mage. Arasilla's expression tightens with resolve as she prepares to take the next bold step in her plan. A quick motion sounds as she extends her hand, asking Lord Vandermeer if he will grant her a dance. Arasilla offers a beautiful and expectant smile while waiting for the silver-haired knight to respond to her request. Audrey screams in disbelief while another guest spits out his wine in shock at the lady's boldness. The legendary knight is momentarily speechless, a faint blush crossing his face as he processes her public challenge. Damian remembers his own previous demand that they avoid all unnecessary physical contact between them.
Arasilla's eyes gleam with malice as she dares him to reject her in front of the entire assembly.
A frustrated sound escapes the knight as he grits his teeth against the trap she has set for him. A firm thud sounds as Damian finally relents and takes her hand, accepting the dance with a grimace.
He formally offers to escort her to the hall, though his internal reluctance is palpable.
The couple makes their way forward, captured from multiple perspectives as the guests watch their every move.
Iris watches them with wide, excited eyes, fully convinced that the two are actually dating in secret.
Guests offer their cheers as the pair walks away, leaving Audrey weeping into her handkerchief in the background.
After much visible effort, the two adversaries stand side by side, both looking physically ill from the forced proximity.
Elegant music fills the room as the main dance floor becomes crowded with spinning noble couples. Their hands meet in a formal dance position, the touch clearly unwelcome for both the knight and mage. Damian asks when she intends to make the announcement, and Arasilla promises to do so once the dance concludes. He accuses her of being desperate for revenge, but she tells him to relax his face before people notice. Damian insists his bad expression isn't due to her petty games, leading Arasilla to question his true reason. A slight sound accompanies his movement as the knight begins to explain himself while they continue their dance. A firm thud sounds as he pulls her closer, his expression remaining cold despite the intimate gesture. A rustle of fabric sounds as noblewomen perform graceful curtsies on the perimeter of the dance floor. A herald announces a message from the crown prince stating Arasilla will now make a very important announcement. Iris is caught completely off guard by the sudden announcement, her face pale with mounting dread. Nearby guests exchange bewildered looks as they wait for the sorceress to speak to the gathered crowd.
Arasilla and Damian stand together at the center of attention, the eyes of the entire empire upon them.
Damian thinks to himself that the time for the announcement has finally arrived as he prepares for the fallout. With a jubilant shout, Arasilla announces her marriage to none other than Lord Damian Vandermeer. Audrey nearly chokes on her wine while a mysterious blonde man watches the scene with a pained expression. A bright flash of light accompanies the shock of the announcement, blinding several onlookers in the front row.
The name of the couple echoes through the hall as the guests struggle to believe the shocking news.
Damian is horrified by her lack of context, while Arasilla cheerfully bids everyone to enjoy the rest of the party. The blonde man suddenly calls out to her, his voice full of desperation as he tries to get her attention. A loud thud sounds as Frederick falls to his knees, begging Arasilla for a clear and detailed explanation. This man is Frederick, the second prince of the Cetron Empire, who appears devastated by the sudden marriage news. The scene shifts back to a quiet academy building bathed in the soft light of a previous morning. A younger Frederick panics as he realizes he will be late for the important entrance ceremony if he doesn't hurry. A soft sound of footsteps alerts him to a girl nearby, whom he asks for directions to the ceremony. A quick sound accompanies her gesture as a young girl points him toward the correct building without looking back. Frederick is instantly struck by her beauty, falling deeply in love with the purple-haired girl at first sight. Returning to the present, Arasilla strikes a dramatic pose while continuing her grand public announcement of their union. Frederick watches her from the crowd, his heart breaking as he realizes his worst fears have been realized. A narrative scroll explains that Frederick's tragic and unrequited love for Arasilla has persisted since that very first day. Frederick approaches the couple, his voice trembling as he demands to know the details of her supposed marriage. Arasilla and Damian stand together amidst the swirling rumors, though the knight appears visibly shaken by the public scrutiny. A shocked gasp escapes Frederick as he confronts Arasilla for keeping her marriage plans from him. The grand hall falls into a hushed reverence as guests realize the crown prince is standing right in their midst. Frederick's eyes widen in realization as he becomes painfully aware of the countless onlookers witnessing his outburst. An internal narrative notes the humiliation of causing such a disgraceful and public scene. A heavy weight of judgment descends upon the prince as the crowd stares at him from the shadows. Arasilla finally addresses Frederick, her voice steady as the prince flinches at her cold tone. Offering a polite yet distant smile, the sorceress suggests they find a private place to discuss the matter further. Frederick remains frozen in grief, his expression one of pure heartbreak as he struggles to process her words. The scene shifts to the quiet palace gardens, where a secluded pavilion stands under the vast starry sky. Arasilla teases the prince for breaking his perfect image, but he admits his composure failed because of her sudden news. Frederick questions the logic of her choice, pointing out the social divide between a knight and a mage of her standing. Arasilla remains unswayed, asking why their different roles should ever hinder her decision to marry. When the prince reminds her of her past distaste for marriage, she simply claims the knight was the one to change her mind. With tears welling in his eyes, Frederick asks if she has forgotten the shared history between them. A warm light fills the memory of a quiet library where a younger version of the pair spent their academy days together. The young prince blushes as he proposes a pact for them to marry if they both remain single in the future. Returning to the present, Arasilla is appalled that he would cling to a trivial promise made 7 years ago during their freshman year. Frederick insists she was serious at the time, but she dismisses the memory as a joke she only went along with for fun. Desperation colors his voice as the prince confesses his deep affection for her, wounded by her lack of communication. Arasilla softens her expression slightly, acknowledging his care for her but only framing it within the bounds of their friendship. She offers a brief apology for the surprise, but makes it clear that her choice is final and expects his compliance. Placing a hand over her heart, the sorceress demands that he respect her decision to marry Lord Vandermir. Frederick stands in a brooding silence, the weight of her rejection casting a dark shadow over his features.
A bitter smile crosses the prince's face as he dwells on the cruel requirement to respect her union with another man.
Frederick finally turns away, whispering a final, hollow apology to the woman who has broken his heart. A firm thud sounds with each step as the prince retreats through the gardens, leaving Arasilla alone in the pavilion.
Arasilla watches him go with a bewildered look, genuinely confused as to why the prince is reacting with such intense anger. From a high balcony, a silent witness watches the defeated prince walk through the estate grounds. Damian stares down at his rival with a cold, piercing gaze, his thoughts remaining hidden behind a mask of stone. The night sky stretches over the quiet kingdom as the chaos of the ball finally begins to settle. The following morning, newspapers across the empire buzz with the scandalous news of the union between the master knight and the mage. Commoners at a local cafe gossip over the headlines, predicting that such a match will bring nothing but trouble. The scene transitions to the majestic Hugo estate where the couple arrives for a monumental meeting with her family. Now dressed in a blue gown, Arasilla cheerfully asks the silver-haired knight if he is prepared for the encounter. Damian admits his lack of readiness, his face reflecting the heavy burden of the task ahead. He scolds her for the incredibly short notice regarding the family meeting, questioning her sanity in the process.
When the knight asks for advice on dealing with her relatives, Arasilla warns him there is one major hurdle to overcome. With a playful wink, she asks if he is truly ready to face a family unwilling to let go of their beloved daughter.
Inside the estate, Arasillia's father and her small brother greet the knight with a chilling and unwelcoming presence.
Damian breaks into a nervous sweat, sensing the murderous intent radiating from the two men like predatory beasts. Marchioness Hugo offers a warm and polite greeting, providing a stark contrast to her husband's icy stare. Damian offers a respectful bow as he formally introduces himself to the heads of the Hugo household. A loud shout rings out as little Adrian blocks the way, declaring his absolute opposition to the marriage. The young boy stands his ground with a fierce expression, demanding that the knight not take his sister away from them. Iris tries to calm the situation as Adrian argues that his sister is far too young to be wed to anyone. Adrian rattles off the knight's legendary titles while still refusing to yield, leaving Arasilla shocked by the boy's knowledge. Damian looks down at the child with a serious expression, preparing to address the small obstacle in his path.
A sharp gasp escapes the boy as the knight leans in, his sudden proximity causing Adrian to tremble in fear.
Damian's eyes glow with a terrifying intensity as he vows to marry Arasilla regardless of any threat, daring the boy to try and stop him. The purple-haired boy clears his throat with a loud, nervous sound. Adrian clings to his mother while his father stares down the silver-haired knight with an icy, judgmental gaze. Damian asks the Marquis if he hadn't challenged him to be ready to take away his second daughter. A sharp clink sounds as a formal dinner is served to the gathered noble family and their guest.
The family gathers for an incredibly tense meal at the long marble dining table. Marcus Hugo sets down his wine with a firm thud, intending to ask the knight a direct question.
He demands to know the real reason for the marriage, suspecting it isn't driven by political gain. The Marquis remarks on his daughter's extraordinary nature, and Damian respectfully agrees that Lady Hugo is indeed remarkable. Damian explains that her uniqueness is exactly why he liked her, believing their life together would never be dull.
The Marchioness speaks up, questioning if such a trivial reason is enough to justify a lifelong commitment.
She asks the knight what he will do if their married life eventually becomes stifling for them both. Looking her in the eye, Damian promises to constantly communicate and adjust with Arasilla as they move forward. A sharp tack sounds as the Marchioness places her fork down, emphasizing that marriage is life's most important decision. She reminds the couple that they must be fully prepared to spend an entire lifetime together. Addressing both the knight and the sorceress, she asks if they have truly considered the weight of such a promise. The Marchioness stares at the pair with a piercing, unwavering intensity that demands an honest answer. She leans forward, asking one more time if they are genuinely ready for a lifetime of unity. Both Arasilla and Damian are struck by the gravity of the word together, their expressions reflecting sudden doubt. A heavy silence falls over the table as the couple struggles to find a convincing response to her question. The Marchioness continues to wait in silence, her cold gaze putting immense pressure on the two of them. With a sudden outburst, she declares that if they aren't absolutely certain, they shouldn't be getting married at all.
Damian clarifies that it merely took time to realize his future was already near, while Arasilla insists they've discussed everything.
Arasilla laughs it off, claiming the marriage means everything to them, though the knight appears visibly stressed by her lie. Softening her tone slightly, the Marchioness prepares to deliver one final warning to the Master Knight. She reminds him that Arasilla will never be a traditional wife because of her grand ambition to become Tower Master. Damian shuts his eyes, stating he is strong enough to stand on his own without needing his wife's constant support. He vows never to interfere with Arasilla's choices or her professional pursuits once they are wed. The Marchioness is floored by his stance, double-checking if he really won't hinder her work at the Magic Tower. When Damian confirms it's her choice alone, a sudden crash sounds as the shocked family members nearly drop their glasses. A narrative note explains that even mages are notoriously conservative, often mocking women and commoners who try to learn magic. Knights are described as even more rigid, shown aggressively protecting the sacred realm of their order from those they deem lowly. Overjoyed by his open-minded nature, the family bursts into laughter while Arasilla gives an enthusiastic thumbs up.
Marquis Hugo wipes away a happy tear, while Arasilla jokingly notes that the knight doesn't actually match her that well.
The couple ask the family to stop worrying and instead focus on helping them make the union a success. Little Adrian wipes his eyes while Iris looks on, the boy finally beginning to accept the situation. A soft sniffle sounds as Adrian timidly admits he has one final question for his future brother-in-law.
Arasilla and Damian pause their meal, turning their full attention to the young boy's upcoming inquiry. Adrian blushes deeply, asking if Lord Vandermir is the type of man who shows a lot of affection.
Arasilla chokes on her wine with a messy spray while the knight's face turns a bright, embarrassed red. Adrian explains that his sister always claimed to prefer men who were sweet, charming, and full of affection. A warm memory shows a younger Arasilla encouraging the boy, her smile bright and full of sisterly love. Looking up at the knight with tearful eyes, Adrian begs him to do one specific thing for his sister. With a trembling but sincere smile, the boy asks Damian to shower Arasilla with as much affection as possible. A loud thud sounds as Adrian officially entrusts his sister to Damian, leaving the knight horrified and the sorceress in stitches. As evening falls on the estate, Arasilla teases the knight for the hilarious conclusion to their formal meeting. A soft crunch sounds with each step as the family walks together across the courtyard under the sunset sky.
Marquis Hugo calls out to Lord Vandermir, stopping him as they walk toward the estate's Eichser.
The Marquis turns toward the knight with a calm and surprisingly gentle expression, wishing to speak one-on-one.
A soft sound accompanies his gesture as the Marquis extends his hand toward the younger Bidden.
The two men stand together in the warm glow of the setting sun as the Marquis reaches out to the knight. Marquis Hugo admits that he had always hoped Arasilla would remain safely protected under his care. He reflects on the bittersweet reality that children are never meant to live exactly as their parents wish. Damian listens with a grave expression. The Marquis asks the knight to strictly uphold the promise he made at dinner regarding Arasilla's freedom. A firm grip marks their handshake as the master knight tells the father not to worry. Looking the Marquis in the eye, Damian affirms that he truly meant every word he said. A bright smile crosses the older man's face as he voices his sincere gratitude to the younger knight. Damian announces that he shall take his leave as the purple-haired mage prepares to escort him out. A series of soft thuds echoes as little Adrian runs out to beg his sister to return soon. Waving with a cheerful grin, Arasilla tells her family to head back inside the estate. They walk toward the distant gigs. Damian remarks that it is clear the purple-haired woman grew up being very well loved. Arasilla stops in her tracks and looks at him with a bewildered, questioning gaze. She confirms his thought, stating that she was not just loved, but deeply and abundantly cherished. The silver-haired knight notes that such an upbringing explains why she always carries herself with such confidence. Laughing it off, Arasilla claims it is just her personality, though her family's support helps her walk taller. The sorceress looks at him with a curious expression, asking why he would suddenly ask such a question. Damian looks away with hidden thoughts. A dark memory shows maids laughing over a young boy named Oscar, mocking how adorable he is with artificial affection. The boy watches from the dark. Returning to the present, Damian hesitates before admitting he was merely curious about her source of power. He defines it as her rather eccentric charm, earning him a flat look and a question about his sanity. A soft crunch sounds as they walk, and Arasilla reminds him they must schedule a meeting with his family. She predicts that word of their engagement has likely already reached the ducal household and caused a major stir. Damian warns her that his relatives will be arriving in the capital as early as the day after tomorrow. Arasilla nods, telling him to simply send a letter when the time for the formal meeting finally comes. A sudden shout rings out as Arasilla asks if there is anything else she should prepare for or be cautious of. With a grimace, Damian tells her to just brace herself to deal with his ever-annoying second son. He offers a final, charming smile as he promises to write to the sorceress again very soon. The carriage departs at sunset's glow. Arasilla dwells on the mention of the annoying second son with a thoughtful and curious look. She concludes that she had best prepare herself well for the upcoming encounter with the Vandermir family. Night falls over the Vandermir estate. A sharp crash sounds as a vase is shattered on the floor, accompanied by a furious scream at Damian. Sophie Vandermir stands over the debris in a green gown, calling her stepson a wretched little rat. She rants about him coveting her son's rightful place, while the maids tremble in fear beside her. Trembling with unhinged rage, the Duchess repeats the knight's name as if it were a curse. She orders a maid to prepare the carriage immediately, her eyes wide with a terrifying, vengeful purpose. Sophie vows that it is finally time for her to pay a visit to her own second son. Arasilla arrives at the royal palace. Dressed in a floral gown and holding a parasol, Arasilla tells herself she is steeled for the formal meeting. An attendant bows, ushering Lady Hugo through the grand doors of the ducal estate. A sudden, angry shout rings out as someone declares that Lord Vandermir is an absolute fool. A loud thud sounds as a blonde girl crashes headlong into Arasilla, knocking them both backward. Eldest daughter Nora White is introduced. A sharp gasp escapes Arasilla as she looks at the girl who has just collided with her. Arasilla points out their significant height difference, claiming she could barely even see the much shorter girl. Nora screams with a tear-streaked face, declaring that she shall never forgive Lady Hugo for this. The blonde noblewoman accuses her of always stealing the men she fancies and intentionally humiliating her. Arasilla looks at the girl with a bewildered expression, bluntly stating she doesn't even know who she is. Damian recognizes the blonde noblewoman and addresses her as Lady White. The knight questions why Nora is still lingering, while Arasilla finally recalls the girl's identity. A narrative note explains the House of White lost a Manastone mine to Arasilla's family.
Arasilla remembers her father explaining that the Whites have despised their family ever since that loss.
Nora tries to approach Damian, but he warns he will take legal action if she comes any closer. Her frustration is met with a sharp stop, as Arasilla notes how surprisingly obedient the girl is. Damian bluntly asks if she is referring to her own one-sided infatuation with him. He orders the butler to escort her out as Nora continues to cry out for his grace. The couple proceeds inside as the purple-haired mage offers a curt nod of agreement.
Nora screams a final warning to Lady Hugo while being dragged away by the staff.
Arasilla responds with a playful and mischievous wink. A sudden, loud "ack" rings out as Nora vows to make the sorceress pay for this humiliation. Arasilla wonders how the girl got in, while Damian notes she just appeared out of nowhere. She expresses relief that the scene ended before his family arrived for the formal meeting. With a stressed expression, Damian reveals that his relatives are actually already present in the estate. Arasilla is horrified, asking if they witnessed the embarrassing commotion that just occurred. Arasilla decides to head inside and resolve things properly, ignoring the knight's attempts to stop her. She thinks to herself that the ducal family will stop at nothing to prevent this marriage. The sorceress expects them to try and cut her off from any future Vandermir inheritance. Looking her in the eyes, Damian asks if she is truly certain about proceeding with the meeting. Arasilla is incredulous, asking if he is seriously suggesting they call the whole thing off now. She tells the knight to stop worrying about her and focus on his own composure. The sorceress puts on a radiant and charming smile. A sudden rhythmic knock sounds against the grand doors of the drawing room. Arasilla introduces herself with a polite bow and thanks the family for their invitation. The couple stands before the seated Duchess Sophie and the Duke, who watches from the window. Alex Vandermir asks the woman if she truly intends to wed his son Damian. The silver-haired Duke greets her with a dismissive and skeptical grunt. Sophie asks why someone so devoted to being single would suddenly insist on getting married. She looks Arasilla in the eye, accusing her of having base intentions toward her stepson. A narrative bubble notes that Damian has dealt with many women who had impure motives. Sophie tells her to understand why they must question the true purpose behind her proposal. While Damian bristles at the insult, Arasilla calmly states that she completely understands their concern. She continues to maintain her cheerful and blushing expression. Arasilla claims her passion for beauty is too strong to let a chance like this slip away. Sophie warns her that marriage is serious, but Arasilla insists she has never been more serious. The sorceress offers a brilliant and overwhelming smile. She celebrates her decision with a joyful and energetic display of passion. Arasilla claims that outward beauty and elegance are the only things that truly matter in life. A narrative note describes her declaration of beauty worship as shockingly shameless. The entire family is left speechless and flabbergasted by her bizarre and unhinged response. A loud, sudden bang sounds as Sophie declares Arasilla is not a suitable match for a knight. Arasilla wonders if her plan worked while Sophie complains about the inconvenient nature of the match. A thought bubble describes a blazing fire within the purple-haired mage. Sophie is terrified by Arasilla's intense gaze as she asks what exactly is blazing within her. Arasilla clarifies her passion for beauty, declaring Damian shall be the first in her collection. Sophie breaks into a cold sweat, realizing she completely underestimated the woman's madness. She concludes that Arasilla isn't just eccentric, but is actually a top-tier lunatic. The narrative explains that Arasilla's relentless personality completely dominated the formal meeting. With a cheerful wave from Arasilla, the Duke and Duchess are shown having lost all will to resist. Damian bids Lady Hugo farewell as Arasilla offers her own polite parting from the carriage doorway. The sorceress leans out with a small smile, locking eyes with the silver-haired knight one last time. Damian remains silent, his gaze fixed on her with a slight, uncharacteristic blush. Arasilla brightly remarks that only the formal wedding ceremony remains on their agenda now. With a soft, thoughtful expression, the knight quietly agrees with her. Lifting the skirts of her pink gown, Arasilla turns to fully board the carriage. The carriage rolls away into the distance as a warm sunset bathes the estate grounds. A sharp voice calling out his name snaps Damian back to the present. Sophie Vandermir stands behind him, asking if he truly believes he can steal what rightfully belongs to Oscar. Looking deeply insulted, she claims he has made a complete mockery of their noble ducal house. Damian responds to her vitriol with a cold and mocking smirk. The Duchess demands to know if he is actually smiling and warns him not to become arrogant. With a furious scream, she declares that, in the end, he is nothing but a failure. Damian calmly suggests that while that may be true now, he might emerge as the victor someday. A dark narrative bubble notes he intends to succeed just as she once did, by seizing what belonged to another. The knight walks away toward the mansion, leaving the Duchess fuming in the shadows. Sophie's face is a mask of wide-eyed, incoherent rage as she tries to find her words. Without looking back, Damian dismisses himself from the confrontation. He ascends the grand stairs, leaving his stepmother alone in the courtyard. Sophie clenches her fist till it shakes, noting he is his mother's prideful and dignified son through and through. Her expression turns truly sinister as she vows to see who is the one smiling in the end. The scene shifts to a private meeting between Marquis Ned Hugo and Duke Vandermir. Massive treasure chests, overflowing with gold bars and glittering gems, are laid out on the table. Alex promises to repay the Marquis several times over if he agrees to call off the marriage immediately. The Duke sweatily suggests that his eldest son, Oscar, would be a much better match than his second. Ned Hugo remains unmoved, stating that only Damian is the perfect suit for his daughter Arasilla. Alex wonders if the Marquis is instead trying to arrange a marriage between Oscar and his eldest daughter Iris. The parents continue their tense exchange over the mountain of bribes. A memory shows a younger Damian training until he is breathless in a cold stone courtyard. Sophie rants about his troublesome nature in exile abroad, asking if the Hugo family is truly certain. The purple-haired Marquise looks at the Duchess with a calm, almost pitying expression. She firmly declares that her family has no intention of backing out of this marriage agreement. Sophie and Alex share a look of pure desperation, thinking they must stop the union at all costs. A sudden, rhythmic knock sounds at the door as a servant brings an urgent letter from the palace. Ned notes it is quite fortunate that the message arrived while they were all together in the room. The Hugo family points out that this marriage is actually proceeding by the Emperor's direct order. Ned explains that he immediately reported the initial situation to the sovereign at the royal palace. He told the Emperor they would honor the late Duke Vandermir's will and the promise made to the crown. A soft, knowing chuckle sounds as the blonde Emperor reviews the report in his hand. The servant presents a tray with 2 formal letters addressed specifically to Duke Vandermir and Marquis Hugo. Alex watches with a nervous, sweating expression as the imperial summons is handed over. Ned Hugo offers a radiant smile as he addresses Alex as his dear in-law for the first time. The Vandermir couple is left completely horrified and speechless by the turn of events. Their carriage speeds through the busy streets of the capital city. Inside, Sophie panics about the report to the Emperor and fears Damian will now surely become the heir. Alex sits in grim silence, dwelling on the terrifying thought of his second son taking everything. A dark memory reveals a young, silver-haired Damian standing alone with a single brown suitcase. A man steps forward to escort the young master away to the port for his long exile. Alex looks down at his young son with cold indifference, asking if he has any last words to say. The small boy looks up with a chilling and intense glare, his yellow eyes burning with silent vengeance. A memory shows the silver-haired young master calling his father a coward who hides behind women. Duke Alex Vandermir looks completely stunned by the unfolding situation. Alex calls out to Sophie, who responds with a worried and questioning look. Alex tells Sophie to provoke Lady Hugo tomorrow while he handles the rest. Junior mages frantically ask if it is true their senior is marrying a knight. Arasilla confirms the wedding is next month as Sally reacts with extreme shock. The brown-haired mage calls out to his senior while Arasilla remains calm. Sally asks if she is quitting the magic tower like other female mages do. Arasilla questions why she would ever quit just because of a marriage. She confidently declares her ambition to eventually become the next tower master. The junior mages celebrate her resolve with an enthusiastic and joyful cheer. A rhythmic knock sounds against the door as Sally invites the visitor inside. Tower Master Philip enters the room specifically looking for Arasilla.
Arasilla is startled and stands quickly upon seeing the master's arrival.
Philip mentions that he read about her upcoming marriage in the newspaper. Philip expected to hear the news in person, and Arasilla offers her apologies. The white-haired master invites her to join him for a cup of tea. Philip admits he initially thought Arasilla had completely lost her mind.
Arasilla laughs and jokingly claims the master is the one who is becoming senile.
Philip recalls her bold and fearless entrance into his laboratory years ago. Young Arasilla once demanded the master's title. Philip told her to graduate first. Arasilla explains it is just a mutual deal and they will eventually divorce. Philip asks what exactly she hopes to gain from the silver-haired guy. Philip asks if she remembers a past case of a mage marrying a knight.
Arasilla asks if he is referring specifically to the infamous Litterson incident.
A dark chapter titled The Litterson Incident begins to unfold. A mage once murdered her husband, a swordmaster, in a calculated national scandal.
A loud sudden quang sounds as Arasilla slams the table over the reincarnation rumors. Arasilla furiously dares her detractors to say their insults directly to her face.
A soft dock sounds as Philip sets his cup down, expressing his worry. Philip explains that female mages faced harsh scrutiny and open criticism after that scandal.
The Tower Master looks serious as he prepares to ask a final question.
Arasilla listens intently as the master begins to speak. A sudden, tight quack sounds as Arasilla clenches her skirt and confirms her decision.
She vows to proceed with the marriage, calling it worth more than her future.
A soft kuduk sounds as Philip offers his support to the determined mage. Philip asks if anything has transpired between her and Prince Frederick. The master notes that the prince's regular letters to the tower have suddenly stopped. Arasilla is gripped by a frantic and wide-eyed realization.
She realizes with horror that she completely forgot all about Prince Frederick.
The warm glow of a sunset illuminates the grand facade of the Imperial Palace.
Arasilla writes an apology to Frederick, privately wondering why he is sulking.
Prince Frederick finds the letter to be a typical example of Arasilla's style. The blonde-haired prince sits in his ornate chair, still feeling deeply confused.
Frederick questions the secret relationship, knowing Arasilla only acts for her own benefit.
Suspicion flickers in the prince's eyes as he senses something is definitely up. Frederick orders an investigation into Damian and constant surveillance on Arasilla's movements. A sudden, sharp tack rings out as Frederick places his hand on her letter. Frederick decides that he will have to delay his response to her message. Standing with a determined gaze, Frederick declares he still cannot accept this marriage. A bustling town square scene unfolds. A rhythmic clip-clop sounds as a carriage arrives. Duke Alex Vandermir tells his wife to agitate Lady Hugo during their meeting tomorrow while he handles the rest. Sophie Vandermir is struck with sudden adoration. The Duchess swoons over her husband's good looks, to which he calmly agrees.
Sophie gleefully plans to completely ruin Lady Hugo's mood during their encounter.
Sunlight glints off the grand facade of Damian's mansion. Damian greets his visitors by coldly advising them to be on time when summoning someone. Sophie demands to know why Damian is present, but Arasilla cheerfully explains she was the one who invited him. Arasilla winks playfully as a fuming Sophie insists the meeting was supposed to be strictly between the two of them. Damian firmly states that since both he and the lady are busy, this will be the last summons before their wedding. Sophie shouts that he always knows exactly how to wound his mother with his harsh words. Damian questions her claim, noting he is tired of only being treated like a son when it benefits her, leaving her speechless.
Arasilla shifts the conversation by asking the Duchess for the specific reason they were called there today.
Sophie directs her attention elsewhere as her maid acknowledges the command to bring the items.
A soft swish sounds as the maid presents a formal document to Arasilla.
Arasilla looks at the contents and notes what the paper represents.
The document is revealed to be a detailed and extravagant dowry list. The list includes incredibly expensive jewelry, dresses, and a staggering sum of money. Horrified, Arasilla asks if a new house in the capital is excessive, but Sophie casually explains they intend to move into Damian's future marital home. Sophie smugly claims the house originally belonged to her family and demands compensation from Arasilla for its use. Arasilla asks to find a compromise together as Damian requests to see the document himself. Sipping her tea, Sophie flatly informs Damian that there will be no room for compromise on these terms. A cold glint shines in the knight's yellow eyes. A sharp thud sounds as Damian drops the documents onto the table. Sophie repeats her refusal to compromise, but Damian calmly mentions his upcoming meeting with the Emperor. As Sophie reacts with confusion, Damian warns that proceeding with these demands will cause serious conflict between their two families. The knight's gaze remains focused and intense. Damian suggests asking a mediator who can convince everyone at once, prompting a wide-eyed Sophie to ask if he is threatening her. Damian denies any threat, stating he is simply giving her the choice of whether or not to escalate the situation further. Sophie stares in silent, seething fury at the young man. Sophie pivots the argument, suggesting that Arasilla should come live with them at the ducal estate after the wedding. Arasilla apologetically declines, explaining that her work at the Mage Tower makes such an arrangement impossible. Sophie looks shocked and argues that it is only natural for a woman to quit her position at the tower upon marriage. Arasilla maintains she has no intention of quitting, leading Sophie to ask who will support Damian if she continues working. Sophie asks who will manage the household and warns that she may have to oppose the marriage again if these conditions persist. Standing her ground, Arasilla declares she is not marrying to be a support system for someone else's son, shocking the Duchess. Sophie sneers at Arasilla's upbringing, a comment that causes the lavender-haired mage to bristle with anger. A sudden, tight squeeze sounds as Arasilla clenches her fist, asking if the Duchess just insulted her family. Arasilla retorts that her parents taught her not to spend her life cleaning up after other people's sons. She continues by stating she was also taught to respond to an adult's nonsense with cold, hard facts. Sophie screams in outrage at the accusation of talking nonsense, while Arasilla puts on an act of feigned shock. Arasilla mockingly wonders whose fault it is if her words were interpreted that way, driving Sophie into a state of incoherent rage. A loud bang sounds as Sophie slams the table, telling Damian to stay out of a conversation between ladies, but he insists Arasilla will live with him. Damian asks when he was ever treated as family and wonders if she is finally acknowledging them as part of the house. The knight watches the fallout with a faint, satisfied smirk. He advises Sophie to stop unless she truly intends to start training Arasilla as her official successor. A sharp crunch sounds as Sophie clenches her fists, screaming at Damian for suggesting she should acknowledge Arasilla as her heir. Arasilla mockingly apologizes, claiming she simply has no choice but to follow Damian's wishes. The mage giggles behind her hand as the silver-haired knight looks on. Sophie Vandermeer screams in rage as a giant teasing Arasilla looms in her mind. Damian abruptly ends the meeting as he walks away from a shouting Sophie. The Duchess stares with a look of intense and suspicious hatred. Arasilla appears radiantly happy as she basks in a flowery atmosphere. A gloved hand reaches out toward the lavender-haired mate. Damian offers to escort Arasilla to her carriage personally. The knight gently takes her hand, leading her through the mansion. Arasilla looks dazed, clearly caught off guard by his sudden attentiveness. A rhythmic tiok-tiok sounds as the pair descends the grand ornate staircase. Arasilla lists the remaining wedding preparations, including invitations and her dress. Damian advises her to only prepare half of the wedding dowry. Damian promises to handle the rest, and Arasilla excitedly agrees to spend freely. The knight notes the contract is next, but Arasilla cites her busy work schedule. Damian suggests a temple visit, prompting Arasilla to tease his sword training habits. A sudden ta-ta-ta sounds as Arasilla runs off, leaving a dark-clothed Damian behind. A loud ooh-ack sounds as the running mage suddenly loses her footing. Arasilla gasps in horror as she begins to tumble down the stairs. A swift whack sounds as a strong hand reaches out to her. A soft tiok sounds as Damian catches her in a sudden, protective embrace. A sharp wheck sounds as they lock eyes in a moment of blushing shock. A swift wheck sounds as the knight pulls her back to her feet. Damian scolds her for her carelessness, his voice full of genuine concern. Arasilla is visibly unsettled by his uncharacteristically sincere and intense demeanor. A heavy silence follows the warning that anything could happen before their wedding. Looking small on the stairs, Arasilla stares up at the looming silver-haired man. A soft mimiam sounds as Damian presses his lips together in grim silence. A sharp kuh sounds as he clenches his fist, repeating his warning to her. A rhythmic cheek-chook sounds as Damian walks away, ordering the butler to escort her. Arasilla calls out to him, but he continues walking without looking back. The mage watches him go, privately wondering why he is acting so strange. Damian glances back with a look of deep hidden sorrow. The scene shifts to the grand facade of the Marquis Hugo's estate. Arasilla's mother scolds her for lack of enthusiasm regarding the upcoming ceremony. A loud kiang sounds as Arasilla snaps that she will silence her critics herself. Lying on a couch, Arasilla tries to postpone her dress fitting for work. A chaotic pas de deux sounds as the mage throws a tantrum on the blue sofa. Iris reassures her stressed mother that Arasilla always pulls through in the end. The mother turns her attention to Iris, asking about her own marriage plans. Iris nervously promises to start her own search for a husband soon. A playful hi-hi sounds as Arasilla jokes about the wedding not happening. A sudden borreltuck sounds as the mother looms with a terrifying demonic aura. The mother sighs in exhaustion, claiming Iris is her only reliable daughter. Iris smiles weakly while promising to handle things for her mother. A soft ha-am sounds as Iris asks for less pressure on her sister. A soft poak sounds as Arasilla clings to Iris, complaining of suffocation. A loud bugle sounds as the mother explodes, demanding Arasilla act like her sister. A frantic chak-chak sounds as the mother chases Arasilla through the room. A sharp diok sounds as the mother pinches Arasilla's cheek, forcing a fitting. Iris comforts her sister, reminding her that this is a marriage for love. Arasilla shocks Iris by noting she would be the bride if this were arranged. Brown-haired Iris insists she would never sacrifice Arasilla to a political marriage. The lavender-haired mage asks if sacrificing Iris is any better. After Iris denies the accusation, Arasilla questions why she is being spared while her sister is forced into an arrangement. Iris explains that she is doing this because her sister has a dream to follow. Arasilla wonders about Iris's own aspirations, only to hear that marrying well is her goal. The purple-haired woman encourages Arasilla to find her own passion.
A stunned silence falls over the brown-haired sister.
Realizing the time, Arasilla suddenly shouts that she is running late. The mage rushes out, asking Iris to keep her departure for work a secret from their mother. Iris watches her go with a look of deep concern. Clenching her hand over her heart, the sister appears deeply troubled. Arasilla announces her departure to her colleagues at the Mage Tower. Her fellow mages look completely drained from weeks of stalled research on floating stones. Outside, a man in a brown suit greets Arasilla as Lady Hugo. Caught off guard, the mage asks the man for his identity. The man claims he was sent by Lord Vandermir.
Arasilla remembers telling Damian she would be staying late today.
When asked where they are going, the man states they're heading to the estate. The mage realizes this must be the threat Damian warned her about. She recalls Damian's warning that opponents of the marriage might try to intervene before the wedding. A quick tap sounds as Arasilla reaches for the carriage door. Determined to uncover their plans, the mage steps inside as the man with the goatee watches. A rhythmic clattering sounds as the carriage wheel begins to spin. The carriage travels through the city streets under the night sky. The driver gives a subtle signal as they proceed. From a vantage point, several armed men watch the carriage pass. A red-haired mercenary with a facial scar watches with a cold gaze. Inside, the man with the goatee notes that their target is a noble mage. Arasilla sits in silent composure, keeping her eyes closed. The scene shifts to Duke Alex Vandermir standing in his office before his kneeling subordinates. The gray-haired Duke orders his men to injure the woman so she is incapacitated. He coldly suggests that breaking a few of her limbs should be sufficient. Back in the carriage, Arasilla startles the man with the goatee by addressing him directly. A humming magic energy sounds as the mage begins to manifest a spell in her palm. Glowing with power, Arasilla mockingly asks if he would mind if she broke his limbs instead. A massive boom sounds as the carriage is obliterated by a magical explosion. The red-haired mercenary is shocked by the sudden turn of events. Thick smoke and debris fill the air where the carriage once stood. The injured man tells the others to run as the mercenary realizes Arasilla is far from delicate. Stepping through the wreckage, Arasilla demands the cowards show themselves. A mercenary leaps into the air, swinging a spiked club toward the mage. Calmly focusing, Arasilla prepares a concentrated magical orb at her fingertips. A powerful blast sounds as the purple magic hurls the attacker away. Panicked, the red-haired mercenary commands his men to strike now. Several men rush forward with clubs as Arasilla remains unfazed. Looking bored, the mage sighs that the situation has become annoying. Mana swirls around Arasillia's feet as she prepares a magical maneuver. A magic spark sounds as she deftly avoids and counters the incoming blows. A wooden snap sounds as a club is shattered by her defensive aura. The mercenary stares in disbelief that none of their attacks have landed. A mercenary with a black eye patch looks on in utter terror. Arasilla towers over her captors with glowing purple magic, mockingly asking if they knew the truth about mages. A sharp snap sounds as Arasilla clenches her hand, explaining that Mage Tower members receive star badges for merit. Purple magic binds the attackers as she notes the Tower Master has 7 stars while most mages have none. Arasilla reveals she has earned 4 stars and warns them not to expect a peaceful end. A loud scream sounds as the bound mercenaries cower beneath Arasilla's terrifying demonic shadow. The scene shifts to a serene night view of the Grand Vandermir estate. Damian stands at the top of the stairs looking down at the battered mercenaries. The silver-haired knight asks about the men, and Arasilla notes that his father apparently sent her these gifts. The lavender-haired mage looks intently at the silver-haired man. Damian stares back with a look of stunned intensity. The man with the goatee confesses that the Duke of Vandermir was indeed the one who ordered the attack. The captive mercenary explains the order was to injure Lady Hugo just enough to incapacitate her for a while. A quick turn sounds as a blushing Damian apologizes and asks Arasilla if she is hurt. Arasilla confirms she is fine, but questions why the knight is the one apologizing. The mage jokingly asks if he sent the men, prompting an offended Damian to ask if she thinks he is insane. Damian insists that he likely wants her safety more than she does herself. Arasilla is visibly taken aback by the weight of his uncharacteristically sincere words. Resting her foot on a mercenary, Arasilla asks Damian to clean up the mess since the men are scaring her. A soft nodding sounds as Damian summons his butler to attend to the situation. Rhythmic footsteps sound as the butler leads the bound mercenaries away under Arasilla's watchful gaze. Damian turns back to the mage, stating he wants to double-check something. The silver-haired knight looks at her with a troubled and searching expression. A sparkling atmosphere fills the room as Arasilla claims she is more determined than ever to see the marriage through. A shimmering aura surrounds her as she adds that she won't let her sister be miserable by marrying the Vandermir heir. Damian muses that marrying his brother would be miserable, noting she seems more certain of that than he is. The knight's golden eye narrows as he focuses intently on the mage. Arasilla declares that the task they have ahead of them is not impossible. Arasilla suspects the Duke is treasonous, while Damian wonders if she means his cowardly, spineless brother. Damian sighs in frustration as a giggling Arasilla tells him to just bear with things for today. Arasilla looks up at the knight with a radiant and genuinely happy smile. Damian looks at her with a softened, blushing expression as he agrees with her. The knight promises to handle the aftermath of the attack to ensure no more hassle before their upcoming wedding. As the night grows late, Arasilla announces that she must be heading off. The mage looks back at him, mentioning they can discuss the contract terms tomorrow. Surrounded by blue roses, the pair shares a moment of intense, close proximity. A close-up of Damian's golden eye reflects his internal conflict. A startled gasp sounds as Arasilla looks up with wide, shimmering eyes. Arasilla asks if that was a surprise face attack, but Damian claims he was just verifying she wasn't hurt. The mage jokes about hidden injuries, leaving Damian flustered as he says he cannot verify those for her. An angry shout sounds as Arasilla rejects Damian's suggestion to send him the medical bill after she checks herself. An exasperated sigh escapes Arasilla as she stomps away, annoyed by the knight's frustrating conversational habits. Damian turns back toward the manor and calls out to Isaac. Looking stern, Damian orders the dark-haired Isaac to conduct a full investigation by any means necessary. The knight commands his subordinate to uncover the identity of the mercenaries who attacked Arasilla. The scene shifts to the imposing facade of the Vandermir Duke's capital estate. Maids frantically try to stop Damian as he marches inside, warning him that the Duke will be furious. A loud bang sounds as Damian bursts through the office doors with a look of cold rage. The Duke criticizes his son's rudeness, but Damian retorts that attacking his own son's fiancée is far worse. The gray-haired Duke calmly sips his tea, feigning ignorance about the gift Damian is referring to. The gray-haired Duke listens as a voice from below offers him two distinct options. Damian presents the choice between covering up the attack or being reported to the authorities for treason. A loud shout sounds as the Duke rages against the threat, but Damian remains firm in his demand. Examining the confessions, the Duke warns Damian that they will both be ruined if the truth surfaces. Damian acknowledges the risk, but questions how His Majesty would react to the Duke's betrayal of the Hugo family. A vision of the king on his throne highlights the stakes as the Duke seethes with growing fury. The silver-haired knight demands an immediate decision, refusing to back down from the marriage under any circumstances. The gray-haired man stares back with a look of silent, concentrated venom toward his own son. The Duke feigns concern for his daughter-in-law, though Damian dismisses his fake platitudes and tells him not to worry. A dull thud sounds as Damian slams a final document onto the table for his father to sign. The silver-haired knight watches his father with a cold and triumphant expression. Damian insists that his father only needs to provide his signature to resolve the matter. A woman named Taylor introduces herself as a notary at the temple to the arriving couple. Taylor agrees to notarize the secret prenuptial agreement, while the mage insists its contents remain strictly confidential. A decorative frame highlights the formal title of the marriage contract terms. Taylor reviews the list of conditions, ranging from no physical contact to the division of assets upon divorce. A soft rustle sounds as the priest takes a sacred oath to keep their business an absolute secret. Damian concludes their business at the temple and looks forward to the official ceremony tomorrow. Arasilla calls out to the knight, stopping him as they begin to leave the cathedral. The lavender-haired mage leans in with a dark expression to deliver a mysterious and heavy warning. Arasilla mocks the knight's personality, suggesting his constant nonsense might actually be a serious medical condition. The mage sighs dramatically about her own overwhelming popularity as Damian watches with visible annoyance. Smiling brightly, Arasilla declares that unrequited love is nothing but a source of constant pain. A light huff sounds as Damian notes his fiancée's overwhelming and perhaps unearned confidence in romantic matters. The lavender-haired woman walks away with a skip, insisting that her confidence is her greatest asset. Arasilla waves over her shoulder, promising to meet the knight at the wedding ceremony the next day. Damian watches her go and reminds the mage to be careful on her way home. A rustling wind sounds as a cloaked spy watches the pair from the shadows near the cathedral. Looking through binoculars, the spy finds it highly suspicious that the two met with the notary. The man knows they already submitted marriage papers, making this extra secret meeting very strange. He realizes the notary visit must involve a secret deal or contract between the knight and the mage. The spy slips away from his hiding spot behind the tree to deliver his urgent report. A soft chuckle sounds as the man realizes the marriage is likely bound by hidden, deceptive conditions. The spy determines that the relationship between Damian and Arasilla is almost certainly a contractual sham. Looking determined, the man with the binoculars decides he must bring this information to his master immediately. Inside a sunlit office, the spy kneels to give his report to a blonde man sitting at a desk. The blonde man with red eyes questions the news of Arasilla's secret meeting with the temple notary. The spy apologizes to His Highness, admitting he could not uncover the specific terms of the notarized document.
The blonde royal looks down in a moment of thoughtful calculation after hearing the incomplete news.
A sharp tap sounds as the man places his hand firmly on a thick, leather-bound book. The royal orders his subordinate to step back and wait for new commands while he considers the situation. Smiling coldly, the blonde man expresses a strong desire for a private meeting with the lavender-haired mage.
A bright glow illuminates the massive towers and ornate grounds of the Imperial Palace.
Two young women point and gasp in excitement as they watch the arrival of the wedding party. Damian appears radiant and composed as he prepares for the biggest event of his professional life.
One of the girls admits her previous jealousy toward the woman marrying the famous and handsome knight.
Her friend asks why her feelings changed, given how much she used to admire Sir Vandermir. The brown-haired girl notes that Damian is clearly devoted to the odd and rumorsome Lady Hugo now. An ornate sign with lace decorations points the way toward the bridal waiting room.
Arasilla sits in her elegant white wedding dress, closing her eyes in serene preparation for the ceremony.
Radiant and ready for marriage. Her siblings cheer for her. The father cries with joy. Ad presents a bridal bouquet. She thanks her younger brother.
She promises to visit often.
Her sister promises the same.
A knock interrupts their moment. A shiny boot steps in. The crown prince enters confidently. Her parents offer their greetings. Frederick requests some private time. He assures it'll be quick. Arasilla feels a growing tension. She notes his unexpected arrival. They exchange strained friendly pleasantries. Frederick claims to care deeply. He offers an ominous promise.
He vows to stay close.
He pulls her hair close. He predicts her future regret. Arasilla rejects his dark privacy. He smirks at her defiance. A cold standoff in private.
A sharp smack sounds as Arasilla rejects his tepsh.
She condemns his blatant rudeness. He mockingly apologizes before leaving. He bids her a farewell. A loud bang sounds as he slams the door. She ponders his strange behavior. Why is he so aggressive? Frederick departs with a scowl. The wedding venue fills up. Guests gossip about the match.
Knights question their commander's choice.
The general mood remains sour. Vandermir relatives express their jealousy. They seek the matriarch's validation. Duchess Vandermir insults the groom. They bond over the spite. Threats of a future downfall. Critiquing Damian's lack of upbringing. He is called an ungrateful tot. The Duke seethes in silence. The Duchess notes his stress. Her son Oscar walks away.
Panicked realization of Oscar's disappearance.
Oscar has fled the scene. Oscar mutters curses against Damian. He hates being dragged along. Damian's light blue-haired half-brother, Oscar Vandermir, is introduced looking quite annoyed. Oscar walks through the palace halls as voices discuss finalizing preparations for the bride. Peeking through a doorway, Oscar is surprised to find himself at the bridal waiting room. Arasilla sits gracefully on a sofa, looking serene in her elaborate white wedding dress. The lavender-haired bride looks stunning and composed as she waits for the ceremony to begin. Oscar is completely floored by Arasilla's beauty, his jaw dropping in genuine shock. Making a grand and arrogant entrance, the light blue-haired man throws the doors wide open. Oscar looks incredibly smug and self-satisfied as he adjusts his yellow cravat. Smirking, Oscar introduces himself as future family and offers a mockingly polite greeting. He suggests that Arasilla is too beautiful for Damian and that he would suit her better. Oscar considers the possibility of marrying the gorgeous woman himself right then and there. A decorative frame notes that Oscar is shamelessly flirting despite the inappropriate timing. Recognizing the man, Arasilla grips her dress tightly as she realizes who stands before her. Filled with sudden rage, Arasilla identifies Oscar as the one who killed her sister. Misinterpreting her intense gaze, Oscar asks if he has already won her heart. Arasilla brutally insults him, comparing his face to a flattened starfish and ordering him to leave. Oscar's face is comically transformed into a literal starfish as he reels from the harsh insult. Standing firm, Arasilla declares that his very existence is an insult to her. Damian suddenly appears behind his trembling half-brother, his expression dark and intimidating. The silver-haired knight demands to know exactly what his brother is doing in the bridal room. Damian delivers a cold warning for Oscar to stay far away from his bride. Looking terrified, Oscar is towered over by the sheer intensity of Damian's presence. A heavy hand drops onto Oscar's shoulder as a warning sign of Damian's growing anger. Damian asks his half-brother if he still hasn't grasped the danger of his situation. The knight mocks Oscar's helplessness, noting that even the Duchess cannot protect him today. Damian orders Oscar to shut up and get lost in a low, threatening tone. The tense standoff continues as Arasilla watches from the sofa with her maid nearby.
Seething with unadulterated hatred, Oscar curses his silver-haired brother under his breath.
Arasilla calmly but firmly requests that Lord Vandermir exit the room immediately. She threatens to summon the palace guards if he does not leave this instant.
Humiliated and furious, the light blue-haired man prepares to make a hasty retreat.
Damian gets a final jab in, suggesting the starfish should return to the sea. A loud bang sounds as Oscar slams the door, cursing the entire situation in his wake.
A maid asks the arriving Damian if he saw the lady, warning him about entering.
Looking slightly nervous, the knight lies about seeing anything to protect Arasilla's privacy. Damian offers a quick apology before turning to head toward the main hall.
Alone again, Arasilla looks radiant and happy as she prepares for the final walk.
Damian looks ahead with a determined expression, ready to begin the official ceremony. Deep, resonant wedding bells ring out from the palace towers to announce the event.
The grand wedding hall is filled with guests and falling petals as the ceremony begins.
The officiant at the altar announces the official start of the groom's entrance.
A triumphant trumpet fanfare echoes through the hall as the wedding party arrives.
Damian walks down the red carpet with a composed and regal bearing. The guests watch with admiration as the famous silver-haired knight approaches the altar.
Young women in the audience cheer and cry with joy at the sight of the handsome groom. Damian takes his position at the front of the hall, looking every bit the noble commander.
The priest calls for the guests to welcome the star of the ceremony, the bride. The blonde man and the brown-haired girl watch with curiosity and excitement. Damian looks toward the entrance with an expression of quiet, focused anticipation. Supported by her father, Arasilla begins her elegant walk toward her future husband.
Arasilla looks peaceful and radiant as she lies amidst a sea of white flowers.
Her bright blue eyes sparkle with joy and anticipation for the ceremony.
Arasilla's father gently hands her over to Damian at the altar as the wedding begins.
The father addresses her affectionately and she confirms her readiness for the final step.
Damian looks slightly overwhelmed by emotion as he reaches out his hand to his bride.
His golden eyes reflect the deep gravity and significance of the commitment he is making. Arasilla offers a reassuring and tender smile as she looks up at her future husband. The couple finally joins hands before the officiant, ready to speak their lifelong vows.
The priest asks the silver-haired knight if he swears to love and respect Arasilla forever.
Looking determined, Damian gives his firm and heartfelt consent to the marriage covenant. The priest turns to Arasilla to ask if she likewise accepts Damian as her husband. An attendant presents the wedding rings for the couple to finalize their union. Damian takes a ring, his expression soft and perhaps a little nervous in this sacred moment. Arasilla offers her hand gracefully, her smile lighting up her face as she waits for him. He carefully slides the ring onto her finger, sealing the first part of their bond. Damian is momentarily lost in thought as he gazes at the woman who is now his wife. A gentle touch signals the deep connection forming between the knight and the mage. Arasilla watches him with growing affection, her eyes reflecting the sincerity of her commitment. She takes the other ring and places it on Damian's finger with a steady hand. Damian's breath hitches slightly as he feels the weight of the ring and its meaning. Their hands remain entwined, the wedding bands shining as a symbol of their new life. A shimmering light catches the diamond, symbolizing the strength of their shared future. Arasilla looks forward to their life together, addressing him formally as Lord Vandermir. Startled by her words, Damian stares at her as if seeing her in a new light. His gaze softens into one of genuine adoration for the woman standing beside him.
Petals fall around her as she laughs, radiating pure happiness in her wedding attire.
The officiant raises his hands to declare Damian and Arasilla officially husband and wives.
Rose petals shower the grand cathedral as the guests erupt in celebration for the couple. A wave of applause and cheers fills the hall from the delighted onlookers.
The new husband and wife stand proudly together, ready to face the world as one. Arasilla's father is moved to tears while her siblings cheer wildly for her happiness. In contrast, the Duke and Duchess Vandermir watch the proceedings with cold, bitter resentment. Away from the celebration, the blonde prince stands in the shadows with his loyal guard. Frederick orders his subordinate to relay an urgent message to his informant immediately. He expresses total ruthlessness, uncaring of what bribes or threats are used to get results.
The prince demands the exact details of the legal document Arasilla obtained from the priest.
The scene shifts to the grand ballroom where the wedding banquet is in full swing. Two young guests excitedly congratulate Arasilla on her stunning appearance and successful marriage. A fellow knight offers his best wishes to Damian for a long and happy life together. Now in their reception garments, the couple graciously thanks their friends and well-wishers. A familiar voice calls out to Arasilla, drawing her attention away from the crowd.
She is overjoyed to spot a dear friend approaching her during the festivities. Paula Hayden, a high-ranking noblewoman, is introduced as she makes a grand entrance.
Paula hugs her friend, admitting her shock at the marriage but celebrating the union nonetheless. Arasilla jokingly downplays Damian's qualities, leaving him looking quite peeved in the background. Paula wonders where Prince Frederick has gone, noticing his absence from the main hall. She explains that he left abruptly earlier, likely due to some pressing imperial matter. Arasilla expresses a hope that the three of them can reunite soon for a proper visit. A sharp voice cuts through the air, causing Damian to flinch as he is addressed. Duchess Vandermir stands tall and imposing, questioning Damian's behavior with an icy glare. Damian greets his grandmother, who immediately questions his upbringing and manners.
Arasilla realizes this is the formidable woman Damian warned her about. The lavender-haired bride wonders if this is Damian's biological grandmother.
Arasilla suggests to Damian that they should visit the duchy soon. She notes the importance of paying their formal respects to his grandmother. Looking distant, Damian insists there is no need to visit her. He explains she is his brother's grandmother more than his and warns of insults. The couple encounters the imposing, white-haired woman at the wedding banquet. The elder woman watches them with a cold and calculating expression.
Arasilla is taken aback by the woman's immediate and harsh insult.
Maintaining her composure, Arasilla offers a polite and formal greeting. The grandmother criticizes them for their late greeting and lack of respect.
Arasilla laughs off the tension with a surprisingly cheerful response.
Tugging on Damian's sleeve, she notes they were lucky to find time today. The bride offers a radiant, reassuring smile to her new husband.
Damian looks startled as he realizes she just called him by his name.
Addressing her by her maiden name, the elder tries to exert dominance. Arasilla firmly asserts her new identity as a member of the Vandermir family. The grandmother responds with a chilling and satisfied smirk. She remarks that Damian managed to find a bride exactly like himself. The woman delivers a final, ominous promise to keep a close watch. The grandmother makes a grand and cold exit from the ballroom. Damian exhales a long, heavy breath of pure relief. Arasilla admits that she was secretly terrified during the entire encounter. The couple shares a quiet moment amidst the flowers and guests. Damian commends her for playing her part so naturally during the confrontation. Arasilla suggests it is only right that they use first names now. The silver-haired knight considers what title he should use for her. A floating notification reveals his preference for calling her his wife. The newlyweds continue their walk through the crowded reception hall. Arasilla reacts with visible horror and disgust at the formal term. Delighted guests watch the couple with admiration from the sidelines. Arasilla urges him to maintain their facade despite his refusal to link arms. A maid named Audrey comments on how happy the lady appears. Looking slightly annoyed, Damian offers to place an arm around her shoulder. A sudden, quick tap sounds as his hand reaches toward her. Damian employs a hover hand, maintaining a precise gap to avoid contact.
Audrey asks if the madam is feeling any pre-wedding night nerves.
A decorative panel announces the arrival of the couple's wedding mate.
Arasilla tells her maid that she knows Damian better than anyone.
Audrey worries that the much larger knight might crush Arasilla and died.
Arasilla laughs, picturing Damian's rigid and defensive sleeping posture.
The lady dismisses Audrey, wishing her a good night's rest.
Arasilla walks alone down the grand, brightly lit palace corridor.
She reminds herself that this night is purely an act for others. A sharp knock sounds as she reaches the bedroom door. The heavy, ornate doors creak open as she enters the room. From within the dim room, Damian tells her to come in. She approaches the silver-haired knight who is dressed in his sleeping robes. Damian watches her with a focused and unreadable golden gaze. Arasilla Lavender Hair thinks how rare it is to see Damian Silver Hair with his hair done. Arasilla enters the room, announcing her arrival as the door clicks shut behind her. Startled by the decor, she lets out a loud scream while Damian asks for the cause. She finds the crossed swords ominous, but the silver-haired knight defends his choice of decoration. Damian agrees to add a mage's staff to the display just to pacify her demands.
Arasilla holds up a finger to present her next firm request.
She proposes a game of rock, paper, scissors to determine the knight's sleeping arrangements. The mage points at the bed, refusing to share it with her new husband. Damian closes his golden eyes and yields the bed to her without a fight. Arasilla happily suggests they take turns using the comfortable bed each way. The knight tells her to keep the bed as he won't be around the room often. Arasilla dives onto the mattress with a soft thump, demanding he keep his word. She rolls around on the bed with a happy giggle while Damian watches her antics. Lying among the pillows, she thinks about how exhausted she feels after the long day. A bottle of red wine is poured into a clear glass with a soft splash. Damian takes a quiet sip of the wine, his eyes closed in thought. Arasilla questions his taste in alcohol, but he claims he is only drinking because it is available. She notices his flushed face and asks if he is already feeling tipsy. Damian looks down into his glass and admits that he is actually a very poor drinker. Arasilla is shocked by his low limit, but he irritably tells her to mind her business. She expresses her discomfort at the idea of sleeping in the same room as a drunkard. Damian reassures her that he will fall asleep immediately and won't cause any trouble. The knight's gaze turns heavy as he prepares to drift off for the May. Seeing him slumped over, Arasilla concludes he has already succumbed to the effects of the wine. Under a starry night sky, she decides it is time for her to go to sleep as well. A bird flutters past the window as the morning sun begins to shine on the sleeping bride.
Arasilla wakes up in a daze, surprised to find that it is already morning.
She lets out a long yawn and stretches, noticing Damian is still asleep on the couch. A pained groan escapes from Damian's throat as he remains trapped in a deep sleep. Arasilla hears him whimpering and calls out to him in sudden concern. Damian is drenched in sweat and clutches his chest, clearly suffering through a vivid nightmare. She leans over him, bewildered and worried by his sudden and intense distress.
Arasilla urgently tries to wake him as he weakly protests against an unseen threat.
He raises a trembling hand in a defensive gesture, pleading with someone in his dream to stop. A single tear tracks down the knight's face as he continues to whimper in pain.
Arasilla is horrified when her husband cries out for his mother in his sleep. A sepia-toned memory reveals a young, silver-haired Damian looking wide-eyed and innocent.
The young boy stands alone in the vast, empty halls of his childhood mansion.
A ghostly voice from the shadows calls out the boy's name.
The voice beckons him toward an ornate door further down the corridor. The unseen person urges him to hurry toward them before it is too late. Young Damian reaches out, recognizing the familiar and comforting voice of his mother.
The door lets out an eerie creak as a dark, ink-like hand emerges from the shadows.
The shadow hand suddenly touches his face, praising him for being such a good child. The boy's cheek is cupped by the cold, shadowy fingers in a terrifying caress. The voice whispers an ominous warning that there is no more time left. Terrified, the young boy screams and tries to wave away the encroaching darkness. The dark hand reaches out further into the light, ready to pull him into the room. Back in the present, Damian cries out for his mother one last time in pure agony. He suddenly awakens with a start, his golden eyes wide with the lingering fear of the dream. Looking down in absolute shock, Arasilla watches as Damian's hand moves erratically in his distressed state.
The silver-haired knight suddenly awakens, his face deeply flushed and covered in a thick layer of cold sweat.
Arasilla reaches out and places a steadying, concerned hand against the center of his bare chest. Reacting with a defensive jolt, Damian's hand snaps upward and swats hers away with a sharp slap. Damian sits up on the couch, clutching his forehead, while Arasilla stands back, looking hurt and bewildered. The lavender-haired bride stares at him, her expression frozen in a mix of offense and confusion. Arasilla explains that she only woke him because of his nightmare, but Damian coldly rejects her help. Turning his back to her, the knight tells her not to pretend she was doing him any favors. Arasilla snaps back, demanding to know why he is being so incredibly rude the morning after their wedding.
Infuriated, she declares that everything is her fault and orders him to leave the room immediately.
Storming toward the exit, she yells that she was planning to leave anyway and laments her bad luck. Damian remains alone on the sofa, slumped over with his head in his hand as the room brightens. A close-up reveals his trembling golden eye as he thinks that things are unfolding exactly as he expected.
Arasilla pauses for a heartbeat, her eyes wide as the weight of the harsh encounters settles over her.
Dressed in her sleeping robes, she passes Audrey and announces she is going to change before having breakfast. The scene shifts to the grand, sun-drenched dining hall where servants are busy preparing a long banquet table. Now dressed in her formal white attire, Arasilla fumes over Damian's insufferable behavior and their lack of a shared meal. A man with long brown hair and glasses approaches the table, offering the lady a polite morning greeting. A decorative panel officially introduces the man as Damian's trusted personal aide, a man named Colin. Arasilla greets Colin and asks his business, while he explains he came to offer a more formal introduction. Smiling broadly, Colin promises to do his absolute best to support the madam as the commander's aide. The lady offers a radiant and friendly smile, telling him she will be counting on him as well. Colin informs her that he has arranged a meeting with the mansion's maid staff after she finishes her meal. Audrey leans in to whisper that it is nearly time for the lady to depart for her own work. Arasilla stands up from the table, deciding it is time for her to begin her professional duties for the day. A maid with dark hair styled in buns moves to clear the table, prompting a curious look from Arasilla. Stopping for a moment, the lady asks the young servant what her name is.
The dark-haired maid looks up with a humble and quiet expression as her mistress addresses her. Arasilla tells Rosalyn she can handle the table, but notes that the girl has been staring at her.
The lady asks if the maid has something to say, noting she has been watched since she entered. Looking flustered, Rosalyn apologizes and explains that it is simply her very first time working at the estate. Arasilla reassures the girl that no apology is needed and that she was merely curious about the intense gaze. From the side, Colin watches the interaction with a silent, focused, and unreadable expression. Two other maids, one with freckles and one with dark hair, watch the conversation with nervous curiosity. Audrey worries that the growing awkwardness might reflect poorly on her lady's reputation. To ease the tension, Audrey jokes that Rosalyn was likely just stunned by the lady's incredible beauty. Arasilla breaks into a delighted laugh, telling Audrey that she certainly knows how to tell the plain truth. The entire room erupts into cheerful laughter as Audrey playfully doubles down on her praise. Colin regains his professional air and offers to escort the lady outside for her departure. Arasilla walks through the hall as Colin and the maids offer their polite farewells for the morning. A pair of footmen pull open the massive white doors, letting out a long, heavy creak as they open. The lavender-haired lady looks out with a bright, confident, and satisfied smile as she prepares to leave. A wide view reveals a grand staircase lined with dozens of maids bowing in unison to honor their mistress. Standing at the top with Audrey, Arasilla offers a warm and gracious morning greeting to the entire staff. Descending the stairs, she reassures them that she is not a fussy mistress and will be easy to serve. She explains that her work at the Magic Tower will keep her busy, leaving the staff with fewer burdens. Arasilla introduces Audrey as her most trusted maid and encourages all the women to get along well. Close up on Audrey, who wears a small, proud, and loyal smile as she is praised by the lady. The lady continues her graceful walk through the hall, followed by a loyal entourage of servants. The maids bow low one final time, wishing the madam a safe and pleasant trip to her work. Arasilla officially begins her life as the mistress of the mansion, greeting her staff for the first time. The new bride offers a warm and pleasant look as she takes in her new surroundings. She makes a point to show kindness to the servants who are still adjusting to her presence. As she departs, a dark realization settles that even genuine kindness can be twisted by those with ill intentions. A maid sneers privately, noting that the newlyweds are already eating their meals in separate rooms on day one. The woman decides that this juicy piece of information must be sent to her superiors immediately. The scene transitions to the grand estate belonging to the Duchy of Vandermir. An older woman reads the report, delighting in the news that the couple is already showing signs of a distant marriage. She offers the letter to the man sitting across from her, eager to share the update. The man slams his palm against the desk with a sudden and heavy bang, startling the woman. He wears a sinister smirk, concluding that the heavens are finally favoring his plans. He instructs Sophie to contact their informant within Damian's household to escalate the situation. The silver-haired man stares coldly, determined to ensure the couple's marriage ends in divorce at any cost. A firm hand remains planted on the correspondence as the plot against the newlyweds deepens. Elsewhere, the sun shines brightly over a different, elegant manor. Arasilla's mother questions why her daughter is visiting her childhood home so frequently after her wedding. Arasilla laughs off the idea of a fight, claiming they have simply both been occupied with work. Her mother, May, sighs at the stubbornness while her husband sits comfortably on the sofa beside her. The father chuckles, happy to see his daughter weakly, though the mother remains deeply concerned about the optics. She scolds Arasilla for only bringing one familiar maid, but the bride explains the mansion staff has already been supplemented. The mother emphasizes the importance of surrounding oneself with loyal people when managing a new household. Arasilla, happily munching on cookies, promises to bring in more of her own people once she is fully settled. As the girl enjoys the treats, her father nervously watches his wife's temper flare like a literal grizzly bear. The mother's gaze hardens as she decides that her daughter's current lifestyle is unacceptable. She orders Arasilla to return home immediately, prompting a shocked and indignant protest from the girl. The mother explains that spending every weekend away from her husband will eventually lead to negative rumors. She insists that a newly married couple should be building a life together rather than living apart. Arasilla listens skeptically, wondering why a bit of social gossip should be considered such a terrifying threat. Despite the grumbling, the mother insists her daughter go back to share a meal and a conversation with her husband. The scene shifts back to the quiet and imposing exterior of the main estate. Arasilla mopes about being forced to leave early until a voice suddenly calls out to her from the hall. She turns to find Damian standing there, surprised to see him home at such an unusual hour. Looking urgent and grave, the knight announces that there is a critical matter they must discuss right away. He stands tall in his dark uniform, casting a long shadow over the hall as he faces his wife. Arasilla is taken aback by his sudden intensity, while Audrey cheers silently for the unexpected reunion. He steps into her personal space with a sudden heavy thud of his boots on the floor. The tall knight looms over her, his expression unreadable but clearly focused on the task at hand. He suggests they find a more private location to talk, catching Arasilla completely off guard. They settle into a nearby room with a single piece of parchment laid out on the table between them. Arasilla leans in to inspect the document, realizing the gravity of the situation they are facing. Damian explains that a new, difficult condition has been added regarding his claim as the heir. He keeps his golden eyes focused as he prepares to explain the complex details of the Emperor's decree.
The new rule states that the title can only be inherited by the one who finds the late Duke's missing will.
Damian admits the situation is complicated, especially since the document's whereabouts are unknown.
He reveals that his grandfather's wishes were only ever shared through hushed whispers and verbal accounts.
A physical copy of the document has never been seen, leaving its actual existence a total mystery. Arasilla wonders if the Emperor set this specific trap because he already knows where the will is hidden. Damian notes the close bond between his grandfather and the monarch, making the Emperor's involvement even more likely.
Arasilla worries that their plan for a quick divorce is slipping away, while a frustrated Damian offers his apologies.
She sighs, realizing they must find a way to navigate this hurdle, since the Emperor clearly had a hidden motive. Damian emphasizes the absolute necessity of finding the will, noting the Emperor's singular focus. A grim flashback reveals the Emperor of the Cetron Empire amidst a blood-soaked battlefield of fallen soldiers.
A heavy boot steps into a pool of fresh blood with a sudden wet splash.
The Emperor stands triumphantly in a ruined hall, having cruelly eliminated his brothers to seize the throne. A trail of bloodied footprints leads away from the mountain of corpses littering the palace steps. A blood-stained gauntlet lifts a golden crown as the narration describes a man driven by a single desire. With a sinister smile and glowing red eyes, the Emperor revels in his quest for overwhelming power. Back in the present, Arasilla worries if the news has reached the Duke, while Damian notes their opponent's likely desperation.
Damian believes they still hold the advantage now that his grandfather's final wishes have been fulfilled. Arasilla predicts that the ducal house will move quickly to find and suppress the will. Damian reassures her that they are monitoring their rivals, while Arasilla vows to prevent her father from stealing the document.
Preparing to depart, the knight warns her they will be busy and asks to be updated immediately on any changes. Damian offers a respectful gesture of farewell as he prepares to return to his duties.
A series of heavy, measured footsteps echo through the hall as the knight walks away from his seated wife.
Left alone with the document, the lavender-haired lady looks visibly shaken and uncertain.
She realizes the situation is growing far too complex for her to handle on her own.
Arasilla clenches her fist in frustration, realizing she has no choice but to take action. Bursting with newfound resolve, she declares she will head to the magic tower and do whatever she can. The sun continues to shine brightly over the sprawling and elegant mansion grounds. A document held in a delicate hand summarizes the Emperor's sudden and suspicious change to the succession rules. The narration explains that the couple must secure the title despite the obstacles placed before them. The Duke and Duchess of Vandermir are revealed to be actively plotting to block Damian's inheritance claim. A formal notice declares that both sides have officially begun their desperate search for the late Duke's will.
Near the mansion walls, the dark-haired maid Rosalyn stands alone with a secretive expression.
A cold smirk plays across her lips as she decides it is time to perform her assigned role. She reads a letter detailing her mission to isolate Arasilla, seduce the commander, and force a divorce. Rosalyn quickly hides the orders, motivated by the large sum of money she is being paid to sabotage the couple. A cheerful blonde maid calls out, telling the girl it is time to help with the morning laundry. Rosalyn quickly tucks the secret letter into her apron with a soft, quick rustle. She turns back with a perfectly rehearsed and beaming smile, hiding her true intentions. A rhythmic pitter-patter of running feet sounds as the two servants head toward the drying lines. Arriving at the laundry field, Rosalyn apologizes for her lateness and promises to work twice as fast. Two other maids, one with freckles and one with dark hair, chat happily as they hang the linens. Rosalyn observes them with a predatory gaze, noting they are gossips and perfect targets for her manipulation. She begins building rapport, reminding one of the maids how she covered her shifts during a recent illness. She tells a fabricated story about being bullied by previous masters just because of her looks to gain their sympathy. A sudden, sharp snap sounds as the wind catches the heavy white sheets on the line.
The other maids hope their current mistress is kinder, and Rosalyn deceitfully encourages their optimism.
The freckled maid praises Arasilla, noting that she has not been critical or demanding like other nobles. Rosalyn's expression shifts to one of feigned concern as she prepares to plant a seed of doubt. She pretends to hesitate, prompting the curious maids to beg her to share whatever is on her mind. She acknowledges the lady hasn't found fault, but suggests there is something more troubling beneath the surface. A sudden cold whoosh of air passes as she asks if the lady has ever shown any real interest in the household. The maids look at each other in realization, admitting they hardly ever see their mistress. Rosalyn's hand trembles with a nervous shaking sound as she claims this lack of involvement makes her uneasy. She sheds fake tears, questioning if the lady even cares about them and pretending she wants to serve them forever. The freckled maid falls for the act, beginning to think that Rosalyn's observations are correct. The group begins to gossip about the lady's frequent weekend visits to her parents and her late arrivals. A low, satisfied chuckle escapes from Rosalyn as she sees her plan taking root. Wearing a sinister and triumphant grin, she concludes that isolating the lady will be a simple task. The sun shines brightly over the elegant facade of the mansion as a new day begins. 4 maids huddle together in a quiet hallway, whispering rumors about the master and madam having a falling out. 2 of the servants lean in close, noting that the couple barely speaks beyond brief greetings when they cross paths. Carrying a laundry basket, Audrey pauses in the background as she overhears the group speculating about a potential divorce. The short-haired maid's expression hardens with suspicion as she listens to the growing gossip among the staff. A sharp clinking sounds as a knife and fork are used to meticulously cut into a meal on a decorative plate. Arasilla dines alone in the grand hall, her expression unreadable while Rosalyn stands by to serve her. Watching from the doorway, a concerned Audrey senses a strange and unsettling mood beginning to permeate the mansion. Rosalyn offers to bring the tea once the meal is finished, and a distracted Arasilla simply agrees without looking up. A sudden, shaky, tilting motion occurs as the teacup slides dangerously toward the edge of the serving tray. Audrey gasps in shock as she witnesses the tray wavering in the dark-haired maid's hands. The sound of a wet splash echoes as the dark liquid pours over the tray and onto the floor.
Arasilla stares down in stunned silence at the large, dark stains spreading across her white traveling outfit.
With a look of exaggerated horror, Rosalyn begins to apologize loudly for her supposedly accidental mistake. The maid suddenly throws herself onto the floor, prostrating herself before her mistress with a loud, dramatic thud. As Rosalyn continues her frantic performance, Arasilla's face remains shadowed, her reaction hidden from the others. 2 other maids nearby tremble in fear, begging the lady to show mercy to their clumsy colleague.
Audrey watches the scene skeptically, wondering why Rosalyn is choosing to grovel so pathetically over a simple spill.
A frustrated thought bubble suggests that such a dramatic display only makes the situation more awkward for the mistress. Hidden from view, a sinister smirk crosses Rosalyn's face as she thinks that excessive apologizing is the best way to provoke anger. The manipulative maid notes with satisfaction that the other servants have already begun to take her side and sympathize with her. Rosalyn continues to beg for forgiveness, playing the part of a terrified servant to perfection. Glancing up through her hair, the maid mentally encourages the lady to start shouting so the plan can move forward. A sudden, soft touch is felt as Arasilla reaches down and places a gentle hand on the groveling maid's shoulder. Lifting the girl's chin, the lavender-haired lady offers a warm and radiant smile that completely catches the maid off guard. A bewildered sound escapes Rosalyn as she looks up, utterly confused by her mistress's lack of anger.
Arasilla tells her there is no need to be nervous and encourages the girl to go ahead and stare as much as she likes.
Striking a confident pose with a wink and a thumbs up, the lady jokes that she won't even charge her maid for the view. A series of bright laughs rang out as Arasilla stands in a literal spotlight, asking when else the maid would get to see such beauty. Rosalyn forcibly thanks her mistress, though a bead of sweat rolls down her face in sheer exasperation. Shimmering flowers frame the lady's internal monologue as she proudly identifies herself as the flawlessly beautiful Arasilla Vandermir. She poses once more, basking in her own perceived radiance while the room remains silent. Rosalyn hangs her head in the shadows, her plan for a public confrontation completely derailed by the lady's vanity. The maid realizes with a grimace that the mistress is on an entirely different level than she expected. As another servant brings a towel, a frustrated Rosalyn decides she must find a bigger way to spread rumors beyond the mansion walls. A sharp halt sounds as Audrey intercepts the dark-haired maid in the hallway, calling out her name. Audrey scolds her for making too many mistakes and orders her to pull herself together and serve the madam properly. Rosalyn looks up with a wide, eerie grin, realizing she has found her next opportunity to cause trouble. The manipulative girl watches the short-haired maid with a predatory intensity, her mind racing with a new scheme. A final, determined thought bubble appears as she vows to ensure that such an encounter never happens again. A split panel contrasts Audrey's firm resolve with a monstrous red-swirled shadow looming behind Rosalyn's reflection. The scene shifts to the glowing sky as the sun sets over the grand and intricate spire of the magic tower. Back at our workplace, a sleep-deprived and hollow-eyed Arasilla mutters that they are completely doomed. A green-haired mage holds a massive glowing crystal and frantically asks his senior what they should do with only a week left. Beside him, a brown-haired man looks equally exhausted as they worry about finishing the final artifact presentation in time. A sudden loud slam echoes as Arasilla strikes the table with her hand to get the attention of her coworkers. She loudly reminds them of her status as the genius mage who graduated as valedictorian from the academy. Wearing a manic and desperate grin, she vows to make the research succeed and orders the men to take the following day off. The two mages tremble with visible fear, listing the mountain of work remaining, including reworking the mana supply methods. Turning back with a sharp look, Arasilla asks them to recall her advice when research is going poorly, and the boy nervously answers. Arasilla encourages her team to go and rest for a full day. Touched by her kindness, the green-haired mage pledges his eternal loyalty while weeping. Night falls over Damian's mansion as Arasilla calls out that she will see them again soon. Returning home looking utterly exhausted, the lavender-haired lady carries a massive glowing crystal as Audrey greets her. Seeing her mistress struggling, the short-haired maid offers to carry the heavy object for her. Arasilla insists on holding it herself, claiming that the item is far too important to hand over. Thinking of a favor for Audrey, the lady is suddenly startled as the white-haired man addresses her. Her eyes bulge with shock as she realizes Damian is standing right there. Damian calmly explains he has business inside as well, and suggests they both go in together. Internally fuming, Arasilla interprets his words as a demand to get out of his way and consider starting an argument. A memory of her mother warns that newlyweds spending so much time apart will cause a scandal. Realizing she needs to maintain the act of a love marriage, the lady suppresses her exhaustion. Arasilla suddenly pivots to a sweet, dramatic performance, greeting her husband with forced affection. She claims she is overjoyed to see him after being so busy, internally begging him to take the hint. The white-haired man stares back in stunned and silent confusion at her sudden change in behavior. Damian skeptically questions her claim, while Arasilla grows increasingly irritated by his lack of a proper reaction. Observing her closely, the man wonders why she is lugging around an object nearly as large as herself. Arasilla blinks in confusion at his sudden scrutiny of her precious research materials. Damian offers to take the heavy stone from her, but she stubbornly insists she can carry it easily. He tells her there is no need to pretend to be strong and worries she will hurt herself after being cooped up. Popping a vein in frustration, the lady finds his concern incredibly patronizing and annoying. She snaps that he knows nothing, proudly declaring the stone is her masterpiece called the Floating Stone. With a manic grin, she explains that once infused with mana, the effect lasts for an entire week. She offers him the special privilege of seeing it firsthand, and he cautiously agrees to watch. Grinning widely, the lavender-haired lady commands her husband to watch the demonstration closely. Mana swirls from her hand into the large crystal with a bright and magical energy. A sudden flash of light erupts, leaving the white-haired man staring in wide-eyed amazement. The massive stone begins to hover steadily in the air, defying the laws of gravity. Damian is truly impressed, noting that it is incredible for a stone of that size to hover. Arasilla beams with smug satisfaction, reminding him that she told him it was her proud masterpiece. Her victory is short-lived as her strength suddenly fails and she begins to pitch forward. Damian gasps and lunges forward, catching the collapsing lady just before she hits the ground. Arasilla passes out completely in his arms, her face pale from the extreme exertion. Audrey's expression turns to one of pure terror as she screams out for her mistress. Looking down at her with intense concern, the man urgently orders the staff to call for a physician. The white-haired man carries his unconscious wife through the mansion at a hurried pace. The next morning, a cheerful Arasilla sits in bed eating cookies and laughs as she apologizes for yesterday. The physician explains she collapsed from overusing her mana and prescribes rest and recovery-focused foods. Damian sighs and covers his face, lamenting that she shouldn't have pushed herself just to show off. Arasilla snaps that he was the one who riled her up, but he firmly cuts off her cookie supply. The white-haired man decides he will personally ensure that food specifically for mana recovery is prepared for her. She insists the cookies are already helping, explaining they have been her recovery snack since childhood. Damian is skeptical that cookies can replenish mana, but Arasilla explains it is a matter of personal willpower. Narration describes mana as a natural energy interwoven into the air that ordinary people cannot sense. It explains that the rare individuals capable of perceiving and wielding this energy are known as mages. Chewing on another cookie, Arasilla asks if aura also requires specific types of food to recover. Damian explains that while aura recovery varies, foods that strengthen the physical body are generally the most effective. An illustration depicts mana as external power, while aura is the life force flowing through the body's interior. The text notes that while anyone can train to wield aura, only those with powerful bodies become masters. The white-haired man looks on with a calm and thoughtful expression in his golden eyes. The white-haired man explains how the collision of aura within the body generates immense power. Arasilla looks on in shock as he clarifies that body-strengthening foods are most effective for aura recovery. Damian repeats his explanation while a sudden flash of inspiration strikes the lavender-haired lady. Clenching her sheets, the lady realizes she has overlooked a fundamental principle in her research. Shouting with joy, Arasilla leaps from her bed as she recognizes her own narrow thinking. The excited lady leans in close to thank her husband for his unintentional help. Her eyes sparkle with pure delight as the solution to her problem finally becomes clear. Surrounded by a floral aura, Damian smiles warmly and expresses his happiness at being useful. Arasilla sprints out of the room, announcing her immediate return to the magic tower. The man watches her frantic departure with a bemused smile, marveling at her eccentric nature. Radiating happiness, the lavender-haired lady runs toward her workshop with renewed determination. The scene shifts to Rosalyn, who grimly notes that the couple's bond has unexpectedly strengthened. A monochrome memory recalls Damian's desperate concern when Arasilla collapsed the day before. Rosalyn observes the other maids happily gossiping about the romantic state of the household. Her face tightens with malice as she resolves to take immediate action. The manipulative maid enters a dim storage room filled with bags of supplies. She anticipates a reply from the Duke's family while searching through the pantry shelves. A close-up reveals a sack of potatoes with a hidden tag attached to the rim. Rosalyn pulls a secret rolled-up letter from its hiding place with a look of triumph. She carefully unfurls the parchment to read the instructions sent from her conspirators. A dark-haired noblewoman in a flashback demands she drive a wedge between the couple. Rosalyn scowls in frustration, questioning the noblewoman's insistence on a seduction plan. She decides to report the mansion's current state first, but the head maid's voice interrupts. The maid quickly masks her annoyance and turns to face her superior. The stout head maid questions her presence in the pantry during unassigned hours. Rosalyn feigns a helpful attitude, but she is ordered to clean the annex instead. The head maid points out that Audrey needs assistance with the heavy workload. A sharp gleam enters the maid's eye as she spots a new opportunity. She cheerfully accepts the new task and hurries off to find her colleague. Rosalyn runs through the mansion grounds toward the distant annex building. Spotting the short-haired maid, Rosalyn calls out her name to get her attention. She insists on taking over the cleaning duty alone, telling Audrey to go and rest. Audrey is hesitant, noting that the building is far too large for one person. Rosalyn acts repentant, claiming she needs to work hard to atone for her past mistakes. The dark-haired maid eventually agrees to the offer, warning her friend not to overwork herself. Flashing a bright and innocent smile, Rosalyn thanks her for the chance to improve. The two maids part ways as the sun shines down on the paved courtyard. Rosalyn pauses to watch two other servants approaching from across the garden. A freckled maid and her companion wave cheerfully at their colleague. They ask where she is going, and Rosalyn explains her solo mission to the annex. The freckled girl is horrified to hear she is cleaning such a massive area alone. Looking dejected, Rosalyn claims Audrey ordered the task as a punishment for her recent errors. She manipulates her audience by suggesting the lady is using Audrey to deliver harsh commands. While the others gasp, Rosalyn fake defends her mistress to make herself look more sympathetic. Moved by her plight, the two maids eagerly offer to help her finish the work. Rosalyn accepts their help with an expression of immense relief and gratitude. She leans in close, begging them to keep their assistance a secret from the head maid. The three servants hurry away together, determined to help their friend in secret. Rosalyn smirks as she successfully isolates Audrey while planning to strike at Arasilla's weaknesses. As the sun sets, other maids spread rumors that Audrey is lazy and neglecting her duties. The black-haired maid questions the work schedule, while her companion complains that Audrey gave herself all the easy jobs. A group of maids badmouth Audrey as they carry buckets, while one girl tries to defend her colleague. Holding a wooden bucket, the short-haired maid stands alone as her colleagues turn their backs to her. Audrey calls out to the group of girls with a look of concern on her face. Three servants exchange sharp and suspicious glances as they ignore their colleague's presence. One of the maids roughly bumps into Audrey, causing her to stumble as they pass by. Looking back with annoyance, one of the girls complains that Audrey is such a pain. The short-haired maid looks troubled, recalling events that have transpired since the day before. A flashback reveals Rosalyn's face contorted into a chilling and manipulative grin. A dark reflection of the plotting maid is visible within the center of a wide-eyed iris. Narration notes the increasingly strange and unsettling atmosphere currently filling the mansion. A monochrome memory shows Audrey desperately begging the lady for forgiveness after a mistake. Rosalyn feigns embarrassment while claiming she wants to handle her duties properly on her own. The plotting maid continues her performance, deliberately taking on reckless burdens to garner sympathy. Gripping the bucket handle with a white-knuckled fist, Audrey thinks about the duplicitous Rosalyn. Looking up with a glare, the loyal maid wonders what kind of scheme her rival is plotting. The scene shifts to the dressing room as a silhouette arrives and celebrates being home. Arasilla lets out a long and exhausted yawn after her long day of research. Audrey suggests that her mistress change clothes and rest, and the lavender-haired lady tiredly agrees. The lady asks for some water and tells her maid that she can change her clothes herself. Flashing a cheerful and dutiful smile, Audrey promises she will be right back with the water.
Once outside, the short-haired maid grows anxious as she debates how to inform Arasilla of the situation.
She worries that Rosalyn is definitely going to cause a massive amount of trouble for the household. A close-up shows Audrey's hands firmly holding a tray with a teapot and pup. The loyal maid resolves to report the suspicious activity before things spiral out of control. She enters the dressing room and announces that she has returned with the requested water. Audrey stops in her tracks as she discovers the lady has already collapsed into sleep on the sofa. A close-up reveals the lavender-haired lady sleeping deeply and soundly after her intense work. Observing her mistress, Audrey realizes the lady must be very tired from her recent study of the stones. The short-haired maid reaches down to pick up a soft blue blanket. Looking down with pride, Audrey marvels at how much her young lady has grown into a fine adult. She decides to endure the issues with Rosalyn for now so she doesn't distract Arasilla from her dreams. While the lady mumbles about delicious food in her sleep, Audrey resolves not to bother her with family troubles. A gentle and affectionate smile spreads across the face of the loyal servant. Surrounded by a warm and floral aura, Audrey tenderly covers her sleeping mistress with the blanket. The stout head maid warns the gathered staff not to slack off just because the madam is often away. A group of servants bows their heads and dutifully acknowledges the head maid's stern command. The older woman's eyes narrow sharply as she spots something unacceptable among the ranks. She scolds a freckled girl for wearing a gaudy necklace, which the girl claims is a keepsake from her mother. Intimidated by the head maid's glare, the freckled servant quickly apologizes and promises to remove the jewelry. The superior orders Rosalyn to adapt to the mansion and commands her to clean the dressing room alone. With a fake and humble smile, Rosalyn promises to do her very best with the new task. As the head maid dismisses everyone, Audrey watches the plotting maid with a look of deep suspicion. Narrowing her eyes, the loyal servant stares intensely at her rival's departing back. Holding her cleaning bucket, Rosalyn enters the dressing room and shuts the door behind her. The malicious maid decides it is perfect timing to start digging for her mistress's hidden weaknesses. She recalls seeing the lady bringing important research documents back to the mansion recently. Putting down her bucket, Rosalyn remembers the big bag brought into the room and searches for evidence. With a dark and triumphant grin, she vows to ensure that Arasilla Hugo crashes all the way down. The scene shifts to a bright and sunlit restaurant located near the massive Mage Tower. Her orange-haired friend asks how things are going with her husband. Looking bored, Arasilla admits that things are just so-so. The friend notes they are in the burning stage and asks for fun stories. Remembering Damian as a weakling, Arasilla says they barely meet twice a week. The orange-haired woman asks if she has clashed with her husband's maids. Arasilla claims she stays quiet, which prompts her friend to shout in protest. The friend insists she should manage the maids during her spare time. Uninterested, the lavender-haired lady questions why she should bother with them. Her companion warns that staying silent might make the staff take her lightly. Arasilla thinks the work is easy for them, but her friend remains worried. The orange-haired lady asks if she knows why women bring their own maids. She explains they bring loyal servants to prevent bullying and staff laziness. The friend points out that Arasilla only has Audrey on her side. While Arasilla thinks about her planned divorce, her friend tells her to think differently. The lavender-haired lady looks shocked to hear that Audrey only has Har. Her friend explains that Audrey rarely speaks up even when she is struggling. The text urges her to manage the staff for both their sakes. The two women sit at their table in the sunlit restaurant. The sun sets over the grand towers of Damian's mansion. A close-up shows various dresses discarded across the dressing room floor. An exhausted Rosalyn wonders if there really is nothing to find. She suspects the clueless noblewoman must have hidden something somewhere. The plotting maid spots a brown envelope tucked under the bottom drawer. With a look of triumph, Rosalyn realizes she has found it. She thinks the hidden item must be important and reaches for it. A series of sharp, rhythmic stepping sounds echo through the room. Startled, Rosalyn looks back toward the door as her hand freezes. Her face tightens with shock as an exclamation mark appears. A firm knock-knock sounds against the ornate wooden doors. From the hallway, Audrey calls out to see if Rosalyn is inside. Scrambling, Rosalyn panics while shouting that she is just cleaning up spilled water. Audrey offers her assistance, asking her colleague to open the door. Rosalyn desperately claims she needs a second to tidy up her mess. Stopping her hand, Audrey questions the excuse about spilled water. She notes with a dark look that Rosalyn didn't bring any water in. A close-up reveals an empty wooden bucket holding a dry mop. Rosalyn sweats profusely as she realizes her rival is onto her. A monochrome memory shows Audrey watching her with a look of suspicion. The malicious maid wonders if she has been watched this entire time. The cold voice of the loyal maid announces she will count to 3. A quick shk sounds as Audrey pulls a silver key from her pocket. She warns Rosalyn that she had better come out on her own. Panicking, Rosalyn thinks about how Audrey was supposed to be out today. Audrey reaches the count of 2 just as another maid arrives. The loyal servant turns back to see her colleague approaching.
Surrounded by flowers, a brown-haired maid asks what the lady wants for dinner.
Audrey asks where she is and puts her key away in frustration.
The two maids walk down the hallway toward the mansion's kitchen.
Rosalyn listens at the door, hoping that her rival is finally gone. As she rushes for the documents, a knock-knock sounds as Audrey calls again. Audrey requests that the door be opened so she can help clean before the dinner rush.
A cold sweat breaks across the face of the plotting maid as she stalls for time.
Panicked and surrounded by discarded clothes, Rosalyn grows desperate to find the research documents.
She reaches blindly under a heavy dresser while searching for the hidden evidence.
Frustrated and cornered, the malicious maid realizes she must shift her strategy immediately.
The scene shifts to a vibrant and peaceful town square filled with happy citizens.
Arasilla strolls through the sunny streets, enjoying her time away from the mansion. The lavender-haired lady recalls how she used to sneak out to this place with Audrey. A memory shows a young Arasilla running playfully while her loyal maid chases after her. Her pace slows as a sudden, soft click sounds from her blue boots. Looking down with a somber expression, Arasilla regrets being so selfish in the past. She remembers seeing the other maids laughing and working together in harmony. The lady decides to bring her maids to her parents' house for a visit tomorrow. Arasilla stops in front of a shop window, captivated by a sparkling blue necklace. She thinks the jewelry is a perfect match for Audrey's favorite shade of blue. A woman with orange-pink hair and an elaborate bun asks if she is making a purchase. Recognizing the shopkeeper as Madame Kelly, Arasilla greets her with a cheerful smile. The boisterous woman lets out a hearty laugh while covering her mouth. Narrative text introduces the woman as Madame Kelly, the top matchmaker of the region. Madame Kelly asks if the gift is intended for the lady's husband, Lord Vandermir. A wave of nausea hits Arasilla at the mere suggestion of buying Damian a present. She clarifies that the necklace is actually a gift for her personal maid. Unfazed, the matchmaker encourages her to pick out something for her husband as well. Madame Kelly points toward an imperial topaz necklace, claiming it would suit the lord perfectly. Arasilla reluctantly admits that the silver and yellow stones do remind her of Damian's appearance. The older woman notes that gifts for newlyweds always carry a special romantic feeling. Madame Kelly's eyes sparkle with excitement as she begins to gush about the couple. She praises the bold wedding announcement made at the ball and asks who proposed first. As the gossip continues, a cold chill of dread washes over the lavender-haired lady. The matchmaker claims the lord is likely hiding a gentle soul beneath his rough exterior. Arasilla gags as she envisions a sentimental Damian wishing for someone to reach his frozen heart. Madame Kelly teasingly wonders if Arasilla is the cunning one playing games with her husband. Overwhelmed by the woman's delusions, the lady desperately tries to finish her purchase and leave. The sun sets behind the grand towers of Damian's mansion as the day ends. A tray of fresh, warm checkered cookies sits ready in the mansion's kitchen.
Audrey decides to bring the treats to her mistress to check in on her.
She notices a group of servants whispering and glancing at her with suspicious eyes. A freckled maid named Amy panics, crying out that her mother's keepsake necklace has vanished. Amy tearfully explains that the jewelry was definitely in the room earlier that morning.
A black-haired maid orders a full search of every servant's room to find the missing item.
Unaware of the trap, Audrey sincerely hopes that her colleague finds the lost treasure. Rosalyn looms behind her with a twisted, evil grin as Audrey senses a sudden threat. Trying to remain calm, the loyal maid tells the group to proceed with their search. An ominous atmosphere fills the hall as the servants stand like dark shadows around the schemer. The search begins and someone confirms that the necklace is not in Rosalyn's room. Other maids report that the item is also missing from the rooms of Amanda, Becky, and Mary. Amy grows more distraught as the search yields no results for her precious necklace. A sudden, sharp shout of discovery echoes through the hallway. Holding the necklace high with a look of mock outrage, Rosalyn announces she found it in Audrey's room. Audrey stands frozen in shock as the entire group of maids glares at her with glowing, hostile eyes. Audrey is in complete disbelief as she shouts that she doesn't even know where Amy's room is. Speech, "What? Impossible! And I don't even know where Amy's room is!" Rosalyn smirks while holding up a gold locket and asking if the denial will continue. Speech, "Are you going to keep denying it, Audrey? Everyone knows how arrogant you've been, riding on the young lady's favor." Freckled Amy screams in fury about her mother's keepsake being touched. Speech, "How could you even touch something that belonged to my mother? And when did you ever care? And now you act like this." Two other maids whisper that such behavior is unforgivable and must be reported immediately. Speech, "Even as a lady's maid, this is unforgivable, and we should report this to the head maid." Audrey's face is flushed with distress as she desperately pleads for someone to listen to her. "Wait, it really wasn't me, and listen to my side." A firm and heavy thud sounds as a black shoe stomps onto the floor. A sharp swish sounds as Amy raises her hand to strike her colleague. A soft whoosh sounds as the wind blows past the sunset towers of the mansion. Arasilla holds a gift box marked with a heart and a chibi sticker of her loyal maid. I even bought Damian's necklace in the end. Walking outside, the lady wonders why people find their infrequent meetings so special. Speech, what a waste of money. And we've been so busy and haven't seen each other in ages. What's so special about that? Arasilla enters the grand foyer of the mansion from behind. She looks around the empty hallway with a confused expression. Why is no one around? A panicked maid runs toward her mistress to report a terrible situation. My lady, something terrible has happened. What is it? What happened? Right now, the other maids. The wide eyes of the frantic servant show her sheer terror. Arasilla enters the room where Amy is screaming accusations of theft. Speech, you usually ignore us so much, and you thief! The lavender-haired lady stands frozen in shock as she spots her loyal servant. Speech, Audrey. Audrey lies crumpled on the floor with a red mark on her face while the others surround her. The loyal maid looks up with a tearful, bruised face and a bleeding lip. Speech, my lady. A sudden and heavy clatter sounds as the gift box slips from the lady's hand. Arasilla demands an immediate explanation while the terrified maids tremble before her. Speech, my lady, and explain, and what should we do? The lady's fist clenches tightly as she offers a final warning to the group. This is your last chance. Her blue eyes glow with intense power as she demands the truth. Tell me immediately what happened. A sharp clatter sounds as the forgotten gift box hits the wooden floor. A menacing energy builds as the lady warns the maids one last time. Speech, this is your last chance. A fierce and glowing gaze pins the servants in place as they are ordered to speak. Speech, tell me immediately what happened. Arasilla towers over the large crowd of maids gathered in the kitchen area. A dark-haired maid reports the alleged crime to her mistress with a bowed head. Speech, Audrey stole something. She claims Audrey took a necklace that was a precious family keepsake. Speech, she took the necklace that belonged to Amy's late mother. And that's right, my lady. Freckled Amy points an accusing finger as Audrey desperately denies the charge. Speech, the necklace I'd lost was found in Audrey's room, and I didn't steal it. Everyone saw the necklace come out of your room, and you're still denying it? Audrey counters by suggesting that Rosalyn may have planted the item and lied about it. Speech, did you personally enter my room and see it with your own eyes? And it was Rosalyn who found it. What if she was lying? The head maid arrives and demands to know the reason for the chaotic commotion. Speech, what is all this commotion? And head maid. The older woman is stunned to see the mistress of the house standing before them. Speech, my lady. And why are you here so early? Arasilla stands silently with her back to the group as the tension rises. The lady's profile remains hidden in a cold and ominous shadow. A soft rustle sounds as the lady reaches down to retrieve her fallen belongings. Audrey looks up with a swollen cheek and an expression of deep shame. Arasilla kneels down on the floor and offers the open gift box to her bruised maid. A brilliant and sparkling blue gemstone brooch sits nestled inside the box. The lavender-haired lady smiles warmly and asks her loyal friend if she likes the present. Speech, do you like it? Audrey's face flushes as a wave of relief and overwhelming emotion hits her. Arasilla turns her attention back to Amy to confirm the details of the theft. Speech, Amy, you said Audrey stole your necklace, and yes, I've given Audrey necklaces, earrings, even rings before. They weren't heirlooms like your mother's keepsake, but they were valuable. Arasilla questions why someone who owns such treasures would bother stealing from Amy. Speech, why would Audrey need to steal from you? And that's... Rosalyn watches from the background with a look of pure internal rage as her plan fails. Speech, Arasilla, Hugo, why are you interfering now? Rosalyn tries to slander Audrey's character by claiming she looks down on the other houses. Speech, my lady, forgive me for speaking, and Audrey has always looked down on us, calling us maids from a lesser house, and so this time she must have wanted to make things difficult for us again. And Rosalyn. When did I ever say you could speak freely? Arasilla commands the group not to disrupt the house's hierarchy with their lies. Rosalind is stunned by her mistress's sudden, uncharacteristic interest in estate matters. The lady turns her disappointment toward the head maid for allowing such negligence. Arasilla orders the immediate dismissal of every servant involved in the assault and bullying. A wave of terror washes over the guilty maids as they realize they are losing their jobs. A dark-gloved hand clenches tightly as a flat refusal echoes through the room. Hidden in the shadows, a schemer plots to steal incriminating documents from the ladies' dressing room. The head maid stands her ground, boldly telling Arasilla that she cannot proceed with the dismissals. She argues that the mistress's word isn't enough to fire staff and that she answers to the master as well. The older woman bows defiantly, refusing to act until the master himself gives the order. A heavy, black boot thuds onto the floor as a deep voice grants the requested permission. The scene shifts as the master of the house arrives, shocking the defiant head maid. Damian looms over the scene, placing a protective presence behind his wife. He wastes no time and orders his knights to immediately seize the head maid and Rosalyn. The two women cry out in terror and desperate denial as they are grabbed by the soldiers.
Damian glares with cold, golden eyes, asking if they truly thought he was unaware of their actions.
He reveals that he knows they were spies taking orders from the ducal house, leaving Arasilla reeling. The Lord calls for Colin, who confirms that all the necessary evidence has been prepared. Colin steps forward and offers a set of papers for the lady to review.
Arasilla reads the documents with a look of growing shock and realization.
The papers reveal a detailed plan to frame Audrey and have her removed from the mansion. The evidence includes a record of the head maid's cooperation in the scheme to sabotage the household. The correspondence further mentions that a specific weakness of the lady has been identified for exploitation.
Sweating and desperate, Rosalyn screams that the letter is a fake and she never wrote it.
Damian refutes her claim, stating he personally verified the letter's origin at the post office. The schemer's face twists in rage as she realizes another maid, Mary, has betrayed her. Flashbacks show how Mary carefully observed Rosalyn's suspicious behavior and perfect timing. Mary is shown in a memory, smiling as she monitors the spies' movements. The scene returns to the present as Mary stands calmly before the gathered group. Identified as Colin's subordinate, Mary explains the routine of Rosalyn's secret communications with the ducal house. Colin adds that he intercepted and copied every message on his superior's orders to ensure no doubt remained. Damian asks for his wife's forgiveness for keeping her in the dark while he secured the proof. Looking at the husband she once doubted, Arasilla softly speaks his name. A warm and genuine smile finally breaks across the lady's face as she looks at him. The Lord stares back with an intense and unreadable expression. Damian insists on handling the specific punishment for the two main conspirators himself.
Arasilla agrees and asks to deal with the remaining maids who participated in the bullying.
The other servants fall to their knees, weeping and begging for another chance. Damian orders the knights to drag the head maid and Rosalyn down to the cellar. Refusing to accept defeat, the malicious maid mutters that things cannot end this way. A knight roughly orders her to be silent as a dark aura begins to emanate from her. A sudden explosion of fire erupts from Rosalyn's body, searing the arms of the knights as they cry out in pain. Damian immediately identifies her as a former mercenary possessing a dangerous aura ability. Despite the danger, Arasilla steps forward with a determined stride. She orders everyone to stand back as she begins to manifest a powerful orb of purple magic. A terrifyingly wicked grin stretches across the lady's face as she prepares to crush her enemy. Panicked by the display of power, Rosalyn shoves past the other maids to flee. Arasilla reiterates her command for the bystanders to stay clear of the impending clash. The swirling energy in her palm grows more intense as she focuses her magical power. Her eyes glow with a menacing light as she declares her intent to end the traitor. Arasilla stands atop the stairs, her purple magical whip trailing behind as she watches a maid flee. Rosalyn runs through the hallway in a panic, desperate to escape. Sweating and gritting her teeth, the traitorous maid continues her frantic flight. The mistress unleashes a massive wave of purple energy to block the exit. Rosalyn glances back in terror as the magical strike closes in. A magical binding wraps around the maid's ankle, causing her to stumble with a gasp. A heavy thud sounds as the force of the magic slams Rosalyn onto the floor. Purple energy coils around the captive as she groans in pain and defeat. Arasilla looms over her, demanding to know the truth about the letters and the mention of her weakness. The lady's questioning centers on the specific details of the scheme mentioned in the traitor's correspondence. A dark and menacing smile spreads across the lady's face as she prepares to interrogate her prisoner. Terrified, Rosalyn begs for mercy while claiming she never actually saw the contents of the secret documents. Arasilla silences the spy with a gesture and magically gags her, rejecting all her excuses. Standing over the bound mercenary, the mistress decides to continue the interrogation in the basement. It is revealed that the head maid was bribed by the Vandermeers and Rosalyn was an undercover mercenary. The other complicit maids are seen weeping as they are forced to leave the estate without references. Audrey is welcomed back with joyful hugs by the remaining loyal servants.
Arasilla walks into her husband's office as he sits at his desk.
Damian looks up from his work to ask if she is unharmed, though she seems confused by his concern. The lavender-haired lady pauses, looking at her husband with wide, surprised eyes. She suggests that he must be feeling a deep sense of loss after being betrayed by his longtime staff. Damian stares back at her with a look of quiet shock.
The mistress questions his odd look as Damian admits he never saw her compassionate side before.
Laughing amidst a backdrop of flowers, Arasilla notes that they both share a similar disposition.
A small version of the lady wonders if her lack of empathy made her sound accidentally rude.
Damian closes his eyes, explaining that he wasn't attached to the head maid and is used to such betrayals.
Arasilla's blue eye widens in surprise as she ponders his claim of being used to treachery.
Resting on the desk, she asks about his curiosity regarding Audrey and explains the maid recognized her true worth long ago. A gentle smile crosses her face as she begins to reflect on her childhood. In a flashback, a teacher asks the young students what their future dreams are.
Two children excitedly announce their goals of becoming a knight and a princess.
A young Arasilla raises her hand high, declaring her intent to be the world's greatest wizard.
With a joyful shout, the little girl proclaims she will be an incredibly powerful mage.
Her classmates and teacher mock her, questioning why a girl would ever want such a dream.
A peer tells Arasilla that her mother taught her that marriage is a woman's true path to happiness. The young lady looks away with a look of silent, stubborn rejection toward the idea of marriage.
The memory shifts to a bright garden where the young mistress is picnicking with a young Audrey. Raising a stick like a wand, the girl tells her friend she will conquer the world with her magic.
Audrey claps with a genuine smile, telling her lady how cool she is and leaving her stunned. The kind maid encourages her, promising that she will surely become a wonderful and strong mage.
Overwhelmed by the support, the little girl's eyes sparkle with newfound happiness and determination.
A heartfelt promise to share the world with Audrey in the future echoes through the memory. A joyful thud sounds as Audrey lifts the giggling girl into the air under the sun.
Back in the present, Arasilla recalls that Audrey was the only one who never doubted her.
Outside the window, Audrey is seen diligently going about her work with a content look.
The lady smiles at her husband, remarking on the incredible luck of having such a loyal companion. Damian stares at her with a soft, intense gaze and agrees with her assessment. Reaching forward, Arasilla presents a dark blue gift box to her husband.
Damian takes the item with a look of surprise, asking for an explanation of the gift.
She explains that she bought the yellow gemstone necklace for him while picking out a present for Audrey. The white-haired man mentions that knights are prohibited from wearing accessories besides wedding rings, prompting the lavender-haired lady to angrily tell him to sell the necklace if he dislikes it.
Looking flustered with beads of sweat, the man clarifies he is only worried that the sentiment behind her gift might be lost.
The lavender-haired lady smiles gently and explains that the simple act of giving him the gift is meaningful enough, regardless of whether he wears it. She dismisses the matter, stating that the necklace was out of her hands the moment she gave it to him. A radiant smile illuminates her face. Golden eyes widen in quiet surprise. The yellow gemstone glows brilliantly.
Startled, the lady questions why he is handling the gift after claiming he could not wear it.
The white-haired man decides to wear the necklace beneath his collar, smiling as he says it will be fine for just a moment. They share a quiet, lingering moment. Laughing brightly, the lady jokes that he should definitely be thankful because the item was quite expensive, to which he playfully questions her claim.
The white-haired man suddenly asks the lady if she happens to be free this coming weekend.
Blushing slightly, he touches the necklace hidden under his shirt. The lady stares back, completely stunned. A contemplative gaze meets her eyes.
Flowers surround the couple in silence.
Confusion flickers across the lady's face.
Horrified and sweating, she shouts in disbelief, asking if he has lost his mind or if their pretend relationship has finally confused him.
Slamming his hands on the desk with a red face, the man insists they need a date, though she reacts with physical disgust. He explains that the ducal family had originally ordered Rosalyn to orchestrate a divorce between them. A dark realization suggests the divorce was a scheme to act before they could find the will and restore the original order.
Narrated against the silhouette of a puppeteer, he explains that Rosalyn has been reporting every detail of their distance to the ducal family to facilitate that divorce.
An idea strikes the lady as she asks if he is suggesting a public date to stop the rumors, and he confirms she finally understands. A sudden, loud cheer erupts from the lady as she fist pumps the air, leaving the man at a loss for words at her enthusiasm. She runs off excitedly, agreeing to see him this weekend, but he calls for her to wait as he has something else to provide.
A heavy thud sounds as he drops a massive stack of papers, leaving the lady in a state of comical shock.
He reveals it is a comprehensive list of 14 restaurants and 38 entertainment venues for their date. Amidst complex calculations, he asks her to review the details, including the duration of each course and his research into her favorite foods, leaving her looking completely drained. The chef prepares a gourmet meal.
Lost in a daze, the lady thinks about how well the chef girls meet until the man asks if she is even listening.
Loyal maids gasp in excitement as they notice the couple preparing for their outing.
Dressed in a formal white suit, the man stands ready as the lady calls out his name, Damian.
Intricate gold embroidery adorns his sleeve. Looking up from the foyer, Damian tells his lady that she looks beautiful today, as she always does. The lavender-haired lady smiles radiantly, holding a pink parasol and wearing an elegant flower-accented gown. Laughing, she agrees with the compliment and returns it, telling Damian that the same applies to him. The maids are overcome with joy, gushing about how beautiful and wonderful their lady looks. Damian thinks that they must ensure the staff sees them on good terms before asking her if she is ready to depart. He offers his hand to his wife. A nervous blush colors Damian's face. A rhythmic thud sounds as Damian strides forward so quickly that his wife struggles to keep up. Looking annoyed, she mutters that if he wants to put on a show, he should actually take her with him instead of leaving her behind. The scene shifts to the elegant exterior and interior of the Vesta restaurant on 7th Avenue.
Damian pulls out a chair for his wife.
Whispering pointedly, the lady mentions his lack of an escort earlier and asks if he has found some manners, to which he admits he made a mistake due to a lack of sleep. She mockingly asks if he's tired from sleeping anywhere but his own bed, only for a voice to call out her name. Both of them turn in surprise. A handsome blonde-haired man in a purple uniform smiles at them, and the lady recognizes him as Frederick. Frederick smiles warmly, noting that this is the first time they have met since the wedding. Damian bows deeply, greeting the man as the crown prince, while Frederick invites him to raise his head and join him. A sharp clack sounds as the blonde-haired prince congratulates Damian on his marriage. Frederick wonders why Damian is sitting so close to him. Damian pulls his chair in with a quick slide sounding while agreeing with the prince. Frederick asks for confirmation with a skeptical, red-eyed gaze. The blonde-haired man looks at Damian with a subtle smirk. Arasilla recalls how Frederick got lost on their first day at the academy. Frederick admits he mistook her for an upperclassman back then. Damian's golden eye narrows with quiet intensity. Arasilla and Frederick left together while enjoying their gourmet dinner. Arasilla apologizes, worrying that Damian is bored by their academy stories. A soft slide sounds as Damian rests his hand on his glass, dismissing her concern. A romantic aura surrounds the blushing, white-haired man. Damian acts affectionate while Arasilla reacts with visible annoyance. Damian claims he loses himself whenever he looks at his wife. A waitress panics over a drink mistake while Damian continues his confession. A deep blush colors Damian's face as he continues his act. A label identifies the wine that was served to Damian by the steak. Arasilla laughs while Frederick watches Damian with suspicion. Frederick suspects Damian is using lies to win Arasilla's favor. A sharp poke sounds as a fork sinks into a plate of shrimp. Frederick offers Arasilla a piece of shrimp to try. He claims that seafood has always been her favorite food. Damian bristles at Frederick's claim of knowing his wife so well. Arasilla stares at the offered shrimp with a blank expression. Tension crackles between the men as their competitive spirits clash. Frederick asks Arasilla what she's thinking about. Arasilla bluntly states that she does not accept bribes for favors. A soft clink sounds as Arasilla cuts into the shrimp dish. Arasilla eats the shrimp and finds it surprisingly delicious. A bright ring sounds as Arasilla calls for more while Frederick looks flustered. Arasilla expresses her deep disappointment in Frederick for forgetting her tastes. She yells that she actually prefers meat much more than seafood. Arasilla vividly describes her passion for juicy, medium-rare beef. Damian calms his wife down and orders a steak with shrimp. Arasilla cheers for Damian while he boasts about knowing her preferences. Frederick is left in a state of quiet, stunned shock. Frederick wishes the couple a good time as they part ways. Damian and the prince exchange formal parting pleasantries. Frederick stops Arasilla, prompting her to ask what he wants. The blonde-haired man requests a formal hand-kissing greeting. Arasilla stares back at him with a look of absolute disgust. With a soft rustle sounding, Frederick leans in to talk privately. Arasilla looks irritated while Damian watches them from a distance. Frederick whispers that there is something he has wanted to say for years. They stand close together among a backdrop of yellow flowers. The flowery scene captures the silent confrontation between the two. Frederick looks stunned by her sudden, blunt reaction. Arasilla scolds him for his bad habit stalling. She shouts that she is far too busy for his games. Frederick breaks into a sudden, bright laugh. The blonde-haired prince suggests that the three of them should share a meal with their former classmate Paula, a proposal that the lavender-haired lady finds delightful since they haven't gathered since the wedding. Damian stares with a hardened expression as Frederick mentions that he and Paula were recently discussing the lady during their own dinner together. Smiling brightly, the blonde-haired man hopes for a swift reunion between them all. Frederick boards his ornate carriage and promises to write to the couple as they stand together on the cobblestone street. A rhythmic clatter sounds as the carriage pulls away while the lavender-haired lady waves farewell beside her silent husband. Looking up at her husband, Arasilla offers a cheerful smile, while Damian remains lost in a grim, silent reverie. Pink cherry blossoms cover the branches. The park is alive with couples. A young couple laughs together nearby. Damian watches as picnickers rest together. Arasilla twirls her pink parasol and enjoys the pleasant scenery while her husband trails behind her. Damian firmly states that he will not behave jealously, but his wife dismisses his sudden statement as absolute nonsense. A focused golden eye peers ahead. Damian warns his wife that she must not create circumstances where he is forced to confront another man on her behalf. Laughing at his intensity, Arasilla asks if he is actually feeling wary of Frederick. The white-haired man argues that a male friend is still a man, while his wife counters that she has heard such talk before and firmly believes in platonic friendship. Arasilla turns to her husband and asks if he knows what trait makes a man the most unattractive in the world. With a cold and piercing gaze, the lady declares that an unattractive man is one who obsessively interferes with a woman's friendships. Damian remains silent, his brow furrowed. Damian advises his wife to act with caution given their marriage, though she mockingly suggests he should take his own advice. Pointing to other couples, Arasilla complains that he is keeping too much distance for a public date and isn't even holding her hand. A soft rustle sounds as the lady reaches her hand toward her husband. A sudden jolt sounds as the white-haired man flinches at his wife's approaching hand. Arasilla warns him that his continued distant behavior is beginning to truly upset her. She demands he play his role properly for the cherry blossom viewing as they move toward the water. A passing woman in a boat gasps as she recognizes the famous couple. Public whispers describe the duo as the eccentric mage and the stubborn knight. Arasilla sits elegantly in the boat while Damian takes up the oars. Onlookers conclude that the marriage rumors are indeed true. A man in a nearby boat admits he was skeptical of the newspaper reports until seeing them together in person. Seeing their audience, Arasilla reflects on the power of the news and decides they must put on a convincing show of affection. The lady gestures to the blossoms and asks her husband if they are as beautiful as she is. A rhythmic splash sounds as Damian rows with single-minded speed, believing that a fast ride is a better one. Arasilla shouts for him to say something as he rows with frantic, silent energy. A massive splash sounds as their boat speeds past a shocked couple, drenching them and causing them to scream in terror. The lady asks if he thinks he is in a boat race, but the confused man wonders if that wasn't the goal. Comparing their situation to the affectionate couples nearby, Arasilla laments that their own interaction feels incredibly bleak. A woman in another boat whispers to her partner that the couple clearly doesn't get along well. A smug pulls his partner closer and brags that very few couples share a bond as strong as theirs. A sudden zing sounds as Arasilla is overcome with horror at how they are being perceived by the public. The lady insists they must show everyone they get along, leaving Damian confused about how to achieve it. Petals drift softly through the air. Looming over her husband with a backdrop of flowers, Arasilla commands Damian to remain perfectly still. The lady's hand reaches out toward the fluster light. A rhythmic thumping sounds as the lavender-haired lady leans in close, causing Damian's heart to race. Nearby, a loving couple shares an intimate moment together in their own boat. The lovers lean toward each other. Damian's golden eyes widen in shock. A sharp gasp sounds between them. Damian's panic manifests as a giant skeletal form looming over the boat, and he thinks that he cannot let her get any closer to him. A massive wave of water crashes around the boat. Arasilla tearfully asks what he's doing while a bear-like aura looms over her. Standing up in the boat, she screams if he'd be calm in her position. Damian admits his mistake internally and asks why she approached him so silently. She yells that she was only trying to remove a flower petal, but now wishes she'd ripped his head off, while he suggests they return to shore. A carriage rolls through the cobblestone streets. Tension fills the interior of the moving carriage. Damian apologizes and claims he was merely caught off guard for a second. Arasilla asks if he dodged her because he thought she would touch him. She realizes her suspicion was correct while he looks away. The lady asks if he understands how rude his behavior is. She states she doesn't enjoy physical contact either and asks why he ignores her emotions. He looks increasingly ashamed. A sudden, sharp jolt sounds as the carriage hits a rough patch. Damian insists that isn't the whole story. He grips his hands tightly while wondering if he should reveal his secrets. Remembering a betrayal by a head maid, he fears his wife might do the same if she knew the truth. Arasilla demands to know if he is going to respond. A soft tremor sounds as he confesses he doesn't trust her enough to tell her. She asks for the reason behind their marriage then. Damian explains it was simply a marriage of mutual necessity. She asks if a business arrangement justifies hurting his partner. The white-haired man stares in stunned silence. She confesses that his behavior has left her feeling deeply offended. Standing up, she declares she no longer wants to be with him. Damian promises to practice and fix his behavior for her. She reminds him they are stuck together until he inherits the title. She argues she deserves to know his reasons and hates that he distrusts her. Damian offers to stop the carriage and walk so she can have the ride. With a chilling look, she orders him to listen to her. A soft thud sounds as Arasilla steps out of the carriage alone. Damian watches her leave with a hollow expression. He looks at his own hand and trembles with regret. Arasilla walks through the city streets with a look of misery. Damian watches her from the balcony and wonders what he has done. The scene shifts to the Red Hawk Knights training runs. A powerful, bright zing sounds as a sword cleaves through a dummy. Damian stands amidst the wreckage of his training session. He stares at his wedding ring while panting from exertion. A dark-haired knight asks if he had a fight with his wife. Surprised, Damian asks how he knew, and the man points to the destroyed training area. The knight offers his help as a love doctor, making Damian wonder which problem to share. He ponders if dodging her or admitting his lack of trust was the bigger mistake. The knight claims his cluelessness is the real issue and asks if she cried. Damian recalls her sad face. Damian argues his wife isn't a crybaby, though the knight notes Damian is the one looking tearful. The knight points out that Damian has been neglecting her for work. He tells the commander to imagine her heartbreak over their ruined first date. Damian recalls a beautiful portrait of their first date. He realizes he is a husband who hurt his wife on their special day. A sharp clench sounds as he grips his sore hilt. Damian stands alone in the shadows, haunted by thoughts of Arasilla. The social club is very busy. Laughter rings out from a group gathered around the billiard table. A nearby couple enjoys their drinks in the upscale lounge. A formal herald announces that Lady Arasilla Vandermir is making her grand entrance. Guests whisper in surprise as the lavender-haired lady walks past them alone. Men in the lounge gossip about her husband's whereabouts while she passes by. Arasilla requests a cup of apple cinnamon tea from a passing sever. She silently resolves to match her husband's behavior by doing exactly as she pleases. Mocking laughter follows her as she tries to find a seat in peace. Gentlemen at a nearby table insult her mage skills and suggest her marriage was a desperate move. Overhearing the cruel words, Arasilla stands up with a look of sharp determination. A rhythmic clicking sounds as the lady approaches the group, catching the eye of a smug, green-haired man. Her gaze is chilling and cold. The green-haired man taunts her and asks if she plans to use her magic against him. He continues to mock her and claims her beauty is her only redeeming quality. A hand suddenly grips his wrist. Damian appears and grips the man's wrist, causing him to cry out in recognition. With a cold and threatening look, the white-haired man warns him to speak more carefully. A low grunt sounds as Damian holds the man steady while apologizing to his wife for his delay. A sharp axe sounds as the intruder is shaken, and Damian invites the man to continue his insults. She stares at him in total disbelief. Looking closer, the lady asks herself why his necktie is tied in such a messy, uncharacteristic knot. She gazes down and notes that his usually meticulous appearance is ruined by his untied boots. Realizing he must have run to her side, she turns her attention back to the quivering lord. A loud bang sounds as Arasilla slams a bottle onto the table and declares everyone present to be beneath her. The lady warns the young lord to stop boasting about his low-level associations. Leaning down, she coldly describes his entire existence as pathetic. Arasilla commands Damian to leave with her, leaving the green-haired man cowering and groaning. The heavy doors slam behind them. The previous mockers are forced to admit the pair actually seems like a perfect match. They stand together under the stars. She asks how he located her, but he simply points out that this was their original date location. The lavender-haired lady turns to him and notes that he is incredibly late for said date. Damian lowers his head and admits that his earlier words were a mistake. He offers a formal and sincere apology for his rude behavior from earlier in the day. The knight asks what he can possibly do to earn her forgiveness. Arasilla gestures toward the water and mockingly tells him to jump in and scream an apology. She turns away with a sigh, certain that he would never take such a joke seriously. A sudden thud sounds as Damian climbs the railing and begins unbuttoning his shirt, terrifying his wife. Arasilla berates him for being an idiot as she pulls him back from the ledge. She frantically shouts for him to get down from the railing immediately. They stand together by the lake. Damian asks if she genuinely enjoys tormenting him, and she admits she finds it quite fun. A soft laugh sounds as the lady beams with genuine joy, while her husband smiles back fondly. Damian slowly adjusts his open collar. The white-haired man mentions that he was known for being quite strange during his youth. He elaborates that people often went as far as to label him insane. Arasilla looks at him with wide, curious eyes and asks him what he means. Damian explains that this history is the true reason he avoids physical contact with others. A memory of a lonely child. A soft creak sounds as the young boy pushes open the heavy doors. The child's eyes widen as he discovers his mother's body lying on the floor. A sudden creak sounds as the boy enters the room once more. The horrific memory of finding his mother's body repeats in his mind. A narration box explains that Damian was the first one to discover his mother after she passed away. Standing alone on the dark balcony, Damian reflects on his past. Looking at his wife, Damian explains that he wasn't actually insane. He tells Arasilla that the rumors were fabricated by people who wanted him to be labeled as mad. Damian reveals that the current duchess and the servants were all too happy to conspire against him. He confesses that he was abused by them under the guise of medical treatment, which led him to push away anyone who approached him. Damian explains that this trauma is why he avoids physical contact and admits feeling ashamed, though Arasilla finds his pain significant. Arasilla offers a heartfelt and sincere apology to her husband. She confesses that she was completely unaware he had endured such a painful and traumatic childhood. Arasilla regrets assuming his behavior was mere germophobia, while Damian explains that the secrecy was meant to keep his past from becoming a public scandal. Damian expresses his determination to overcome his trauma through practice, as he cannot live in fear forever. He asks Arasilla for her patience while a nearby couple rushes by to see the fireworks. Damian notes the time and suggests they should probably head back inside. Arasilla asks to stay and watch the fireworks before they depart. Arasilla beams with joy and gives him a quick, warm smile. She explains that they need to demonstrate their closeness to the world. They walk together through the quiet, cobbled streets of the calm. Arasilla suggests they start practicing physical contact only when Damian feels comfortable. Damian asks if he should only touch her when he's ready, and she confirms he should proceed at his own pace. She gives a thumbs up and encourages him with high spirits. Arasilla teases him for being dense and reminds him that this is normal behavior for a married couple. Arasilla asks if he'd rather practice with his aide, causing Damian to imagine a comical scene before deciding to practice with her instead. Arasilla asks who he was thinking of while chibi bubbles float over the aerial view of the city. Arasilla remains skeptical, while Damian clears his throat in response to her suspicion. Damian admits that even if he had been thinking of someone else, his choice would still have been her. Arasilla is left completely stunned and speechless by his admission. They stand together on the bridge as petals drift through the night air. Arasilla suggests they share a meal together at least once a day from now on. She explains it will be a natural way to get to know one another better, and Damian agrees to avoid another public incident like the one with Rosalyn. Arasilla marvels at the scene, calling the falling petals a rain of flowers. Damian reaches out his palm to catch a drifting flower petal. Arasillia's suggestion about practicing on his own terms echoes in his mind. Arasilla smiles as she gazes out at the beautiful evening view. Damian reaches out and takes Arasillia's hand in his arm. The lavender-haired lady reacts with genuine shock at his sudden initiative. Loud pops and bangs sound as fireworks burst into colorful lights over the city clock tower. Damian watches Arasilla with a newfound tenderness while holding her hand. He asks if she is truly ready for this step, as she had mentioned earlier. Damian asks if her earlier offer was a lie, looking at her with a soft smile. With a bright smile, she confirms it was no lie and looks back at him. Arasilla tells him he can hold her hand like this whenever he wishes to. Comical lines appear as Damian looks smug and Arasilla grumbles about how quickly he became confident. Under the fireworks, Damian claims she doesn't know modesty, while she argues her beauty allows her to be smug, and they laugh together. A newspaper reports on Arasilla and Damian's first date, questioning if a knight and a magician can truly find love. Commoners at a cafe gossip excitedly about the romance of the century depicted in the morning paper. Arasillia's family celebrates the news, noting that she seems truly happy in her marriage. Crown Prince Frederick reads the morning newspaper with a look of intrigued focus. A brown-haired woman looks on in horror at a newspaper article and a box containing a severed bundle of blue hair. A dark memory of the Grand Madame's past fury looms over the current situation. A soft clinking sounds as fine china and silver cutlery are laid out for a formal meal. 3 maids beam with joy at the peaceful atmosphere currently filling the estate. Damian and Arasilla share a quiet, romantic meal together in a beautifully lit dining hall. Arasilla feels a sense of deep satisfaction, believing her efforts to fix their public image have finally succeeded. The peace is broken when Damian informs Arasilla that he must leave the city for an extended mission. He explains that an imperial order has tasked him with investigating a massive monster migration in the eastern mountains. Arasilla questions the necessity of his personal involvement, and Damian confirms that the knights are currently overwhelmed with duties. Damian recalls that the order came directly from the blonde prince, but decides it is best to keep that detail from his wife. When she asks for the specific time of his departure, Damian looks visibly uncomfortable and hesitant. The couple stands together at the palace gates before a large troop of soldiers and transport carriages.
Arasilla is shocked to realize he is leaving immediately, while Damian offers a sheepish apology for the suddenness. He notes that seeing her in her formal Magic Tower uniform is a rare and welcome sight. She suddenly lunges forward to embrace him and asks when he will return, to which he estimates a fortnight. A sharp gasp sounds as Arasilla comically berates the nearby knights for their perceived lack of respect. Damian pulls his wife into a close, affectionate hold and promises to be diligent in writing back to her. He playfully teases her about her choice of attire, and she reminds him that she took time off work just to see him. They continue to exchange lighthearted banter while his aide watches from a distance, pleased to see them bonding. As the carriage begins to pull away, Arasilla offers a heartfelt promise to think of him every single day. A rhythmic rumbling sounds as the heavy transport carriages pass through the palace archway and out into the countryside.
Once her husband is out of sight, Arasilla's expression shifts to one of pure, unbridled joy as she celebrates her temporary freedom.
Inside the moving carriage, Damian lets out a sudden sneeze, leading his aide to laugh and suggests someone is talking about him. Arasilla skips happily through the mansion halls, singing about her relief at being away from the marriage for a while. Beaming with delight, she enters the main foyer and calls out a cheerful greeting to her personal staff. Her high spirits are immediately crushed as a maid runs toward her, looking absolutely terrified. The lavender-haired lady stands paralyzed as the maid frantically announces that the madam of the house has arrived. The maid trembles and stammers, barely able to contain her fear as she tries to explain the situation. A sharp clatter sounds as a teacup is slammed onto its saucer by an unseen, agitated hand. The Grand Madam sits regally on the sofa, her posture rigid and her face contorted with cold disapproval. Arasilla breaks into a cold sweat at the realization that the formidable Grand Madam Vandermir is currently in the mansion. A fleeting memory of Damian's confident, white-haired visage passes through the air. In a separate location, the brown-haired woman denounces Damian as a vicious bastard after reading his letter about the servants.
The Grand Madam warns her daughter that Damian is far more cunning than his late mother ever was.
She points a sharp finger and berates her daughter for being too slow and allowing Damian to gain the upper hand. A rhythmic tapping sounds as the Grand Madam's shoe hits the floor in an impatient and threatening manner. She announces her intention to travel to the capital, much to the nervous excitement of her daughter. A gloved hand rests possessively against the gilded frame of a dark portrait. Standing before the painting, the older woman vows to personally remove anyone who dares to stand in her son's way.
Back in the mansion, Arasilla curtsies respectfully and offers a formal greeting to the terrifying matriarch.
The Grand Madam demands to know why she is so late, and Arasilla explains her delay was due to seeing Damian off. A sinister smirk crosses the older woman's face as she claims her visit was specifically intended for the young lady. She informs Arasilla that it is time she learned the proper conduct befitting a member of their prestigious family.
The Grand Madam launches into a cruel critique of Arasilla's management skills and her lack of marital wisdom.
Arasilla remains in stunned silence while the household staff looks on with visible anxiety. A flashback reveals that Arasilla spent her single years avoiding all forms of bridal training in favor of a carefree life. A sharp clap sounds as the older woman brings her hands together to demand immediate attention. She declares that she will be staying in the mansion indefinitely to personally oversee Arasilla's transformation. Arasilla realizes with horror that the Grand Madam intends to torment her until she finally begs for a divorce. Arasilla respectfully accepts being mentored, while the Grand Madame promises a thorough education. The two women trade intense, challenging glares as the lavender-haired lady welcomes the coming battle. A psychological war of wills begins as Arasilla vows to endure any hardships the matriarch creates.
Over breakfast, the Grand Madam criticizes the household management and the lack of proper servant training.
Blaming Arasilla's magic research for the house estate, the older woman orders dawn to dusk study starting tomorrow.
Arasilla explains that her commitment to the Magic Tower makes such an intensive schedule impossible.
A sharp slam sounds as the matriarch strikes the table, calling Arasilla a nuisance to her profession.
The Grand Madam orders her to resign from the Magic Tower immediately to focus on house duties.
Looking firm and resolute, the lavender-haired lady firmly refuses to quit her career. Arasilla defends her career as a non-negotiable boundary, but offers to receive instruction in other areas. To reach a compromise, Arasilla agrees to leave work earlier for her lessons to please the matriarch. A soft gulp sounds as the Grand Madam drinks, inwardly fuming at the young lady's perceived insolence.
The matriarch watches her daughter-in-law eat, silently plotting how to tame the defiant young woman. Back at the tower, Arasilla thanks her dedicated staff for their hard work on the project.
She celebrates their grand prize win while the team credits her leadership for their success. The green-haired colleague details the complex mana absorption theory that powered their recent breakthrough. Arasilla's nose grows comically long as she playfully takes credit for the advanced magical concepts.
She secretly recalls that the core idea was inspired by observing Damian's org control during their past.
To reward the team, Arasilla grants everyone an early leave and an upcoming vacation.
Her green-haired assistant wonders if domestic issues are the reason for Aurelia's sudden early departure.
Recalling the formidable older woman, Arasilla tells her staff not to worry about her personal life.
Chibi Arasilla happily tells the staff to go home and enjoy their time off.
The researchers wave a cheerful goodbye.
Rhythmic hoofbeats sound through the gown.
Arasilla finishes her work with satisfaction.
She hands a letter to Audrey, her black-haired maid, to be delivered to Damian.
Letting out a heavy sigh, Arasilla listens as Audrey asks about her troubles with the matriarch.
Arasilla admits she feels stuck because she cannot bring herself to mistreat Damian's grandmother. Tears well up as she realizes her relief at Damian's departure was short-lived.
Wiping away a tear, Arasilla confesses she feels a deep emptiness without her husband present.
Damian's warm smile fills Arasillia's leery. The carriage continues through the town. The Grand Madam scolds Arasilla for wearing trousers, while the younger woman defends the practical attire. A soft rustle sounds as the matriarch orders Arasilla to hand-wash a large basket of laundry. Forced to serve dinner instead of eating, Arasilla luckily has a snack Audrey secretly prepared earlier. Arasilla refuses to break under torment.
Arasilla achieves a state of meditative calm, refusing to let the matriarch's cruelty disturb her.
Consumed by rage at Arasillia's composure, the Grand Madam screams that she will have her revenge.
The matriarch sits regally among servants.
A sharp snip sounds during nail turning. While receiving her manicure, the Grand Madam wonders how she will ever tame the defiant Arasilla. A frustrated sigh escapes the older woman right before the maid accidentally nicks her finger. A sharp ouch sounds as the matriarch recoils, clutching her injured finger in sudden pain. The head maid berates the crying girl for harming the matriarch while the girl begs for forgiveness. Her face contorting with rage, the older woman feels humiliated that a common maid touched her. She demands a rod for physical punishment, leaving the brown-haired maid pleading in total shock. A firm tap sounds as the matriarch grabs the rod, ordering the maid to accept her strike. Brandishing the rod with terrifying rage, the older woman asserts her superiority over everyone in the household. Walking through the mansion, Arasilla is alerted by the sound of servants calling for her help. Looking completely distraught and terrified, a maid pleads for Arasilla to save her from the matriarch's wrath. Arasilla asks the panicked maid to speak slowly, learning that Cindy is being beaten. The sound of a whimper fills the air as the young maid bleeds from her hands. Horrified and angry, Arasilla realizes the severity of the matriarch's cruelty. The older woman smirks with cold mass.
A heavy door flies open with a sudden, loud wang.
Arasilla demands to know the meaning of this violence as she stops the impending strike. Looking absolutely furious, she orders everyone to release the child immediately. A sharp clatter sounds as the matriarch slams her glass, calling Arasilla's intrusion insolent. Arasilla asserts her authority as the family mistress and demands the victim be let go. The rod is lowered while the injured girl continues to cry in pain. Trembling and bloody, the young maid struggles to hold herself together. Arasilla kneels to comfort the child and dismisses her from the room. She instructs Audrey to escort the injured girl away. A sudden splash sounds as the matriarch hurls her wine directly at Arasilla. The older woman forbids their departure, but Arasilla pleads for them to be spared. Consumed by rage, the matriarch screams at being defied by the young lady. Arasilla remains calm, firmly reminding the older woman of her own status in the family. The matriarch mocks her fake apology while Arasilla stands her ground. Arasilla asks what price she must pay to end the tormenting of the staff. Blaming Arasilla for the household's failures, the matriarch suggests a personal lesson in discipline. Arasilla's cold reflection appears in the surface of the wineglass. The matriarch demands she resign from the tower to serve her personally as a lesson. The nearby servants gasp in shock at the unreasonable demand. To everyone's surprise, Arasilla yields and agrees to the matriarch's command. However, she sets a firm condition that the maids must never be harmed again. The older woman is momentarily stunned by the young lady's unwavering resolve. Arasilla gathers the servants together in the main hall. The injured maid tearfully apologizes, but Arasilla reassures her it wasn't her fault. Arasilla promises Cindy that as her mistress, she will always protect her. Overwhelmed by kindness, the young maid looks up with tear-filled eyes. Arasilla instructs the staff to report any future abuse directly to her. She offers a warm and genuine smile to her household. Arasilla departs the hall after ordering the treatment of Cindy's wounds. The maids realize they were misled by rumors and feel deep shame for doubting Arasilla. Inspired by her protection, they decide they must find a way to help her. They plan to counter the matriarch by spreading word of Arasilla's true character. Looking devious, the servants vowed to make the matriarch pay for her actions. A dark oath is made to show the grandmother what happens when she interferes.
Narrative text indicates the story has shifted to Damian's location in the Atar Mountains.
A row of white tents stands against the rugged mountain landscape at sunset. A soldier informs his commander that a letter has arrived. Damian asks if it is from the palace, but Isaac clarifies it is from his wife. Damian looks surprised while holding the message. Isaac teases Damian about being newlyweds while the commander senses something is wrong. The letter begins with a demand that Damian read its contents alone. A cute illustration of Arasilla whispering appears in the center of the page. Arasilla writes that the matriarch arrived under the false pretense of teaching etiquette. A weary sigh escapes Damian as Isaac tries to eavesdrop on the private message. Damian pauses, noticing strange gaps and spacing hidden between the words. Damian catches Isaac leaning in to peek at the confidential letter. Isaac salutes while apologizing for his behavior, but Damian informs him they will be returning home earlier than expected. A postscript in the letter notes that Arasilla's current situation is truly awful as she scrubs floors. Damian remarks on the use of the word awful while a bright idea strikes him, much to Isaac's annoyance. Smiling warmly at the letter, Damian decides he must return to his wife as soon as possible. Narrated text explains Arasilla took her first long-term leave from the magic tower, leaving her tearful staff begging for her return. Arasilla is forced to do grueling housework while the grandmother's maids watch to ensure she uses no magic. As the gray-haired grandmother's demands increase, Arasilla steadfastly accomplishes every task without complaint. Marquis Hugo's estate stands grandly. Arasilla is joyfully reunited with her sister Iris, who has brown hair and green eyes. During tea, Iris notes that Arasilla has lost weight, and the lavender-haired lady struggles to find the words to explain. Iris is horrified, asking if the rumors are true that the grandmother is preventing Arasilla from eating. Arasilla is bewildered to learn that wild rumors about her mistreatment have spread like wildfire among other estate's maids. An exaggerated rumor depicts the grandmother riding on Arasilla's back and screaming at her to move faster. Another rumor portrays the grandmother whipping Arasilla, though the younger woman insists that the reality is not that severe. Iris explains that the maids who disliked Arasilla were the ones spreading these credible-sounding, nasty rumors for revenge. Arasilla is touched that her staff would do this for her, but Iris worries about her taking such abuse. Recalling an invitation, Arasilla asks Iris to read the document she received from the grandmother. Iris holds up the card and realizes it is an invitation to a high society party. Iris reacts with subtle shock. Iris asks where the invitation came from, and Arasilla confirms it was given to her by the grandmother. Horrified, Iris screams that Arasilla must never attend this specific tea party. Iris warns that the invitation is a trap designed to completely bury Arasilla in high society. Arasilla realizes that the grandmother was only being quiet because she was plotting this elaborate social ambush. A soft trembling sounds as Arasilla's fist shakes on the table while Iris calls her name in concern. A dark, terrifying smile spreads across Arasilla's face as she declares the situation is perfect, triggering Iris's trouble sensor. Iris frantically asks what trouble is being planned, but Arasilla calmly sips her tea and mentions reviewing a lesson. Arasilla explains she learned the power of incitement and fabrication from her maids, leaving Iris drenched in cold sweat. Thinking of Damian, Arasilla vows to make the grandmother learn a lesson for trying to drive a wedge between them. Arasilla's cold determination intensifies as she promises to show what happens to anyone who interferes with her husband. Maniacal laughter erupts from Arasilla, while Iris laments that her sister is spouting nonsense again. A tiny angel persona appears inside Iris, pleading as a sister to stop Arasilla's impending rampage. A sudden thud sounds as a devil persona kicks the angel away, excited for the chaos Arasilla will cause. Iris's devil side takes over, and she offers to help find big scandals, mentioning Initial K and an opera singer. Arasilla is thrilled by the gossip, declaring it more than enough for her plan. Rhythmic footsteps sound as Arasilla rushes away, thanking her sister and saying she must get home. A fearful shriek sounds as Iris realizes the Grand Madam will surely chase them all back to the mansion. The return day has arrived. Grand Madame welcomes the guests. Guests remark on how rare it is for such a high-ranking elder to host such a splendid occasion. A soft snort sounds as the Grand Madam notes the proper reverence of her guests before spotting Madame Kelly. A delighted squeal sounds as Madame Kelly, a romance fanatic with pink hair, enthusiastically greets the matriarch. While Madame Kelly asks for help with her daughter, a sharp tsk sounds as the Grand Madame inwardly fumes. A blonde woman named Nora White offers her greetings to the Grand Duchess Vandermir. Nora White looks extremely smug. The Grand Madam thanks Nora for helping teach Arasilla a lesson and mentions receiving her gift.
A sinister smirk forms as the Grand Madam mentions the passing of the purple violet, a public execution in society.
Invitations mark the social target. Violets signal public social disgrace. Protesting target faces permanent exile. The Grand Madam feels a cold joy knowing the other ladies are eager to help her teach Arasilla a final lesson.
Nora White expresses her delight in assisting the Grandma. Nora vows revenge on the woman she believes stole her love interest. A sinister laugh fills the air as Arasillia's entrance is announced to the crowd. Nora and the Grand Madam share a dark and knowing look as Arasilla approaches.
Arasilla appears shockingly pale and haggard as she enters the room. Shocked gasps and murmurs arise as guests notice Arasilla can barely stand.
The Grand Madam feigns horror at Arasillia's state, accusing her of having no shame.
Aurelia holds a wilted violet and tearfully begs for the grandmother to stop.
Arasilla claims she followed every order despite being punished for supposed incompetence.
Guests whisper in horror, now believing the rumors of the grandmother's abuse.
Madame Kelly looks on with a face full of absolute shock.
A sudden click sounds as a finger presses a button labeled delusion. Narrative text reflects on Arasillia's dignity and her willingness to face social ruin for love.
Arasilla dismisses the current social narrative as false information in her own mind. Madame Kelly cries hysterically, vowing to protect the young couple's love. Madame Kelly screams at the Grand Madame, accusing her of torturing a noble daughter. Arasilla dramatically collapses into a faint amidst a shower of sparkles.
A spotlight highlights Arasillia's fallen form as guests panic and call for help.
The Grand Madam demands Arasilla stop acting as Cindy rushes into the room.
Cindy, the maid, begs the noble ladies to save her mistress. Cindy tearfully explains the abuse Arasilla suffered while defending the staff.
Horrified guests recall the grandmother's past conflicts and suspect history is repeating.
Madame Kelly declares she is taking the injured Arasilla and leaving the party.
A cold silence follows as the guests abandon the party in collective disgust.
Arasilla sits peacefully among a massive collection of consolation bouquets. Arasilla smirks and celebrates the success of her sickly makeup and acting.
The Grand Madam storms into the room, calling Arasilla an insolent wretch.
The grandmother screams at Arasilla for ruining her reputation with lies.
Arasilla reminds her that she was the one who sent the violet invitation. The Grand Madam is stunned that Arasilla understood the invitation's hidden meaning.
Arasilla explains the bouquets were gifts from guests who felt sorry for her. The grandmother stares in disbelief at the overwhelming proof of her social defeat.
Arasilla coldly warns the grandmother to leave her alone or face worse rumors.
A dark tisk sounds as the grandmother asks if Arasilla dares to threaten her. The Grand Madam admits Arasilla is sharp but claims total authority over her.
A sharp gasp sounds as the grandmother forcefully grabs Arasilla's wrist. Arasilla is visibly shocked as the older woman refuses to let her go.
The grandmother laughs maniacally, vowing to break Arasilla and restore her own name. Arasilla winces in pain as the grandmother squeezes her arm even tighter. A terrifying skeletal specter looms over Arasilla while she wonders how to escape.
Arasilla recalls explaining to Damian why she fears physical contact due to past abuse. Damian offers Arasilla a warm and gentle smile of understanding.
Arasilla rejects the grandmother's trivialization of her suffering as the skeletal specter towers.
Arasilla tells the grandmother to stop spouting nonsense and stands her ground. The Grand Madam is stunned when Arasilla questions why her life belongs to her.
A sudden snap sounds as Arasilla pulls away, revealing deep bruises on her wrist.
Arasilla asserts that neither her life nor Damian's is for the grandmother to take.
Arasilla shouts that her life cannot be wielded by someone as cruel as her. The Grand Madam raises her hand to strike as her face twists in fury.
A heavy thud sounds as Damian suddenly appears and blocks the grandmother's hand.
Damian suddenly intervenes, blocking his grandmother's attempt to strike Arasilla. Damian apologizes for his late arrival as the grandmother stares in stunned silence. A cold and menacing look crosses Damian's face as he turns his gaze toward the elderly woman. Damian steps forward to shield Arasilla, declaring he will manage the situation from this point on. Damian confronts his grandmother for her violent actions against his wife while she protests his insolence.
With an icy glare, Damian commands his grandmother to leave the mansion immediately.
The grandmother screams in a fit of rage, questioning Damian's authority over the household. As the grandmother rants about her ownership, Arasillia's mother suddenly cuts her off.
Marchioness Hugo arrives holding a newspaper, announcing she has been informed of today's scandalous events.
The grandmother is visibly shaken by the sudden appearance of Arasilia's mother.
Marchioness Hugo asserts her status and warns the grandmother against further interference in her daughter's life.
The Marchioness presents a newspaper stating that the grandmother's behavior has caused widespread public outrage. The grandmother dismisses the publication as a crude, low-circulation paper of no consequence. A close-up reveals the source of the news is a notorious organization known as the Hyena. Narration explains that the Hyena is a secretive, untouchable group that exposes the sins of the elite. Marchioness Hugo notes that rumors of the grandmother's abuse are fueling intense speculation throughout the capital. The mother announces she is hosting a grand gala and intends to send the grandmother a pointed invitation. A tense standoff occurs as the two women lock eyes in the fading light. The discarded newspaper flutters to the ground, symbolizing the grandmother's crumbling reputation. Fuming with indignation, the grandmother orders her maids to prepare for their immediate departure. The grandmother finally retreats, leaving the couple alone with the Marchioness in the vast bedroom. Arasilla assures her mother that she is unharmed despite the harrowing confrontation. When questioned about her fainting at the party, Arasilla admits it was a calculated act to gain sympathy. Marchioness Hugo reveals she knew Arasilla was plotting, leaving the younger woman momentarily stunned. The mother deduces that Arasilla orchestrated the newspaper leak to escalate the social consequences. Arasilla and Damian listen as the Marchioness scolds her daughter for her reckless behavior. Arasilla feigns a dramatic swoon into Damian's arms to avoid further lecturing. A quick wink from Arasilla signals Damian to play along with her exaggerated weakness. Damian looks deeply flustered and blushing at his wife's sudden display of affection. Damian assumes all responsibility for the day's chaos, attempting to appease the Marchioness. Arasilla leans happily against Damian, pleased that her mother is no longer angry. Marchioness Hugo smiles, content that the couple is safe and their love is secure. The mother reassures them that they are blameless and that the grandmother was the true aggressor. Marchioness Hugo takes her leave, encouraging the two of them to spend quality time together. A final humorous warning from the mother reminds Arasilla to stay out of trouble inside the mansion. The grand room falls into a peaceful silence as the couple is finally left alone. Arasilla expresses her regrets for involving her mother, but Damian validates the necessity of her actions. Arasilla laughs brightly, boasting that the entire outcome was part of her elaborate plan. As Arasilla rests, the dark bruises left by the grandmother's grip are clearly visible on her wrist. Damian's expression shifts to one of absolute horror as he notices the physical marks on his wife. Arasilla flinches and pulls her arm away, startled by Damian's sudden focus on her injury. Looking guilty and embarrassed, Arasilla tries to hide the bruised wrist from her husband's sight. Damian is haunted by memories of his own childhood abuse, seeing his wife's injury as a reflection of his past. A vision of young Damian standing alone among broken shards emphasizes his history of suffering. Damian offers a heartfelt apology for failing to prevent her pain, though Arasilla denies his fault. Clenching his fist in frustration, Damian laments his inability to protect her from his family's cruelty. A look of deep anguish and protective rage washes over Damian as he processes his guilt. Arasilla watches him with concern, sensing the old wounds that this incident has reopened for him. Arasilla reflects on the true reason Damian has always avoided physical contact with others. Damian recalls the trauma of being abused under the pretense of medical care, which led him to isolate himself. Sitting alone, Arasilla reflects on how she instinctively dodged Damian's touch earlier. Looking at her bruised wrist, Arasilla realizes this must be how Damian has always felt. Arasilla admits to Damian that she was actually very scared during the confrontation. Arasilla notes that it was the first time anyone had ever treated her so roughly. Thinking of Damian gave Arasilla strength as she recalls the public news of secret abuse within a prestigious family. Damian looks completely stunned and asks if she truly thought of him. Arasilla explains that Damian's courage in sharing his dislike for physical touch helped her find the strength to shake off the grandmadame's hand. With a warm and tearful smile, Arasilla thanks Damian for saving her. Damian stares back at her with an expression of deep, blushing emotion. A soft and gentle smile crosses Damian's face as he looks at his wife. In the quiet of their grand bedroom, Damian softly calls out to Arasilla. Damian looks at Arasil's injured wrist and asks if he may tuck it. Arasilla offers a bright, happy smile and gives him her permission. A soft thud sounds as Damian gently takes her hand, looking concerned. Damian asks if the injury hurt a lot, and Arasilla admits it hurt a little. Arasilla looks at her husband with a soft, affectionate gaze. Damian looks into her eyes and asks if she cried a lot during the ordeal. The couple shares a quiet and intimate moment together on the bed. Arasilla looks visibly startled and blushing at the personal nature of his question. Arasilla loudly insists she didn't cry, but Damian points out that her eyes are still red. Arasilla sighs and dismisses the pain, saying it will fade soon enough. Arasilla smiles and assures him that bruises disappear naturally over time, so it is okay. Damian smiles softly and agrees to drop the subject since she says she is fine. A peaceful and happy atmosphere fills the room as the couple sits together. Chibi Arasilla excitedly suggests going to eat, while Damian asks if she's sure she doesn't need more rest. Arasilla explains she needs a hearty meal before returning to the Magic Tower tomorrow and mentions having something important to do in the morning. Arasilla offers a playful and mischievous wink as she hints at her upcoming plans. A heavy thud sounds as the Grand Madam stands outside the mansion, ordering her servants to move immediately. The grandmother fumes, declaring she refuses to breathe the same air as the mannerless wretches for a second longer. Arasilla suddenly appears in her Magic Tower robes, mockingly asking if the Grand Madam is leaving so soon. Arasilla laughs brightly, stating she believes in reciprocity and simply had to return the grace shown to her over the years. The Grand Madam is shocked and demands to know if Arasilla is actually threatening her. Arasilla dismisses the idea of a threat, claiming she is merely there to deliver a rare and precious gift. A low hum sounds as Arasilla conjures a concentrated mass of purple mana, causing the grandmother to scream in terror. A quick thud sounds as Aurelia steps forward, and the grandmother begs her to stay back. A bright flash erupts as Arasilla thrusts the glowing mass of mana toward the older woman. The Grand Madam lets out a terrified scream, convinced that she is dying. Arasilla holds a glowing violet over the grandmother, who has collapsed in fear on the stairs. Arasilla explains she enchanted the flower to hold its shape until the grandmother reaches the duchy so she won't be bored. The enchanted flower now bears Arasilla's smirking face, which tells the woman it won't be coming off her forehead. Arasilla laughs, mockingly reminding the woman that in the language of flowers, the purple violet represents humility. Arasilla leans in and tells the Grand Madam she hoped this serves as a lesson that one shouldn't mess with people so recklessly. Arasilla smugly asserts her identity, stating she is both Arasilla Hugo and Arasilla Vandermir. The Grand Madam misses an angry strike at Arasilla, screaming that she is being mocked to the bitter end. A loud smack sounds as a maid accidentally hits the grandmother, and Arasilla mockingly says, "Whoops." The maids lose their balance and fall as the heavy luggage tumbles down the stairs. A loud clattering sound echoes through the area as the scene descends into chaos. A sharp crack sounds as the Grand Madam's leg bone snaps, and she screams in agony while a maid asks if she is all right. Arasilla watches the chaos from a distance, thinking that while she wanted revenge, she didn't intend for it to go this far. A quick scurrying sound follows as Arasilla hurriedly runs back inside the mansion. Arasilla tells the butler to call a doctor to handle the aftermath of her grandmother's departure. Arasilla offers a playful and confident wink. The Grand Madam screams in fury after Arasilla leaves a mark on her forehead. Text confirms the Grand Madam returned home with a broken leg and a magical violet. Other mages at the Magic Tower gossip about Arasilla being held back by domestic affairs. Arasilla internally scoffs at the mages, thinking their comments are pathetic and hypocritical. Travis greets Arasilla as Mrs. Vandermir, though she looks highly annoyed to see him. Travis is formally introduced as a candidate to become the next Tower Master. Narration explains that while Arasilla excels in combat, Travis is superior at creating practical artifacts. Arasilla calls Travis by name, which seems to catch him off guard. Arasilla bluntly tells Travis his breath reeks and orders the filthy man out of her personal space. Travis becomes enraged, claiming Arasilla's standing in the tower has plummeted since her marriage to a knight. Arasilla dismisses the man's shouting and walks away to see the Tower Master immediately. Travis yells after Arasilla, vowing to crush her during the next evaluation. Arasilla offers a dark and confident smirk. Inside the office, the Tower Master asks Arasilla if her domestic problems were resolved successfully. The Tower Master suggests that Arasilla should focus on new research or go on a mission. Arasilla suspiciously asks if someone has been complaining about her absence to the Tower Master again. The Tower Master notes that Arasilla used to be a workaholic who never took vacation days. Narration details the internal factionalism and rivalry that plagues the elders of the Magic Tower. The elders are desperate to install their own disciples as the Tower Master through sabotage. A notification announces that Travis has successfully invented a magical temperature control tool. Arasilla looks genuinely shocked by the news of her rival's impressive new invention. Travis presents a revolutionary artifact intended to change food storage and public health logistics. Arasilla determines to prove her marriage has not made her abilities go soft. The scene shifts back to Damian's mansion. Arasilla sits alone, contemplating what kind of results she must show to regain her status. Narration notes that Arasilla's levitation stone is technically sound but lacks commercial potential. Damian interrupts her thoughts, asking if she is listening to him. Damian holds out a formal invitation with a wax seal to his wife. Arasilla reads the invitation to a hunting festival but expresses zero interest in attending. Damian plans to attend alone, prompting Arasilla to ask if he even likes hunting. Damian explains he is only attending to help expand the influence of the knights.
Narration explains that winning the Imperial-hosted festival brings great recognition from the Emperor.
Arasilla realizes that victory would be an achievement that no one could possibly ignore.
Arasilla stops Damian from leaving and announces that she will participate in the festival too. Arasilla declares she will be an active participant, and Damian agrees the role fits her. Damian warns his wife that he will not go easy on her during the hunt. Arasilla laughs and retorts that she won't go easy on her husband either. As the couple's competitive auras flare, a maid thinks that peace never lasts in the mansion. The scene transitions to the Panthera forest. Opposing banners show the intense rivalry between the knights and the mages.
Arasilla and Damian face off at the festival in their respective gear.
Arasilla mockingly asks Damian if he can really run effectively in those tight pants. Damian retorts by asking if Arasilla will be all right in her cumbersome boots. Both husband and wife swear on their professional honor to emerge victorious. The couple shouts their shared determination to win the hunting festival. Narration describes the Great Hunt as a prayer for prosperity that grants an imperial blessing. Legend says the winner gets a laurel, and their lover receives an eternal flower crown. The grand hunting festival begins in the forest. A man with brown hair holds hands with a woman, affectionately calling her his little lark. A light-haired man vows to win the hunt and present a flower crown to his beloved. The Vandermeer couple appears, and Arasilla confidently declares that victory will be hers. Damian argues that as a knight, he will naturally win, while Arasilla retorts that as a magician, her victory is obvious, leading the crowd to hope someone stops the competitive pair. Adrian greets Damian formally as his brother-in-law. The young purple-haired boy enthusiastically promises to root for the silver-haired knight. Damian is visibly confused, recalling how the boy had initially opposed their marriage. A monochrome flashback depicts a younger Adrian shouting his refusal to accept the marriage to Sir Vandermir. Narration reveals Adrian is actually a secret knight enthusiast, and Damian thanks the boy for his support while promising to win. Arasilla looms over her brother with a dark aura, reminding him that she is also participating in the hunt. Arasilla shouts about her impending victory while being restrained by a brown-haired woman as the family watches. The parents laugh and encourage the couple not to push themselves too hard, wishing Damian good luck. Damian feels a surge of motivation from the encouragement, while Arasilla remains fiercely competitive. The brown-haired sister asks Arasilla if she prepared a handkerchief, catching the mage off guard. The sister explains that wives are meant to gift hand-embroidered handkerchiefs to their husbands, and Arasilla realizes she forgot the custom. The sister offers a handkerchief she made herself so Arasilla won't be empty-handed, and Arasilla gratefully accepts it. An announcement calls all participants to the green tent, and Damian asks if his wife is ready. Arasilla and Damian prepare to depart as the family wishes them a safe trip. Adrian and the rest of the family cheer loudly for their success. A wide view shows the large crowd of nobles gathered at the festive hunting grounds. Groups of mages share a laugh as they prepare their equipment. Several noblewomen blush while holding their prepared tokens of affection. A close-up shows a white handkerchief decorated with delicate gold and floral embroidery. Arasilla observes the grand preparations and wonders why everyone is taking the event so seriously. A blonde woman approaches the couple, offering a prayer for their victory. The blonde woman smiles brightly, though her eyes hint at a deeper scheme. Arasilla realizes she recognizes the woman as Lady White from a previous meeting. Nora thinks to herself that the time for her proper revenge has finally arrived. Flashbacks show the Grand Madame's humiliation during the Violet incident, which fueled Nora's desire for vengeance. Nora predicts that someone with Arasilla's personality wouldn't have prepared a gift. Nora proudly presents her exquisite embroidery to the couple. Arasilla's hand suddenly snatches the cloth away, surprising the blonde woman. Arasilla mockingly thanks Nora for the gift and says she will accept it with gratitude. Nora reacts with fury and shock, demanding to know why Arasilla took the gift meant for Damian. Arasilla suggests Nora must have fallen for her pretty face since she offered a gift to a married man, leaving Nora sputtering in rage. Arasilla tells Lady White they are too busy to chat, while Nora vows to get real revenge next time. The embroidered handkerchief is abandoned and caught in the wind as the festival continues. Arasilla thinks to herself that while Nora is unstable, she is annoyed that Damian almost accepted a gift from her. Arasilla looks down at the handkerchief her sister gave her. She decides she doesn't want to give away a token her sister worked so hard to create. Arasilla calls out to her husband, asking him to look at her. A quick motion follows as Arasilla removes a white ribbon from her hair. Arasilla offers the plain silk ribbon to Damian as a substitute for a handkerchief. Damian is completely stunned and blushes deeply at the personal gesture. Damian reaches out and gently takes the long ribbon from his wife's hand. Arasilla asks if the ribbon is acceptable, noting that embroidery is far too bothersome for her to do. Damian stares at the simple white ribbon with an expression of quiet awe. Damian realizes with a start that he has nothing to give her in return.
Arasilla takes his hand and suggests that the ribbon isn't a bad gift choice. Arasilla smiles warmly, noting that the ribbon shows off their wedding ring quite nicely. Arasilla tells Damian she has something to say, and he asks what it is. Her eyes narrow as she warns that they will be strangers on the field because victory belongs to her. Damian smirks at the challenge, while Arasilla mocks him as a knight destined to lose to her.
Observers interpret their intense rivalry as a charming lover's quarrel, feeling quite envious.
An announcer on the stage begins explaining the rules to the gathered crowd.
He describes the ribbon retrieval rules within the panther forest, noting small herbivores yield lower points. Large carnivores with ribbons are revealed to hold much higher point values for the participants.
The mysterious golden leopard is announced as the ultimate prize worth 1,000 points. Arasilla and Damian look on with resolve as the announcer encourages them to aim for the leopard.
The crowd responds with a thunderous yes when asked if they are ready to begin.
The announcer passionately bellows, asking the participants if they have someone special in their hearts. The enthusiastic crowd of knights and mages cheers loudly in response to the call.
Arasilla ties her hair back while Damian wipes his blade for the competition. Various participants prepare to charge as the announcer officially declares the start of the Great Hunt.
The couple sprints into the forest alongside a swarm of other ambitious hunters. They sharpen their focus and ready their tools for the chase ahead. Bright sunlight filters through the lush forest canopy. A white rabbit with a ribbon hops away. Arasilla chases after the rabbit, shouting for the small creature to freeze. She uses her staff to manifest a magical violet net that successfully traps the animal. A close-up shows her hand firmly reaching out to grab the ribbon-wearing rabbit. She releases the squeaking rabbit after apologizing for her rough handling and taking the ribbon.
Arasilla realizes catching herbivores won't get her to victory. She recalls that golden leopards prefer high ground and envisions one on a cliff.
As she prepares to head up, a voice interrupts her thoughts, greeting her by name. Arasilla is startled to see Frederick appearing in the middle of the forest.
Frederick asks where her husband is and wonders if she is hunting all alone.
She states they are competitors today, and Frederick asks if her drive is tower-related.
Frederick confirms he stays in regular contact with the Tower Master regarding her situation.
He expresses his belief that magic, unlike knights, is a source of true hope for the world.
Arasilla notes his long-standing and intense interest in magic. A vision depicts Frederick's massive financial support for the tower, exceeding even the Emperor's.
He offers to intervene if other mages are bothering her, but she frantically tells him to stop. She vents about the backstabbing politics she faced at the tower after her marriage.
Frederick suggests firing all the nasty people to protect her talent from such trash.
Arasilla is horrified, asking him not to say such dangerous things with such a relaxed expression. Frederick questions why she endures the stress when she has him to rely on. He blushes, offering to back her as the next Tower Master if she relies on him.
Arasilla explodes in rage, calling him a jerk and accusing him of not listening.
She shouts that she wants to be acknowledged fairly to prove marriage hasn't made her weak. She warns him that pulling strings is corruption and demands he stay out of her business.
The blonde man lets out a sassaf. He offers a pinky promise, agreeing to stop trying to intervene in her career.
Arasilla waves goodbye as she heads off to catch the leopard, and he wishes her luck.
Frederick stands alone in the brush, watching her depart with a lingering gaze. He reflects on her determination to prove herself by catching a golden leopard.
A deep blush spreads across Frederick's face as he covers his mouth.
The scene shifts to the barracks where staff manage the event logistics.
An official notes that one young noble on the list has yet to participate. The supervisor dismissively orders them disqualified if they aren't from a prominent family.
The brown-haired duchess and her son Oscar arrive late from the duchy, surprising the camp staff.
The duchess asks if Oscar can still participate in the hunt despite their late arrival.
The staff member agrees and offers to explain the rules, but Oscar dismissively tells him there is no need. The duchess asks Oscar where he thinks he's going while he wonders if he truly has to hunt.
Oscar complains about the barbaric nature of hunting, while his mother asks if he needs to beat Damian.
Oscar is deeply frustrated by his mother constantly harping on about beating Damian. Oscar questions who could beat a brute like Damian, while the duchess reassures him that she has prepared everything.
The duchess wears a sinister smile as she thinks about staging a dangerous accident during the festival.
Damian stands in the forest, having already captured several boars wearing blue ribbons.
Damian decides it is time to head out and find the golden leopard.
A mysterious hooded figure watches Damian as he walks into the brush.
3 hooded assassins lurk together in the dark forest, waiting for the right moment. 2 hours have passed since the start of the hunt as Arasilla treks through the woods.
Arasilla complains that the high ground where the leopards live is a little too high for comfort.
Arasilla stops to catch her breath as a long, spotted tail appears in the foreground.
Arasilla is shocked and gasps as she spots her target nearby.
The golden leopard rests majestically on a rocky ledge high above the forest floor.
Arasilla raises her staff and resolves to catch the creature in a single attempt. A powerful beam of magic and a streak of fire are fired toward the leopard. The two opposing forces of magic and flame collide in a massive explosion. Arasilla demands to know who destroyed her magic, while Damian is equally surprised to see his wife.
The golden leopard stands on the rock and roars at the two intruders.
The leopard leaps away into the forest as Arasilla shouts in protest at her lost prey.
Damian mocks her for being too weak to keep up and leaps after the fleeing leopard.
Arasilla gets angry and decides to use a high mana technique she usually avoids. Arasilla manifests a large, glowing purple magic circle and begins to ride it through the air. Damian sprints through the dense forest, keeping the leopard in his sights. Damian calculates that cutting down the trees would be the best way to trap the animal.
Arasilla flies past Damian on her magic circle and shouts for him to get out of her way.
Damian is completely dumbfounded and asks his wife what on earth she is writing. Arasilla notes that the technique consumes massive mana, but she's willing to spend days in bed to win. A hooded assassin aims a bow at the flying mage from behind a tree. An arrow streaks through the air and strikes the tree just inches from Arasilla's head.
Arasilla is startled by the attack and wonders where the arrow came from.
A foot slips as the glowing magic circle beneath her begins to shatter into pieces.
Arasilla cries out in panic as her concentration breaks and she starts to fall.
Damian looks up and screams his wife's name in terror as she plunges toward the ground. Damian reaches out desperately as Arasilla falls from the sky above him. Damian kicks off a rock with an explosion of fire to launch himself toward her. Damian plunges downward through the air to catch his falling life. Damian catches Arasilla in his arms and urgently asks if she is hurt.
Arasilla blushes and tears up as she looks into her husband's eyes amidst falling flowers.
The lead assassin commands his team to fire their arrows immediately. 3 sharp arrows whistle through the air toward the couple.
A close-up shows Damian's sharp, determined yellow eye as he spots the incoming threat.
Damian holds Arasilla close and tells her to endure the heat of his power. Damian swings a blade of pure fire and incinerates the incoming arrows in an instant. Damian shouts for them to get down as the hooded assassins leap from the trees. A massive cloud of smoke and dust rises into the sky as birds scatter in fear. Damian tells Arasilla to stay back as he handles the assassins while she warns him to be careful. The hooded assassin clicks his tongue in a nods. Damian holds Arasilla close as they take cover behind a magical barrier, refusing to let her face the danger alone while she senses a powerful mage among their attackers. Damian insists on resolving the situation himself since he is the clear target of the ambush. He urges Arasilla to focus entirely on her own defense rather than trying to counterattack. Damian repeats his vow to keep her safe as Arasilla reaches out to steady him. Flashing a confident smile, Arasilla declares they will capture the assassins and beat them to a pulp. Damian smirks back, amused by her sudden competitive spirit and her threat to crush their enemies. Arasilla mocks his hesitation and proposes a wager to see who can take down more assassins first. From the high branches and dark undergrowth, a group of armed assassins silently watches the couple in the clearing. The masked leader commands his team to eliminate both Damian Vandermir and Arasilla Hugo within the next 4 hours. Damian and Arasilla stand ready with sword and staff, prepared to face the incoming assault. At the festival camp, a lady questions why this silver-haired young lord isn't participating in the Great Hunt. She notes that all the other men are competing fiercely to win the title of Queen of the Hunt for their chosen ladies. A black-haired woman blushes and wonders if Oscar has a specific lady in mind for the honor. Oscar walks away in a huff, annoyed that the woman is trying to pry into his personal affairs. He decides to leave the dirty work to his mother and chooses to spend the afternoon flirting with the noblewomen instead. Oscar's eyes sparkle as he spots a beautiful blonde woman sitting nearby. He approaches the table and asks the blonde woman if he may join her group for a moment. Oscar asks for her name, and the woman introduces herself as Amelia Bennett. Oscar suddenly reaches out and grabs Amelia's wrist with a firm, startling grip. He dramatically declares that meeting a flower like Amelia must be a work of fate. Oscar promises she won't regret leaving with him as she nervously explains that she is already with her friends. Amelia's companions watch the scene unfold with expressions of deep concern and shock. A brown-haired woman suddenly steps in and sternly commands the young lord to stop his behavior. The brown-haired woman glares at him, pointing out that Lady Bennett is clearly distressed by his unwanted advances. Oscar's confidence wavers as he realizes this woman belongs to the prestigious Hugo family. He envisions a terrifying, vengeful version of the Hugo sister looming over him as he trembles. Oscar immediately switches to desperate flattery, calling the Hugo sister the real treasure before she tells him to get back to the hunt. He dramatically claims that he is the one who has just been hunted by her beauty. In his overactive imagination, he sees the brown-haired woman as a cupid firing a romantic arrow directly at him. Oscar is completely swept away by his own delusions of grandeur and romance. The brown-haired woman responds with a cold, flat refusal that leaves no room for argument.
Oscar laughs it off, stating it's fate since he is currently unattached to any lover or fiancé. He suggests that they should meet again soon to discuss their future together in more detail.
Oscar delivers an overly enthusiastic and noisy kiss to the woman's hand. He laughs at her horrified expression, teasing her for having such a shy nature. Oscar blows a final kiss and promises to see her again.
He skips away with hearts trailing behind him while the two women stand in the garden, utterly bewildered.
A sudden, heavy feeling of unease settles over the atmosphere. The brown-haired woman watches him go and concludes that the man is truly out of his mind. Smoke drifts through the trees as the final 2 hours of the hunt begin. Arasilla uses her magical staff to neutralize a group of attackers, noting that only 4 enemies remain on the field. She stands over the defeated men and asks Damian if he can locate the survivors. Arasilla senses the remaining assassins ahead, but warns that the enemy mage's inaction suggests they are preparing a massive spell. Deep in the shadows, the lead assassin chants a low, rhythmic incantation with his fingers pressed together. Damian decides to charge in and drag the enemies out, despite Arasilla's warnings about the unknown dangers of the mage's magic. Looking at the fallen trees and scattered bodies, Damian insists they must seize this chance, though he admits something feels off. Damian offers to lead the way and mockingly asks his wife if she's too afraid to follow him into the fray. He tells her to stay close as they begin their final advance toward the hidden ambushers. Damian draws his blade as the remaining assassins prepare their bows, shouting that the targets have arrived. A sharp clash sounds as a blade strikes a heartsickness. Damian leaps through the air with his sword raised high above a group of hooded archers. A bright flash erupts as Damian channels intense fire into his blade. Damian unleashes a massive wave of flame that incinerates arrows as a pained cry echoes. Landing on a massive fallen tree, Damian stands ready as fire continues to swirl around him. Damian is startled by a sudden blast of dark energy while a voice mocks him for entering their territory. A masked figure in a hood warns Damian that battlefield recklessness leads to a short life. Damian points his gleaming sword toward the enemy and tells the man he talks too much. Damian lunges forward only for the lead assassin to grin and declare that he has captured him. Tendrils of dark energy bind Damian's body as he wonders when the enemy managed to move. Damian grunts in pain as he realizes the dark aura is making his own movements sluggish. The hooded magician laughs and mocks the swordmaster for leaving himself open to an attack. The magician regrets killing someone so vital, while Damian senses the repulsive mana of a black magician. The hooded figure's mask is revealed as he confirms his identity as a practitioner of black magic. A formal text introduces Stenia, the guardian deity of the Cetron Empire. Myth says Stenia gifted humanity with aura and mana under a single strict condition. The deity forbade mixing nature's mana with humanity's aura, threatening a reaper's curse on transgressors. Despite the taboo, some created black magic by fusing the two forces, draining their lifespans away. Driven to madness, these magicians brought chaos and slaughter to the world. Now the Empire strictly forbids the heresy of black magic and hunts its practitioners with prejudice. The magician repeats his regret at killing Damian, while Damian confirms the energy is indeed black magic. The black magician prepares to strike the immobilized Damian as dark energy gathers in his hand. Arasilla suddenly appears and screams for the magician to stop as she charges her staff. A powerful beam of purple magic from Arasilla's staff blasts directly into the magician's dark shadows. The magician realizes Arasilla is strong as her purple beam clashes violently with his shadowy power. Arasilla rushes to Damian's side and mocks his lost confidence while he claims he just slipped up. Arasilla examines the complexity of the magic circle and confirms the presence of forbidden black magic. Arasilla reaches out to stabilize the situation as the dark tendrils continue to pulse. Arasilla warns Damian that this magic will disrupt his energy flow because it is fused with aura. Damian acknowledges his disadvantage against black magic while Arasilla vows not to be tricked again. The magician tells them he won't use the same attack twice as he vanishes into the mist. A hooded assassin wonders what is taking so long as he looks toward the mountain peak. A scarred man with an eye patch appears holding the golden leopard, calling it a precious sacrifice. Damian and Arasilla are horrified to see the legendary creature being held captive by the scarred man. The man mockingly tells them to calm down as the leopard lets out a soft whimper. Arasilla angrily calls the man a coward for using an innocent animal as a shield. The magician notes the leopard is a legendary spirit beast that thrives on pure energy. The hooded magician grins as he prepares to pose a dangerous question to the couple. He asks what will happen when he fuels his black magic with the leopard's pure life force. Arasilla tells Damian she will occupy the mage and signals for him to prepare for capture. Damian questions her plan to face black magic alone, but she insists on finding another way. A sharp sound rings out as a pillar of purple magic shoots toward the sky.
Arasilla tells Damian to trust her and follow her lead as they stand within a magic circle. Arasilla resolves to open the path forward and Damian gives a firm nod of understanding. Arasilla challenges the Black Mage to a final battle and prepares to catch him with Damian. A title card appears with stylized purple Korean text centered on a dark background.
Noblewomen at the camp look at the magic pillar and wonder if it's the golden leopard. The Duchess asks if they will succeed while the Duke notes the fortune he spent on this.
The Duke looks on with a cold, determined expression, vowing to succeed no matter the cost.
The Duke recalls a memory from years ago of seeing that same look in Damian's eyes.
The narrative notes that the intensity in his eyes was far beyond that of a mere child.
The Duke worries that if he doesn't eliminate Damian today, the young lord will eventually try to take his life.
A sudden, sharp sound rings out as the scarred mercenary lunges forward with his massive blade. A violent clang echoes through the forest as Damian blocks the mercenary's heavy downward strike.
The scarred man mocks Damian, asking why he won't just die given the enormous bounty on his head.
Damian observes that his opponent is a top-tier mercenary, though he believes the man is still manageable. A bright purple light begins to emanate from Arasilla's powerful magical staff.
Arasilla wonders if she can hold off the Black Mage, who is currently draining energy from the captured leopard.
The legendary golden leopard lets out a high-pitched scream of agony as it is tortured by dark energy. The Black Magician commands his power to strike as dark energy erupts in a massive blast. Arasilla shouts a defiant challenge as she channels her own magical power to meet the incoming attack.
A powerful magical explosion rocks the area as the two opposing forces collide with a thunderous sound.
Arasilla grits her teeth and focuses her mana, her eyes glowing with intense determination.
The Black Mage mocks her for trying to defeat him with such weak magic, calling her an arrogant fool. Damian cries out for Arasilla as dark swirling energy begins to overwhelm the battlefield. The scarred mercenary orders Damian to stay focused, reminding him that he is his current opponent.
Arasilla appears to be trapped by the dark magic as Damian watches in horror from a distance.
A sinister smile crosses the mage's face as he prepares to finish off the struggling woman.
The magician is stunned to realize that Arasilla managed to decompose his fused aura and mana in an instant. Arasilla seizes the opening and commands Damian to strike while the enemy is vulnerable. The scarred mercenary curses as he realizes the trap, while the mage screams for someone to protect him. Damian leaps through the air with incredible speed, his silver hair trailing behind him. A bright flash of light accompanies Damian's sword as he delivers a finishing blow.
Damian stands over the defeated Black Mage with his sword held firmly against the man's throat.
The scarred mercenary charges toward Damian, shouting for him to release his comrade. Arasilla suddenly swings her staff with a loud thwack, knocking the mercenary to the ground with a blunt strike. Damian admits he always suspected her staff could be used as a blunt weapon, but is surprised to see it in action.
Arasilla urgently commands Damian to bind the man's hands and remove his magical gloves immediately.
The magician groans in pain as Damian roughly pins him down to the forest floor.
Arasilla tells the man to stop whining as she delivers another sharp blow to the back of his head.
She berates the man for crying over a small beating after he tried to kill them and tortured an innocent animal. Arasilla formally declares that she is handing the man over to the Inquisition for a proper judgment.
She stares him down with a terrifying expression, promising to show him what a living hell truly feels like.
The pinned magician begins to chuckle with a chilling, unsettling sound. Arasilla demands to know why he's laughing, and the man replies that he won't be attending any interrogation.
Dark, wispy energy begins to leak from the magical symbol etched onto the back of the man's glove.
Damian warns the lady to look at the gloves, and she frantically tells him to throw them away. Damian tosses the gloves as they erupt with a sudden hissing sound and a burst of black smoke.
The dark magic spreads rapidly, binding both the magician and the mercenary in black tendrils.
The mage reveals his contract requires him to die if he fails, while Arasilla struggles to decipher the complex spell.
Arasilla notes that black magic is a demonic force that feeds on desperation and eventually destroys the human soul.
Arasilla tries to reach out to stop him, but Damian pulls her back and warns her not to touch the corruption. The dying mage curses Arasilla, vowing that one day she will also succumb to the power of black magic. The man's hand begins to disintegrate into dark ash with a faint, crumbling sound. The mage disappears completely, leaving behind a final, ominous message promising to see them in hell.
Arasilla kicks the dirt in frustration, realizing they can't file a proper report without the physical bodies.
Damian tells her to worry about her own safety first, but she immediately asks about the location of the leopard. Damian points toward the trees, noticing something moving in the distance. He explains that the creature fled the moment the black magic dissipated as they spot it among the bushes.
The golden leopard stands perfectly still, watching the couple with a sharp and intelligent gaze.
Damian asks if he should pursue the fleeing creature while Arasilla remains silent.
Arasilla says to let it go as it's been drained of life force and won't survive long.
Damian acknowledges the lady's command as a signal flare erupts in the sky. A loud pop echoes as a firework signals the conclusion of the hunting festival. Damian notices Arasilla's hand is trembling and asks her what is the matter. Arasilla admits she overdid her magic and asks for help getting up.
A soft thud sounds as Arasilla reaches out and firmly grasps Damian's head. Damian observes her hands are ice cold and realizes she pushed too hard against the black magic.
Arasilla looks down with a weary and slightly flushed expression.
Damian begins unbuckling the leather straps of his dark armor. Damian asks the lady to hold his armor for a moment. Damian, now in a simple white shirt, asks Arasilla if she is able to walk.
Arasilla says she'll be fine after a long sleep while Damian prepares to help her.
Damian kneels down and tells her to get on his back for the descent.
Arasilla's chibi form grumbles about being carried like a child at her age.
Damian carries Arasilla on his back through the sunlit path of the forest.
Arasilla observes that Damian is truly built like a knight as she rests against him.
The pair travels together under the dappled sunlight of the dense woods.
Arasilla notices how Damian's heartbeat is and wonders if it is a knight's trait.
Damian remains silent with a slight blush visible on his ear and cheek. Arella closes her eyes with a faint and content smile. Damian continues carrying Arasilla back to the camp as cherry blossom petals drift around them. An announcer at the camp declares the start of the hunting festival's closing ceremony.
The announcer celebrates an overwhelming victory with a score of 560 points.
The announcement continues, placing Damian in second place and the heir of the Davis family in third. Damian asks how she only scored 10 points while she explains her gamble on the leopard. The ceremony moves to the presentation of the prestigious golden wreath.
A golden wreath sits atop a plush red cushion, gleaming under the bright sky.
Arasilla thinks it's a shame she didn't win as it would have silenced the mockers at the tower. A high official places the golden wreath on the head of the kneeling blonde prince. Sudden screams of shock fill the air as guests point toward a surprise visitor.
The golden leopard walks calmly into the middle of the ceremony, startling the attendees.
Arasilla is surprised to see the beast and asks why it didn't stay in the mountains.
Close-up of the leopard's golden eye reflecting the surprised face of the purple-haired lady. Arasilla jokingly asks the creature if it has come to bring her Hetty.
The prince and the announcer are frozen in shock at the sight of the legendary beast. The announcer marvels at the rare sight of a spiritual beast approaching a human. Noblewomen argue over the rankings, wondering if Arasilla should win despite the time limit. A voice suggests declaring Arasilla the winner because the leopard only seeks out good energy. The pink-haired woman protests and calls out to Prince Frederick to intervene. The crowd shifts their opinion, agreeing that Madame Vandermir is the true victor. Frederick congratulates Arasilla on her victory as she kneels with the leopard. Arasilla calls the prince by his name with a bright and happy smile.
A rhythmic clapping fills the air as the prince stands with the victorious purple-haired lady.
Damian looks on with a soft, thoughtful gaze at the celebratory scene.
Arasilla asks if she can give the wreath to whoever she chooses, surprising the prince.
Arasilla confirms she has someone in mind as she holds a bundle of red roses.
Frederick gets excited while Damian remains stoic and indifferent.
Arasilla stands confidently with her leopard companion, ready to present her gift. A beautiful wreath made of vibrant red roses sparkles with a magical light. Arasilla gently places the vibrant red rose wreath onto Damian's silver hair as glowing sparkles surround the happy couple. With a bright and beaming smile, the purple-haired lady tells Damian that the flower crown suits him perfectly. Damian blushes and smiles softly at the woman, clearly touched by her unexpected and beautiful gift. An announcer declares the hunting festival's conclusion while Prince Frederick and a pink-haired noblewoman look on with stoic expressions. As the announcer offers a final blessing of love and fortune, a young purple-haired boy runs excitedly toward Arasilla. Red rose petals drift through the air while Damian stands among the crowd. The entire group, including the golden leopard and the young assistants, gathers together for a celebratory moment in the sunlit forest. The scene shifts abruptly to a gloomy and impoverished slum located on the outskirts of the city. In the dark blue-tinted streets of the slums, a young child cries out desperately for his mother. A heavy, oppressive silence hangs over the deserted alleyways of the slum district as the night deepens. A man huddles in a dim, shadowed room, frantically penning a letter addressed specifically to Lady Arasilla. The man records an accusation of black magic used by Johnny Pattinson of the Red Hawk Knights on April 2nd of the previous year. A single, heavy tear falls onto the parchment, blurring the ink of the man's desperate plea for help. The man sobs as he begs for the knight's sins to be revealed and for justice to finally be served. Back at the tower, Travis is distracted by floating newspapers as an announcement calls for everyone's immediate attention. Arasilla makes a grand and noisy entrance, triumphantly holding a banner celebrating her historic victory at the hunting festival. Arasilla playfully mocks Travis, asking him how his plan to trample her underfoot is currently progressing. A flustered and blushing Travis shouts at her to be quiet and professional while they're on work hours. Arasilla sticks her tongue out in a childish gesture, boasting that Travis can't even reach the tips of her toes. An assistant interrupts the bickering to announce that the Tower Master has urgently convened an emergency council meeting. The messenger explains that a formal complaint regarding black magic has been filed and addressed directly to Arasilla. Arasilla and her green-haired assistant are left stunned by the news of the official black magic accusation. A cold sweat breaks out on Arasilla's face as she worries that the complaint relates to a past incident. An ominous vision of the Black Mage's dying curse flashes through the purple-haired lady's mind, unsettling her. Arasilla quickly regains her composure and tells the messenger that she will head to the council chamber immediately. She clenches her fist, noting that the sudden turn of events has left a very bad taste in her mouth. The scene transitions to the grand hall of the Magic Tower Executive Council chamber as the members assemble. Arasilla stands alone before the Tower Master, who sits behind an imposing desk in the ornate white chamber. Arasilla reviews the letter, which names Johnny Pattinson as a black magic user and specifies the date and time of the event. The letter contains a desperate plea for Arasilla to personally handle the investigation and punish the man's crimes. The Tower Master asks why she has been silent and questions if she acknowledges her name on the undignified accusation. Fernando slams his hand onto the table, questioning why a married woman like Arasilla isn't tending to her household duties. The purple-bearded executive points an accusing finger, calling the situation an unsavory scandal involving a knight from her husband's order. A narrative note identifies Fernando as the eternal rival of Tower Master Philip and the teacher of the mage Travis. Arasilla dismisses his anger as a petty attack, noting she hadn't even met Damian on the date specified in the complaint. Philip attempts to calm the shouting council members, pointing out that the complaint is anonymous and its authenticity is unclear. Other executives slam their desks and shout, claiming that entertaining such an anonymous report is a mockery of the tower. Fernando argues that because a specific knight is named, the council would be wrong to simply ignore the letter. With a sinister and unsettling expression, Fernando suggests that Arasilla should investigate the matter herself to prove the report false. He insists that if her husband's subordinate truly used black magic, she must be the one to arrest him. Arasilla observes the poor quality of the paper and the clumsy handwriting, concluding that the message is likely a sincere plea. She agrees to investigate the matter personally, but states that she has one non-negotiable condition for the council. Arasilla looks up with a sharp and determined gaze, declaring that she will not tolerate anyone's interference during her investigation. The executives are outraged by her insolence, but the white-haired Tower Master laughs and allows her condition. Philip reasons that giving her this task is fair to other candidates during the busy season of artifact development. Fernando mocks her small lab and insists on sending his own mages to help with the interrogation process. Fernando sneers as he insults Arasilla's assistants for being commoners, causing the lady to erupt in a furious, red-tinted rage. Arasilla shouts that Sally and Rudy are excellent and need no help, while Fernando berates her for her supposed arrogance. The executives point at her and argue that she shouldn't ignore the council if she hopes to become Tower Master one day. Philip lets out a small sigh and officially accepts Arasilla's terms, bringing the heated council meeting to an end. Arasilla clenches her fist with determination. Arasilla declares that she will conduct herself as a proper mage and show results regardless of what happens. Sunlight filters through leaves over the tower. Damian wipes sweat from his brow. Johnny excitedly recounts seeing the Countess romantically gifting a flower crown to Damian during the festival. Arasilla crowns Damian an anemone. Damian tells Johnny to be quiet while blushing, but the brown-haired knight jokingly insists he is only speaking out of envy. A knight asks Johnny about his own upcoming wedding, leading the man to note how far the rumor has already spread. Damian's subordinates continue the life. The Magic Tower flag waves proudly. Damian's eyes widen in surprise as he recognizes the incoming flag of the Magic Tower. Arasilla arrives with her team and formally greets Commander Vandermir. Damian questions why she has come, prompting Arasilla to immediately ask for the location of Sir Johnny Pattinson. Johnny identifies himself to the Countess. Arasilla points at a young mage and addresses him, receiving a quick confirmation of readiness. Magic suddenly binds Johnny's wrists, causing him to yell in shock and ask what is happening to him. Arasilla stands before the bound knight and places Johnny under arrest on suspicion of practicing black magic. Arasilla holds up the formal accusation. The other knights erupt in disbelief, demanding to know if she has any evidence to support such a claim. The young mage mockingly tells the knights that they wouldn't understand even if told, surprising Arasilla. Johnny struggles against the magical bindings while a voice commands them to stop. Damian reminds the mages that they are currently standing on the training grounds of the Red Hawk Knights. Damian glares intensely, questioning their audacity to mock a Red Hawk Knight within their own domain. Arasilla explains they are obligated to arrest Johnny due to the formal complaint, but Damian criticizes their lack of procedure. Arasilla stares at the commander and tells him to sheath his sword immediately. The knights protest the lack of etiquette and condemn the mages for casting spells without any warning. A blonde mage retorts that the knights are too stupid to understand the situation as the two groups face off. Damian tells Johnny to go with the mages to the tower for the time being. Johnny cries out that the situation is unjust because he is innocent, but Damian tells him he knows. Damian encourages Johnny to go and confidently prove his innocence under legitimate procedure so that he can return. The fellow knights cheer Johnny on, telling him to clear his name and leave his bad luck behind before the wedding. Johnny promises his comrades that he will return safely after the investigation. The blonde mage laughs at the knights' unity, calling them thick-headed for banding together just to survive. Arasilla orders the mage not to sneer, prompting him to ask if she is taking the knight's side because of her husband. A furious Arasilla expresses her embarrassment and asks if it is custom in his lab to let incompetent children run wild like executioners. The blonde mage is left speechless by her rebuke as Arasilla orders him to follow her if he is finished. Damian asks the countess how long the investigation will take, and she replies it could be a day or over a week. Damian attempts to suggest discussing the matter later when she is off duty, but Arasilla sharply refuses him. Arasilla warns Damian to stay out of the investigation and not think of interfering, as manufacturing an alibi would be troublesome. Damian asks if she is finished speaking while Arasilla prepares to depart. Damian steps forward to stop her. Arasilla tells him to stop concerning himself with the business of others. Damian shouts that a commander must care for his subordinates and asserts that using magic on a defenseless man crossed the line. Damian demands an immediate apology for Johnny and a lawful transfer, threatening to file a formal protest against the magic tower if his terms are not met.